A crew of bounty hunters just touched down on Earth, exactly 2,000 years after humanity completely abandoned the planet, and they are hunting down a major fugitive. Robert points out that this rock has been a dead wasteland for centuries. Even so, their scanners picked up a solid human heartbeat. The blonde girl warns everyone to gear up with masks, since the air out there is basically unbreathable. Once the ship finally hits the dirt, the captain looks around seriously, doubting they even landed in the right spot. Her assistant assures her the coordinates are dead on. Seryong pushes forward and finally spots their target zone, buried way underground. Charging up her tech, she blasts a massive crater into the dirt, exposing a seriously deep drop. Down below, Sunja checks the radar and confirms that they are standing right on top of their bounty. Without even blinking, Captain Seryong dives straight into the pit, landing in front of a massive door covered in a creepy warning. The captain radios Sunja to figure out what it says. Sunja explains it is a dead language from 2,000 years ago, and the message reads, "I am trapped in here. Keep this shut unless you have a death wish." Completely ignoring the giant red flag, Seryong just shrugs it off and forces the heavy vault open anyway. Stepping inside, their jaws drop. Sitting right in the middle of the room is a wildly hairy guy just too curious for her own good. She steps right up, leaning in close, and actually pokes the guy on the nose. The second her finger makes contact, a weird chill runs down her spine. Suddenly, the guy's eyes snap open from his ancient nap, blasting out an insane shockwave of pure energy. She braces herself, desperately trying to block the blast, but her own strength is not even close to enough. The explosion hits so hard that it completely floods the cavern and shoots straight up through the dirt, reaching all the way out to their mothership, floating in orbit. The shockwave rattles the hull so hard it almost rips the entire ship apart. Down in the pit, Captain Seryong gets violently thrown into a wall. Completely panicking about what just happened to her partner Robert, the wild man steps out of the dust, glaring down at her and demanding to know who dared to wake him up. Seryong is just too stunned to speak. He coldly promises to slaughter them all. Terrified, Seryong watches his arm pull back for a strike and realizes she has to move right now. Acting on pure adrenaline, she dumps every last drop of her power into a massive counterblast, lighting up the entire underground cavern like daytime. That single attack completely drains her. She is completely running on empty, but her heart completely drops when the dust clears, because the dude just walks right out of the smoke without a single scratch on him. He calmly tells her it is his turn to play and literally starts floating off the ground, wrapped in a terrifying, blazing purple aura. Seryong is absolutely sure this is the moment she dies. Shaking like a leaf, she falls backward onto the floor, only to watch in total shock as this godlike dude suddenly faceplants and passes out cold. Suddenly, her partner, Robert, pops up completely fine. The guy was literally just playing dead the entire time. Robert guesses the guy just blacked out from starving for 2,000 years. Through the earpiece, Sunja confirms the monster still has a pulse. After catching their breath, they head back to the ship, dragging the mysterious guy right along with them. The rest of the crew is absolutely freaking out, completely against bringing a sleeping weapon on board. But Captain Seryong puts her foot down and stands by her crazy choice. Realizing this guy is worth an absolute fortune, they start debating who to sell him to and for how much. Then their eyes shift back to his unconscious body, wondering what on earth they will do when he finally wakes up. Seryong is totally confident that the celestial silk thread binding him is completely unbreakable. But suddenly, a weird noise breaks the silence. The guy snaps awake, instantly ready to fight them. But Sunja just casually offers him a snack, saying some sausages are way better than fighting. Instantly happy, he starts eating. Watching the starving guy eat, So-young asks Sunja how she knew that would work. Sunja shrugs, saying it is obvious. A hungry beast that has not eaten in centuries is not going to turn down free food. Once his stomach is full, the guy introduces himself as Lee Mokjin. Having been isolated for 2 millennia, he finds out that humanity almost wiped itself out through endless internal wars. The few people left alive decided to leave the planet behind. So-young explains that after migrating out into space, all forms of violence and fighting were strictly banned, including nuclear weapons. Even martial arts were completely outlawed. She mentions they even use the galactic calendar now. Hearing this, Lee is absolutely furious. He refuses to believe humans could survive in space and threatens to hurt them. In response, the crew just points out the spaceship window. Right there, he gets a clear view of what Earth looks like today. It is not the beautiful blue planet it used to be. So-young points out it actually looks better now since it had 2,000 years to heal from all the damage humanity caused. Then she casually mentions he smells terrible, which makes sense after centuries, without taking a bath. So they drag him to the ship's bathroom to scrub the ancient dirt off. The crew can barely believe their eyes. He is not some weird monster or a crazy old geezer. His body is that of an insanely gorgeous young guy. So-young is completely stunned, realizing she has not seen a boy this good-looking in years. Later on, while Lee stares out at the amazing view of space, he suddenly feels a pinch on his cheek. It is So-young. She just wanted to see if the pretty boy standing in front of her is actually 2,000 years old. She quickly reminds him that hibernation years definitely do not count toward his age, just so he knows. While the captain keeps questioning the new guy, Robert and Sunja watch from the sidelines, finding the whole thing super weird. Pretty soon, they pull up to a massive building carved straight into an asteroid, out in the Pleiades. The Pleiades is a star cluster inside the Milky Way. This spot is a famous asteroid space tavern where travelers come to relax and have fun. Inside this tavern is an inn called the Wild Crane, where crowds gather to grab a bite and a drink. Down at one of the tables, Sunja stares in total shock watching something absolutely wild. The new guy stares right back, wondering why she is looking at him like that. The crazy truth is right there for everyone to see, as he has 4 to 6 hot dogs stuffed in his mouth at once with a giant mountain of them still waiting on his plate. Robert whispers to Sunja, asking how any human could possibly eat that much. Sunja reminds him that the guy has literally been starving for the past 2,000 years. Sweating a little, Robert asks if he is about to eat 2,000 years worth of food, just to satisfy his hunger. Sunja nods, saying that looking at him right now it is highly likely. Shortly after, our guy empties the plates and stares at the bounty hunters, probably expecting them to place another order. Meanwhile, the innkeeper, Wang the 18th, chats with Seo Young. Her request definitely catches his attention. He asks if she's seriously looking for a broker. Seo Young nods, making it clear. She needs someone filthy rich and serious. Whatever she's selling is incredibly rare and expensive. Chuckling, Wang wonders just how much cash it would take to make the flaming devil, who's usually so chill, act this desperate. Seo Young leans in and asks the going rate for a complete set of martial arts manuals from 2,000 years ago, all S-rank originals. That gets Wang's attention. His eyes go wide, and he stops smoking to listen. He takes a slow drag, blowing out a thick cloud of smoke, as he chews on her question. A little later, after the captain leaves, Wang is sitting by himself. One of his guards leans in and asks if her story could actually be true. The guard points out that 2,000-year-old S-rank originals would be worth an absolute fortune. Wang takes another puff and bluntly says the manuals are worthless. The guard blinks, asking if he heard that right. After all, books like that should bring in crazy money. The innkeeper repeats it, 0 credits. He explains that if those things were real, just one book could buy an entire planet, and then some. He scoffs, wondering how a mid-tier bounty hunter like the Flaming Devil could ever get her hands on them. They have to be fakes. He tells the guard to wake up and kick them out. Back at the table, Seo Young returns and asks where Sunja vanished to. Robert tells her she went on a supply run, then asks how things went with the innkeeper. Seo Young's eyes just light up. She smiles, saying the chat went perfectly. Wang even promised to give them a call the second he finds a buyer, but then something catches her eye. Right in front of them, the new guy is lounging on a bench, surrounded by a dozen empty plates. It looks like he inhaled all the food. The captain turns to Robert, asking if it's even physically possible to eat that much. Robert just sighs, saying they're lucky he finally stopped. The captain grabs her head in frustration, groaning that she would have ditched this whole thing if the payout wasn't so massive. Right as she says that, the tavern doors blast open. The loud crash makes everyone freeze and turn to look at the new arrivals. A group of men in uniform steps inside, looking like bad news. Seo Young instantly tenses up. She clearly knows exactly who they are. These serious-looking guys belong to a group called the Heavenly Demons Sect. Kind of a weird name, mixing heaven and demons in the same breath. The leader of the squad steps forward and starts scanning the room, like he's hunting for a specific target. He scans the faces of everyone in the bar using a high-tech eyepiece. Seo Young quietly points out that the guy scanning the room is actually Sanjian Wu Yu, the squad leader of the Heavenly Demons Sect's Red Wolves. Robert nods, whispering that the Red Wolf unit handles all the main inspections for the demonic sect. He wonders why they even showed up here. Seo Young turns to him. They're expert trackers, she explains. They've got to be hunting someone down right now. She leans in, whispering a warning. Don't make eye contact. You don't want to set them off. Our guy overhears this. Wait, did you just say demonic sect? He asks. Seo Young gives him a weird look, wondering why he cares so much about those guys. The new guy, still rocking hot dog crumbs around his mouth, asks if they mean the Heavenly Demon Sect. It looks like he actually recognizes them. The captain frowns. How do you know about them? You've been asleep for thousands of years. Then it hits her. This sect must have been around back in his era too. Our guy looks totally baffled. Why isn't everyone running for their lives? He insists that if those guys are really from the demonic sect, the whole place should be in full panic mode. Seo Young just blinks. Run, why would we run? She admits the Heavenly Demon Sect has its flaws, sure, but they are super proud to be the most righteous mainstream martial arts faction in the universe. I mean, they really are the best around. The new guy just stares at her, completely stunned. How the heck do demonic sect and righteous even belong in the same sentence? All of a sudden, his old dream, the one that always felt so hollow and out of reach, feels like it is actually coming true. Meanwhile, Sanjin is scanning the crowd when he spots someone super shady. He pauses to get a better look. A nearby couple turns around nervously wondering why he is staring, but he is not looking at them. His target is another guy sitting all by himself, face down on the table. Sanjin marches over and barks at him to look up. When the guy lifts his head, the system flashes internal energy level 52.7C. It also lists out his martial arts skills and flags him as wanted for petty theft and assault. Sanjin smirks. It's your lucky day, because you're not our target. He orders the thug to turn himself into the Martial Alliance, immediately threatening to break him if he doesn't comply. But Sanjin suddenly stops talking. His eyes go wide. Something feels very wrong. A heavy hand just dropped onto his head. Sanjin freezes, wondering who would be crazy enough to sneak up on him and touch his head. Turns out it is our martial arts master, who starts petting Sanjin like a cat. Our guy grins, saying how impressive Sanjin looks, casually ruffling his hair like he is just some kid. The master tells Sanjin that his impossible dream has finally come true. Meanwhile, the entire tavern freezes. Everyone is staring, completely shocked that anyone had the guts to walk up to a sect member like this. Card players drop their hands, knowing that a stunt like this is going to end in pure chaos. The master just laughs, telling the guys they made his dream a reality. Calling them youngsters, he praises the Heavenly Demon Squad, saying it is seriously impressive that they pulled this off. He goes a step further, putting Sanjin in a playful headlock. He comforts him, saying he knows how much these kids must have suffered to reach the top. Even the thug Sanjin was just threatening is sitting there totally speechless. Our guy stands there completely clueless while keeping Sanjin in a crushing headlock. Sanjin doesn't even flinch. He just smirks and asks if the new kid dropped on his head as a baby. Robert panics and steps in to defuse the situation, swearing their friend isn't actually crazy. He just has zero social skills. Brushing off the excuse, Sanjin calls our martial artist a brat, claiming it's the kid's lucky day. He casually reaches up to peel the kid's hands off his head. If I sensed even a drop of martial arts in you, you'd be dead meat by now, he threatens. But as Sanjin tries to break the grip, reality hits him. It's not budging. He starts actually struggling. Shock washes over his face. He can't pry the kid's fingers loose, no matter how much muscle he puts into it. Hearing the Red Wolves boss literally growling in frustration, Robert gets nervous and whispers to Seryong, asking if something is wrong. But she's just as clueless, shaking her head in confusion. Sweat dripping, Sanjin yanks at the iron grip with everything he has, even channeling his martial arts strength. But it's completely useless. Cursing under his breath, Sanjin snaps. It's time to use his internal energy. The system suddenly flashes, activating the Blood Wolf art at maximum power. Sanjin's eyes roll back, glowing pure white as he enters a total berserker mode. A massive, terrifying wave of raw power explodes from his body. He finally blasts the kid off him, roaring at him to stop messing around. The shockwave is so intense it shakes the entire inn, sending tables flying everywhere. The bystanders freeze in pure horror, realizing all hell is about to break loose. Everyone holds their breath, watching the chaos unfold, waiting for the bloodbath. Even Sanjin's own goons are watching from the back, jaws on the floor. Our guy smoothly lands back near his friends, giving Sanjin a few feet of space. Meanwhile, Sanjin looks ready to bring the entire building down on their heads. But as the dust settles, Sanjin realizes two things. He completely trashed the inn, and his target doesn't have a single scratch on him. Whispering to Robert, Seryong guesses that the Red Wolves boss must be completely out of shape lately, which would explain why he struggled so hard against a rookie. While they gossip, our guy just stands there staring at Sanjin with a blank, deadpan expression. The gang leader glares back, scanning the kid from head to toe, and demands to know who the hell he is. His mind is racing. How did this kid take a point-blank energy blast without flinching, when that attack was meant to blow him to pieces? To make matters even crazier, his system scan pops up, showing absolutely zero trace of internal energy or martial arts. In fact, the kid doesn't even exist in the database at all. Sanjin is utterly baffled. How can a normal human have zero internal energy and still be breathing? Right in the middle of his crisis, our guy casually interrupts, pointing out that the Blood Wolf demon art he just flexed is actually a bottom-tier body cultivation technique from the Heavenly Demons, though he gives them props for somehow keeping it alive. He then drops a bombshell on the Red Wolves boss. His internal energy and chi are completely out of whack, meaning his entire training method is basically trash. Our MC casually brushes him off, telling the guy it is actually his lucky day. Why? Because getting a personal hands-on lesson from him is a once-in-a-lifetime deal. Sanjin absolutely loses it. He calls our guy a total psycho. Summoning this glowing liquid fire, he lunges forward, ready to end the martial artist right there. His hand ignites into a massive blazing claw, unleashing what he calls the first form of the Red Wolf Demon Claw. He furiously slashes at our MC, but our guy just leans back. He doesn't even take a step. The fire completely misses him and blasts through the inn behind him, sending everyone into a total panic. Sanjin isn't stopping. He goes on a rampage, triggering a move called the Red Wolf Blast. But guess what? Our MC just weaves right through it, keeping his hands stuffed inside his pockets. At this point, the Red Wolf squad leader is completely fed up. He starts spamming his abilities, firing off a Red Wolf shockwave, combined with a Phantom Claw. But once again, the martial arts master dodges everything, like it is an absolute joke. Sanjin is so triggered the veins on his forehead look like they are about to pop. Pushing his body and mind to the absolute limit, he throws everything he has at the newcomer. He even morphs his hand into a demonic claw and wraps his entire body in a blazing tornado of hellfire. He is desperate to finish him off. But meanwhile, our MC is just casually enjoying the light show. He calmly analyzes the enemy, noting that Sanjin has solid internal energy and decent form. He easily tracks every single furious strike coming his way, but then he notices a major flaw in the guy's technique. Sanjin goes all out, his eyes flashing blood red, throwing every single ultimate move he has in his arsenal. Finally, annoyed, our guy just casually slaps Sanjin right on the head, telling him he is done playing around. That single strike squashes the squad leader's head down like a squishy marshmallow. Sanjin's skull literally caves in as the sheer force of the blow slams him straight into the floor, shattering the ground beneath him. The MC just looks down and calls his martial arts out. A massive crater is left behind, where Sanjin's face just met the dirt, looking like a freaking meteor just crashed into the middle of the inn. The rest of his squad is completely frozen in shock, watching their boss chew on rocks. Their jaws just drop to the floor at the brutal sight. The bystanders in the tavern are even more terrified, eyes wide open in pure disbelief. Nobody saw this plot twist coming. Xiao Zhang and Robert are just as stunned. This is the very first time they have ever seen a member of the fearsome heavenly demon sect get absolutely folded like laundry. Sanjin is out cold, his face planted deep in the crater he just made. Meanwhile, our guy just stands over him, hands still perfectly chill in his pockets. He lectures the unconscious guy, saying he might have memorized the moves, but he only copies them like a mindless parrot. He drops some hard truth: real martial arts isn't just about blindly mimicking some flashy techniques. It is about adapting them and truly making them your own. After handing out this harsh lesson, he tells Sanjin to get back up and take another swing if he actually understood. But Sanjin isn't moving an inch, probably needing some heavy-duty brain surgery right now. Getting annoyed, the master snaps at him, yelling at him to get up. The rest of the Red Wolf squad is just frozen, utterly speechless as they try to process what just happened. One of them finally snaps out of it, angrily screaming at our MC, asking how he dared to attack their squad leader. He calls him a kid and charges in for the kill, throwing every weapon and technique he has at him. But our guy just stands there, keeping one hand casually in his pocket. Soon every demonic sect member in the tavern is groaning on the floor with brutal handprints left on their skulls. Meanwhile, a drone scans the blood of an unconscious man, prying his eyelids open to see if he is even alive. Sandrine and the crew are loaded onto stretchers, while the sect sets up a barricade to keep the nosy crowd away. A local elder, Jo Chen-ruk, reports that they suffered severe bruising, but they are not in any real danger. Looking at the beaten men who will definitely need surgery, he mentions that some unknown guy did this to them. The suspect might look totally innocent in the photo, but he is packing 2,000 years of combat knowledge and raw power. The elder asks if this mystery guy is really not registered in the Martial Alliance database. He explains that the guy mainly hunts down Class B criminals or lower, and their leader is Seryong, aboard the civilian ship. The new guy sits quietly at the table, with a napkin tucked around his neck, patiently waiting for his food. Over in the Heavenly Demon District, Commander Yang wants to dig deeper into Seryong, the demonic woman. Joe mentions that she is a pretty famous bounty hunter. He adds that they left the inn right after the whole mess, but they can still track them down. He asks if they should dispatch a squad. Commander Yang tells him to drop it, saying he will handle this personally. Joe bows and leaves, leaving the commander to figure out his next move. The system starts dialing a call on the screen. After pressing the button, the commander waits patiently. Soon, a man in a priest's robe, Kim Sung-byum, leader of the Greenwood Group, pops up on the screen with a smile. Kim greets him, saying it has been a while. He asks the commander if he needs a favor. Yang just frowns, staying completely silent for a moment. Meanwhile, Xiao stares out the ship's window at the stars, trying to clear her head. Back in the 32nd Heavenly Demon District, the commander seems to finish giving his orders to Kim, who asks if he wants the Greenwood Group to take care of the situation. Somewhere out in deep space, the demonic ship is flying at full speed. Inside, our guy is getting pretty impatient, waiting for food that just is not showing up. Across from him, Xiao and Robert just stare at him in total silence. They keep watching him, eagerly wait for Xianzhou to finish grilling some hot dogs. Quietly, Robert leans in and whispers to the captain, asking if she is just as terrified as he is. Xiao shoots him an annoyed look, asking what on earth he is talking about. He reminds her that she saw it with her own two eyes. He points out that Sanjin Yua and the Red Wolf platoon are all high-ranking martial artists, and he completely wiped them out with just one swipe of his hand. Seriously, a single wave of his hand smashed into all of Sanjin's goons, sending them flying through the air, knocking their teeth out left and right. Robert remembers watching them get swatted like bugs, especially the one guy who slammed hard into a concrete pillar. Seo Young just stares at him in dead silence. She later claims she could have easily beaten them too, if she actually fought them seriously, since those guys are basically bottom-tier trash in their rank anyway. Robert admits that even if he risked his own life, he'd barely leave a scratch on them. He reminds her that this martial arts master just swatted them away like annoying little flies, without even breaking a sweat. Seo Young gets totally fed up with his rambling and marches right up to our guy. She slams her hands flat on the table, but he just stares back with a deadpan look, clearly wondering what her problem is now. She tells him in a low, serious voice that they need to talk. He just keeps staring right through her, not saying a single word. Finally, he breaks the awkward silence and casually says he needs to eat first before they can chat. Seo Young sits right across from him, crossing her arms defensively, and demands that he explains himself first. Her tone is super harsh, as she demands to know his real name. Robert quickly jumps in nervously, suggesting she should probably show him some respect, but she completely ignores that and asks the guy if he's deaf, demanding his name one more time. Just then, Sungjae walks in carrying a plate of steaming grilled hot dogs, which instantly catches our guy's eye. The captain snaps at him, telling him not to even think about taking a bite until he starts talking and demands his name again. He locks eyes with her, totally silent. Robert desperately tries to calm things down, leaning in to whisper to the captain that you should never bother a dog while it's eating its food, so he strongly suggests just letting the guy eat first. But the captain is clearly not having it. He finally speaks up, saying his name is Lee Mok-jin. Seo Young immediately grills him on exactly who he is and what his past job was, trying to figure out how he pulled off those insane moves. He just stares at her in total silence, fork and knife gripped in his hands. She glares right back, fully expecting him to answer her, and it turns into an intense staring contest. He eventually breaks the tension, casually dropping that he is a heavenly demon, and not just your average heavenly demon, but the supreme heavenly demon. Seo Young slowly repeats his words, wondering if this guy really just called himself a supreme heavenly demon. She wonders what kind of crazy nonsense he's spouting, even asking if he was fed some bad hot dogs that are making him hallucinate. But suddenly, a loud system alarm starts blaring through the room, and flashing red warning lights go off everywhere. Everyone instantly goes on high alert, wondering what the heck is happening outside. Another monitor announces that a massive target has just been detected. Sungjae rushes over to the control panel, shouting that someone nearby has locked onto them. Seo Young jumps up to check the screen, and angrily says she knew the heavenly demon would hunt them down, refusing to let them off the hook after Lee completely destroyed the Red Wolf squad. She yells out in pure frustration, finally realizing they are in massive trouble. Sungjae keeps her eyes glued to the system monitors, confirming it is actually not the heavenly demon's sect. A massive ship painted with a giant skull on its hull suddenly drops in, and Sungjae warns them that they are being targeted by the Greenwood faction. Meanwhile, out in the cold vacuum of space, a whole swarm of Greenwood fighter ships tightly circles the S-Demon vessel. From the bridge of the lead cruiser, an officer reports to Kim that their radar lock is confirmed, and that these guys are the exact bounty targets they got paid for. Kim, the top boss, running the Galactic Division of the 72 Greenwood Strongholds, better known as the Black Tiger of the Crescent Moon, just stares out the window in dead silence. The Greenwood Strike Captain asks Kim for the green light to fire the EMP capture rounds, but Kim narrows his eyes, asking if they are absolutely sure these guys are just bounty hunters. The captain nods, confirming they mostly scrape by on the outer edges of the galaxy, led by a boss known as Blazing Devil Seryong. The Black Tiger scratches his chin. Why would the mighty heavenly demon sect care about some small-time crew? The whole vibe just feels incredibly wrong to him. His mind flashes back to his shady meeting with Yang, the guy who tossed this little problem into his lap. He remembers how hyped he was about the fat paycheck, asking Yang for the exact mission details and where to drop the captured targets. But Yang had flipped the script. No captures. He wanted them completely wiped from existence. Kim's eyes had gone wide in pure shock back then, stammering as he asked if Yang seriously wanted him to take them out for good. Snapping back to reality, the Black Tiger mutters that this whole setup smells like dirty work and suspects a trap. He points out that the Heavenly Demon sect are literal killing machines, so there has to be a hidden reason why they outsource the dirty work to his crew instead. The captain listens to this breakdown, his own face turning pale with realization. Kim hesitates for a split second, weighing his options. He bets his life there is a deadly trap waiting for them right inside that S-Demon ship. Back on board the S-Demon ship, Seryong glares out the viewing deck at the massive fleet boxing them in. She scoffs, calling the Greenwood crew a bunch of basic thugs who probably just want to mug them. Robert shakes his head, saying he seriously doubts that. He points out that nobody brings an entire war fleet, just to shake down broke drifters like them. There is zero money to be made here. Saryong winces, totally offended at being called dead broke. She tells him she gets the logic, but it still stings to hear him say it out loud like that. Brushing it off, she says it does not even matter, and goes right back to trash-talking the Greenwood thieves. She cracks her knuckles, threatening to smack them all down and toss them out, if they dare block her path. Robert just awkwardly watches her talk big, while Lee is in the background totally starry-eyed over how cool the enemy fleet looks. Sunja finally cuts through the nonsense, warning her that it is definitely not going to be that simple. These guys are just a fraction of Greenwood's 72nd Galactic Division, but man, it looks like they brought out the whole fleet, just to hunt them down. Seo Young is totally stunned that a whole division rolled out, and she asks if this means their boss Kim is here too. Meanwhile, Lee just keeps staring out at the massive Greenwood ships, scanning them and geeking out over how awesome they look. Seo Young's mind jumps to the Black Tiger, Kim Sungbum. She admits she'd have a seriously hard time taking him down. Robert brutally cuts in, telling her she wouldn't stand a chance at all, saying she'd be wiped out in 3 hits if they ever actually fought. Annoyed, Seo Young snaps back that it's not that bad and she might just pull something off, if she really went all out. But Robert totally cuts her off, telling her to drop it. He suggests they just throw their hands up and surrender right away, telling her to chill out since they've got nothing to lose anyway. The captain just glares, totally annoyed that he just completely killed her vibe. She quickly shakes it off, ordering everyone to follow her lead from here on out. She explains that the enemy will first fire an EMP beam to kill their power and lock them down, which she'll just let happen. She adds that they'll board the ship locked and loaded, and she's fine with that too. Finally, they'll let the guys search the place and even hand over whatever useless junk they want for survival. Robert deadpans, asking how that's any different from just giving up, but she just snaps at him to follow orders. She walks over to Lee, who's still happily stargazing, telling him not to freak out when the EMP hits, because the ship is just going to shake a bit. Seo Young explains that the blast won't do any heavy damage, since the enemy isn't actually allowed to use real ship weapons, because of space laws. Seeing his blank look, she realizes he didn't catch a word of it, but just tells him to stay out of the way, since the guys will just leave once they grab what they're after. She adds that the only time things might go south is if a fistfight actually breaks out. Seo Young checks if Sunja is locked in, telling her to brace for the EMP strike. Suddenly, Sunja screams out that it's not an EMP at all, but a full-blown photon cannon, and the ship's system starts blaring a massive red danger alert. Seo Young freezes, whipping around in absolute shock. Sunja panics, yelling that a photon cannon is meant to vaporize entire ships, which means they're literally trying to kill them. Seo Young snaps into high alert, screaming that this is completely insane. Meanwhile, over on the Greenwood ship, the captain nervously tells Kim that opening fire totally breaks space laws and could drag them into some serious trouble down the line. He suggests they just capture the target and take them out quietly, but the division boss shoots that idea right down, muttering that he's got a really bad gut feeling about this. He coldly orders them to just blow the ship to dust and make a messy scene of it, since they can easily dump all the blame right onto their client, the Celestial Beings cult. Kim gives the final word, ordering them to fire the cannons the second they're ready. Back on the civilian ship, the panic is getting absolutely real. Seo Young desperately asks Sunja if they can make a quick warp jump, but Sunja cries out that they're boxed in from every single angle. Seo Young yells to trigger the shields, but Sunja drops the absolute worst news: the shields are dead, because they literally pawned off some of the ship's parts, just to pay for their own living expenses. Pure unadulterated horror completely washes over the captain's face. She's completely frozen, unsure of what to do next. Just seconds ago, she had the perfect plan, but now they're about to be blown to pieces. Over on the Greenwood ship, the captain turns to the division chief. He reports that the photon cannon is fully charged. Without missing a beat, Kim gives the order to fire. The massive weapon powers up and blasts a deadly beam straight at the S-Devil bounty hunters. They brace themselves, just waiting for the bitter end. Seo Jung pulls Sunjo close, totally helpless as death rushes toward them. Robert screams at the top of his lungs, while Lee just stares blankly, overwhelmed by the chaos. Then a massive explosion rocks the area. The blast erupts, tearing through space, and it really looks like it's curtains for our favorite bounty hunters. From the safety of his bridge, Kim watches the blinding fire rip through the vacuum of space. The flash is so intensely bright that it completely lights up the Greenwood ship. But suddenly, his eyes go wide. Something isn't right. As the smoke and flames finally clear, the S-Devil is still sitting there completely untouched. Not a single scratch. It just keeps floating forward through the dangerous crossfire. It's like that massive blast didn't even faze them at all. Then the dust settles to reveal It turns out, this mysterious craft took the photon blast head-on. It swooped in front of the S-Devil at the very last second, acting as a giant shield, and keeping our crew completely safe from the Greenwoods. Standing on top of this new ship is a striking woman in sleek white armor gripping a matching white spear. Seo Jung, still clinging to Sunjo for dear life, stammers out, "What? What is that?" Back on the Greenwood, Kim's face goes pale with absolute horror. It's the 2-meter-tall combat ghost herself, Elena. Elena stands her ground, her spear resting behind her. Inside the S-Devil, Lee stares out the window, totally mind-blown by this crazy turn of events. Beside her, Robert and Seo Jung have their faces glued to the glass, still trying to process how they aren't space dust right now. Meanwhile, Elena hasn't even flinched. She keeps her eyes locked on the Greenwood ships, ready to swat away anything else they throw at her. It's literally just one woman and her ship against an entire fleet, but nobody dares to make a move. Kim is visibly sweating now, frantically wondering what on earth Elena is doing here. From across the void, she stares right through him, daring him to make the next move. On the Greenwood Bridge, the captain reports back to Kim. He explains that Elena is using a terraforming shield, but they can definitely punch through it if they just crank the photon cannon up to max power. He eagerly asks for permission to reload and fire again, but Kim shuts him down. He says there's no need to kick off an all-out space war, just to crush one little bug. He warns the crew that they're dealing with someone way out of their league, so he orders them to prep the teleporter. They're going to negotiate face-to-face. As the crew scrambles to set up the warp pad, Kim keeps racking his brain. Why did this absolute monster show up out of nowhere? Back on the S-Devil, Robert drops a bombshell on the group. He tells them that the 2-meter-tall combat ghost, Elena, is actually an elite-class bounty hunter. She is so completely unpredictable that even top sect leaders steer clear of her. He wonders what she is doing out here, and Seo Jung admits she has no clue either. But one thing is for sure, she definitely saved their lives. She points out that if Elena had not tanked that photon blast, they would be nothing but space dust right now. Kim warps right onto Elena's ship, hoping to talk things out like civilized adults. He greets her warmly as Sister Elena, saying it has been way too long, but she just gives him absolute silence. She stares right through him, deadpan, probably trying to remember who this guy even is. Kim presses on, asking if she forgot him. He formally introduces himself as her 55th younger brother, and reminds her they met at their mother's birthday party 2 years ago. But Elena brutally tells him to get lost. The cold rejection stings Kim, who is just trying to be friendly, but he manages to keep his cool. He reintroduces himself properly this time as the Galactic Division leader of the 72 Bastions of Greenwood, dropping the whole brother act entirely. Making it clear he isn't messing around, Kim warns her that telling him to back off is basically insulting all of Greenwood, and he simply cannot let that slide. Unfazed, Elena keeps glaring and powers up her martial arts, fully ready to fight. Robert spots the glowing energy and realizes things are about to get ugly. Seo Jung chimes in, saying Greenwood is in for a really rough time, since landing a single hit on Elena is nearly impossible. She notes that fighting Elena by herself is a complete nightmare, but things could spiral completely out of control if her lion mother decides to show up too. Robert keeps his eyes locked on Elena and asks Seo Jung what exactly she means by lion mother. Seeing her intense stance, Kim nervously jokes that Elena hasn't changed a bit, always preferring to let her fists do the talking. He quickly throws his hands in the air and surrenders on the spot, desperately trying to avoid a disaster. He begs her to chill out since he isn't looking for a fight, but Elena refuses to drop her guard. Kim calculates that fighting right now would be a massive waste of resources, especially for a basic job like this. He suggests talking it out peacefully and gently asks why she even crashed their operation. The Black Tiger questions if those S-Devil bounty hunters are her actual targets, promising to back off entirely if they belong to her. Elena turns her back on him and marches straight toward the S-Devil ship, tossing out one final warning for Kim to get lost. Kim frowns in frustration, knowing there is absolutely no reasoning with her. He is left wondering why she suddenly showed up for such useless targets. Meanwhile, the S-Devil bounty hunters are glued to their window, eagerly watching the whole show play out. Elena floats right up to them and directly hacks into their comms. She tells them to hand over the goods or die. Her icy threat echoes loudly through the ship's speakers. The crew on board hears everything. Seo Jung looks totally confused, wondering what's going on now. Robert starts freaking out, wondering why Elena would want to rob them of all people, especially since they don't even have anything valuable. He turns to the captain, asking if she secretly hid some kind of treasure on the ship. He's panicking so much that he even answers his own question. He keeps repeating that there is nothing on board that would ever attract an S-rank bounty hunter, but it looks like Lee suddenly pieces things together as his eyes go wide. Robert and Seo Jung immediately turn to stare at Lee since he's the only valuable thing on board, to Elena at least. Lee just keeps watching the whole situation through the window. Seo Jung asks if he actually knows Elena. She even wonders if they had some kind of messy past romance, and things went bad before he ran away. But Lee simply tells them Elena isn't here for him. Seo Jung looks completely lost and asks what he means. He turns around and casually says, Elena is probably here for the kid standing right behind them. But when they turn to look, the space is totally empty, leaving them super confused. The captain demands to know what he's talking about, since no one is even there. Lee just tells the kid to come out, saying there's nothing to be afraid of. For a brief moment, absolutely nothing happens. The space just stays empty. Then, suddenly, a young girl starts appearing out of thin air with her head popping up first. Her sudden appearance totally shocks the bounty hunters, who spin around to get a good look at her. Soon after, her entire body fully materializes inside the ship. Seo Jung is stunned to see the kid, and Robert is absolutely losing his mind. The girl just stares right back at them without saying a single word. Seo Jung goes on high alert, grabbing Lee and demanding to know who this little girl is, and where she even came from. Lee casually explains that she followed them all the way from the inn. He felt her presence but couldn't see her shape, so he just let it slide. He notes that she hid her breathing perfectly. He calls it an advanced stealth technique, guessing that martial arts must have really evolved in this timeline. The girl just stays perfectly quiet, not making a sound. But Seo Jung corrects him, saying the kid isn't using some martial arts stealth technique at all. Instead, she's wearing an invisibility ring that lets her completely hide herself. Seo Jung points out that the ring is some seriously expensive quantum tech, but the captain snaps that she doesn't care about the price tag. She marches right up to the girl, demanding to know exactly who she is and what she's doing here. Seo Jung towers right over her. The girl looks up at her as Seo Jung demands to know why she snuck onto their ship in the first place. The young girl introduces herself as Jung Hwa-rin, looking absolutely terrified, but the captain cuts her off, saying she didn't ask for her name. She demands to know if those people outside are hunting her down. Hwa-rin, holding back tears, admits that they're probably after her. Meanwhile, outside, Elena is just patiently waiting for their answer. Hwa-rin tells the crew that as long as she's alive, those people will never stop hunting her. Robert totally loses his cool the second he hears the name Hwa-rin, catching the captain completely off guard. Still trying to process this, she asks if he actually knows this random girl. He instantly goes into full fanboy mode, gasping that there is no way he wouldn't recognize the lead singer of a group called the Pernoisians. Si-young just stares at him blankly, asking who on earth the Pernoisians are, since she has literally never heard that name in her life. Guess they aren't exactly the megastars Robert made them out to be. He loudly defends them, claiming they are the absolute hottest rookie idols in the whole galaxy, and tries to jog her memory with a track called Dynamite from Dado. The title sounds so weird, no wonder Si-young is clueless. Robert insists that Hwa-rin is the main vocalist behind that massive hit song. He even reminds the captain that he plays that track all the time and she always dances to it. He quickly pulls up her profile and confirms it is actually his idol, whispering that she is way prettier in real life. Honestly, someone should probably write a space law to keep Robert in check. Staring at a gorgeous picture of Hwa-rin on his screen, he points out that she comes from a place called Mount Hua, which happens to be his own hometown. He obsessively rattles off her stats, saying she is 5'5", weighs 103 pounds, has blood type AB, and is highly allergic to cats. Suddenly, Elena loses her patience, cutting through the comms to declare this is their final warning. They have exactly 10 minutes to hand over the goods. Elena makes it crystal clear: either surrender the girl or things are going to get really ugly for all of them. The cold threat in her voice snaps everyone back to reality. They freeze suddenly, remembering they are quite literally being held at gunpoint. Looking heartbroken, Robert gently asks Miss Warren, as he calls her, why on earth these scary people are hunting her down. His voice cracks like he is about to cry, dreading the thought of giving up his idol. Meanwhile, Soo-young stays dead silent, weighing the brutal choice she is forced to make. She bluntly tells Robert it doesn't matter because they have to hand her over regardless. Seo-young turns to the girl, stating that, to put it simply, she is an uninvited guest who has absolutely nothing to do with this crew, since she snuck onto their ship in the first place. The captain heavily tells her she has to go before she gets them all killed. Hearing this, Robert yells out, completely rejecting the captain's harsh words. He makes it super clear he refuses to just hand the poor girl over to her enemies. Si-young just turns her back on him, declaring her word is final as the ship's captain. Hwa-rin just stares at her in total silence, fully knowing she is about to be thrown right back to her captors. As they lock Hwa-rin inside the airlock hatch, Robert begs the captain, saying this is totally wrong, especially since the girl is literally the main vocalist of the Pernoisians. But Seo-young snaps back that they can't save her anyway, because they are already barely surviving this mess with Greenwood, let alone ready to fight that giant 6-foot demon named Elena. She sighs, telling him that even if they tried to fight back, the girl's fate would end up exactly the same. But theirs would end in absolute disaster. Knowing it could be a death sentence, Seo-young hesitates, but finally slams the red button, sealing their fate as the airlock hisses open. She tells Robert this choice is tearing her apart just as much, but there is no going back. Hwa-rin stands frozen, bracing for the absolute worst. as the cold, automated voice confirms the lock is off and the heavy doors slide apart. She takes a deep breath, readying herself for the end, but out of nowhere, a hand drops onto her shoulder. She jumps, whipping her head around to find Lee standing right beside her. He's got that same deadpan look he always gets whenever things go completely off the rails. Meeting her gaze, he casually reminds her that he said he had her back. Horan just stares at him, totally blown away that he's actually stepping up to face this monster with her. Back inside, Seryung spots Lee through the reinforced glass. She totally freaks out, having zero clue how he even slipped past them. Robert is just as stunned. Seryung scrambles to smash the close button, wondering if Lee has completely lost his mind. But Robert stops her, telling her to just watch. He actually thinks Lee is strong enough to take Elena down. Seryung snaps back, asking if he's blind, screaming that there is literally zero oxygen out there. The doors lock open, and the tension spikes as Lee casually strolls out with Horan, looking like he's about to get taken out by the vacuum of space before Elena even lands a hit. Sunja is shaking, and quietly mutters that it is way too late to pull them back now. Hearing this, Seryung's stomach drops, and she glues her face to the glass. Outside, she watches Lee and Horan clear the airlock, floating right into the dark void. Absolute panic washes over her face. Terrified by how reckless this guy is, she still can't wrap her head around the fact that he actually stepped out there. Meanwhile, Lee and Horan drift gracefully through the emptiness of space, heading straight for Elena's warship. Horan grits her teeth, locking in for the brutal fight ahead. As Lee keeps a steadying hand on her shoulder, she glances back, giving him a heartfelt thanks for coming. She warns him that these guys are top-tier fighters, and that he needs to stay completely on his guard. But when she looks at him, his eyes are completely bloodshot, bulging out of his head. He is violently choking, desperately puffing his cheeks to hold in his last breath, leaving Horan speechless. Panic sets in as she tries to figure out what's wrong. She frantically asks what he's doing, praying to God he didn't just walk out here without an oxygen shield. Lee gags, silently flailing his arms like crazy to paddle back to the ship. But in zero gravity, he's just spinning. Horan watches in pure horror, realizing he actually stepped into a vacuum with zero protection. Her big bad savior is literally about to pass out before the fight even starts. And Lee just keeps dog paddling, desperately trying to swim back to safety. But it's no use. Horan just stands there completely frozen, having no clue how to save him. Meanwhile, Elena and Kim watch the whole disaster unfold from their ship, absolutely stunned, wondering what on earth is happening. Suddenly, someone screams at Lee that it's 300 degrees outside, and the vacuum pressure is going to pop his organs in 10 seconds flat. Clearly, our boy knows absolutely zero about space survival. Lee keeps violently choking his face, turning a deep shade of purple, as he wildly thrashes his arms around, desperately trying to get back to the ship. His skin is puffing up, looking bruised and swollen while he keeps gasping for air. His eyes are bulging out, completely bloodshot, looking like they're about to pop right out of his skull. His eyelids flutter shut as he completely passes out from having zero oxygen. But out of nowhere, a pair of hands tightly grabs his suffocating face. It's Seryung. She rushed out into the void to rescue him. She quickly slaps a nano shield over his head and turns it on, giving him fresh air so he can finally breathe in space. When he still doesn't move, she frantically screams at him to wake up and take a breath. Panic fully sets in when he stays completely still, and she begs him to snap out of it. Suddenly, Lee's eyes snap wide open and stare right at her. She immediately lets go of him, letting out a massive sigh of relief. Now that she knows he's actually alive, she scolds him, saying she really thought he was a goner, playfully calling him a total jerk. He casually brushes it off, telling her she's making a big deal out of nothing, claiming he's the ultimate being and absolutely nothing can take him down. Seryung just stares at him dumbfounded. That definitely wasn't the big thank you she was expecting. Lee shifts his focus over to Elena's ship and spots Horan, the one who just tried to save him, already marching straight toward Elena. He turns back to Seryung and asks how they can get back inside. Back inside the main ship, Robert breathes a massive sigh of relief, seeing that Lee is still in one piece. So glad that Seryung made it out there just in time. But Sunjo chimes in, pointing out that she was actually super late. She reveals that Lee somehow survived out there for 6 minutes and 13 seconds. And the absolute craziest part of all is that every single one of his internal organs is completely fine. Meanwhile, back outside, Seryung is helping drag Lee back over to the ship, and Horan is totally shocked to see him right behind her. Back inside, Sunjo tells Robert that Lee has completely shattered every known human limit. On Elena's ship, she waits as Horan and the gang step up to her. Kim is still lingering right behind Elena, completely ignoring her orders to bounce. Lee takes the front line with Horan backing him up and Seryung keeping a safe distance. Elena just intensely glares at them, staying dead silent. Seryung sizes Elena up, instantly feeling the heavy, intimidating aura radiating from this 8-foot battle demon. It's absolutely no joke, completely living up to her wild reputation as a total combat freak. Then she spots Kim lurking in the back, making this whole standoff 10 times worse. She quickly whispers to Lee to keep his cool. As she slowly steps up to face Elena, she tells him she's got this, warning him to stay out of her way. Putting on her brightest fake smile, she gives a friendly wave. She greets Elena, saying it's great to meet her and asking how she's doing. It's super awkward. Still, she keeps talking, claiming she's heard all about their crew, and seeing them in real life, way better. She introduces herself as Seo Ryung, the leader of the S-Devils, also known as the Flaming Demons, but Elena just stares blankly. Clearly, she has no idea who that is. Greenwood gives the exact same blank look, saying absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, Horan grabs Lee's hand, completely terrified. He notices her shaking grip and turns to check on her. She's barely even breathing. He gently tells her there's zero reason to panic, reminding her that he's right by her side. But a panicked Horan whispers that Elena isn't even human. Terrified of what the girl might do, she explains that Elena is a battle-obsessed phantom traveling the globe, since she was a kid just to hunt down strong fighters. And honestly, not a single person has ever survived fighting her. It gets crazier, she even built an entire spaceship as a flying arena strictly to travel around and crush people. Lee is actually impressed by that resume, calling Elena quite a remarkable kid. He praises how young she is yet so deeply devoted, pouring her heart and soul into martial arts. To him, she's a once-in-a-lifetime talent. Horan is dumbfounded, saying that's totally missing the point. She tries to make him realize how deadly Elena actually is. Meanwhile, Seo Ryung keeps up her overly cheerful intro, telling them that no matter the situation, as someone from the Central Plains, they should try talking things out peacefully. Suddenly, Elena blasts a mass of deadly energy right at her flat out, stating she only speaks with her blade. The impact is insane. The shockwave rips through Seo Ryung's spot, tearing straight to the back of the ship and triggering a massive explosion. Elena just casually swung her spear to wipe Seo Ryung off the map, having zero patience for boring speeches. Her eyes glow, a piercing bright blue, as she waits for the heavy smoke to clear. Fully expecting to see Seo Ryung's lifeless body, she stands completely still, waiting for the dust from that crazy blast to finally settle. The thick smoke lingers in the air, since that single strike wasn't just a warning, it was meant to instantly crush anyone in its path. Suddenly, Seo Ryung lightly lands back on the ground, proving she was quick and to dodge the fatal energy blast. Annoyed, Seo Ryung asks what her deal is, especially since she just offered to talk things out. She's swinging her weapon around for no reason. Kim watches this whole crazy scene from the back, quietly thinking that Seo Ryung is actually pretty solid, because even if that strike wasn't at full power, it definitely wasn't something easy to dodge. Seo Ryung glares at her, waiting for an answer, but Elena just coldly asks what her name was again. He tells her it would have been much better if she never looked away. The 8-foot-tall battle demon starts to transform and trigger its combat skill. Kim figures that Seo Ryung should already know her enemy is a totally crazy scorpion, one that gets way more toxic the more you poke it, meaning she will just die a much worse death. All of a sudden, a random hiccup cuts through the smoke right behind them, making Seo Ryung jump a little. The hiccuping keeps going, and Kim squints into the fog to see who is making that noise. It turns out to be Horan, completely choking on all the thick smoke. Lee gently pats her back, trying to help her catch her breath. He casually tells her she is getting scared over nothing and that Elena's moves are just silly kid tricks. Watching this, Kim's jaw drops, completely stunned and wondering how this is even real. Lee just keeps softly thumping Horan's back and tells her the attack might look flashy, but it is really just a loud firecracker. He tells her there is no reason to be terrified of an empty tin can. Looking at where Lee is standing, Kim realizes he must have taken a direct hit from that blast, and cannot figure out how he is totally fine while Elena is still powering up. Lee is completely relaxed, just helping Horan. Elena glares right at them, pushing her inner energy higher and higher. Suddenly, she hits a massive power spike, and bright pink lightning violently crackles all around her body. Our guy still totally ignores her, entirely focused on curing Horan's hiccups. Elena just stands there, totally confused by his lack of reaction, staring at him blankly. Once Horan finally settles down, Lee steps up and talks to Elena like she is a naughty toddler. Seo Ryung gets mad that he cut in and tells him to mind his own business. Lee completely ignores that and asks Elena what exactly she is doing here. He points at Horan and says if Elena has an issue with the kid, she needs to talk to him first. Kim tries to run a quick scan on Lee but gets a total error, showing absolutely zero data on this random guy. While scanning, he also spots that Lee does not even have an inner energy core. Lee makes it crystal clear to Elena that Horan is under his watch, so anyone messing with her has to deal with him first. Meanwhile, the Black Tiger is completely stunned to hear he has no ID. Lee goes on, telling Elena that if she has no business here, she can just leave, and casually waves his hands to shoo her away. Right in the middle of his sentence, a blinding something glowing as bright as a shooting star pops up on their radar. The flash is so intense that Seo Ryung Kim and Horan all turn to look. The glare explodes from the ship, calling down a massive streak of blue lightning right onto the deck. It looks like a truly terrifying show of raw power. But right in the middle of it all, Lee just casually raises one hand and catches Elena's glowing spear. It looks like she used that exact weapon to summon the crazy lightning attack. He completely stops the deadly strike with his bare hands, totally unharmed. Gripping the spear tightly, Elena clearly just threw a massive kill shot, reacting to him, telling her to pack up and leave. He stops the spear cold with a single hand, keeping his other hand casually in his pocket, Lee, and asks if she seriously thinks she can take him on. Kim's eyes go wide. He is completely blown away. He cannot figure out how anyone could block Elena's fierce strike using nothing but their palm, especially since the guy has absolutely zero internal energy. Meanwhile, Lee casually breaks down Elena's fighting style just like he always does. He tells her it is pretty weird to use the Radiant Sword technique from the Dian Kong sect, while holding a staff, and channeling the Great Brahma divine art of the Shaolin for her internal energy. He stares at her with a deadpan look, and asks how a kid her age already has internal energy crossing the 3-cycle mark. He wonders if she stumbled upon some rare hidden power. By the way, cycles pop up a lot in Miram stories, where fighters measure their inner strength by 60-year cycles. This means one cycle equals 60 years of pure energy. While he is talking, Elena cranks her internal energy output all the way up to 90%, and wild lightning starts bursting from her body. Lee just stares, genuinely shocked that she actually hit 3 cycles. And now she is seamlessly shifting her energy into the Red Sun art of Wudang. He finally pulls his hands out of his pockets, keeping a close eye on her. By pushing her internal energy to the absolute limit right now, she is running at 95% capacity. Over on the sidelines, Kim stares at her, wondering if Elena was always this fierce, or if she recently leveled up. Lee watches her in total silence, curious to see just how far she will push it. He asks if she is really planning to go all out, and starts firing up his own fighting aura, as a bright glow wraps around his hands. But suddenly, the ring on Elena's finger starts flashing and vibrating like crazy. She holds her strike pose, still pouring more power into her attack, and the ring just keeps glowing brighter. Then, a sharp warning beep comes from the ring, totally throwing Elena off guard, because this means serious trouble. We jump into a quick flashback of Elena talking to her mom. Her mother promises she will not stand in the way of her traveling the world to chase her dreams. Elena stays respectfully on her knees while her mom speaks. Her mom tells her she is allowed to take on any fight that helps her grow stronger, but under no circumstances is she allowed to die. Elena just listens quietly, keeping her head bowed down. As her mother keeps talking, her mom reminds her that she is already incredibly strong and that less than 10 fighters in the entire world could actually hurt her. And even those elites could never truly push her to death's door. She reaches out to Elena, who stays bowed in deep respect. Her mother warns her to never forget that she is her mother. Slipping a ring onto Elena's finger, she lays down one absolute rule for leaving home. If that ring ever sounds an alarm, she has to run away immediately, no matter what is happening. That ringing sound means one thing: her opponent is completely out of her league. Her mother's warning echoes in her head if she ignores that sound. It's a guaranteed death sentence. Snapping back to reality, the demoness freezes cold, the terrifying truth sinking in. She locks eyes with Lee, who just looks like some scrawny, harmless kid. But Elena refuses to back down. She pushes forward, her mind flashing back to the toxic people who tore her down with vicious words when she was just a kid. She remembers the other kids, mocking her hesitation and telling her to just run away. She can still hear them telling her to know her place, laughing at how totally useless she was. Voices echo in her mind, telling her to just hide and survive. A memory hits her, a tiny girl surrounded by her mother's other children, constantly bullied. She recalls her mom forcing her to say hello, claiming they were all family. Her mother explained that even with different fathers, they all came from the exact same womb. But she remembers feeling completely alone, even as her mom insisted they had to stick together through blood. She vividly remembers her half-siblings, treating her like a total stranger, not even bothering to learn her name. Shaking off the past, Elena grits her teeth, ready to fight to the bitter end. She cranks her energy from 98% to 100, then to 110%, and then pushes it to a physically impossible 120%. The 8-foot-tall demoness erupts with so much raw power that the entire ship looks like it's catching fire from the sheer heat of her aura. Lee furrows his brow, actually looking a bit startled by her insane energy. Seo Young watches in pure shock, alongside Kim. Our boy just stands his ground, waiting for her next move, watching her wild transformation unfold. Her outfit physically shifts and morphs. She doesn't even look human anymore. She takes on the form of a black panther, her hands twisting into vicious claws, proving she's mutated into a high-tier killing machine. Lee mutters to himself. This is a skill he's literally never heard of because he's never seen anyone pull off a beast transformation using the Transcendental Awakening skill. He thinks to himself that martial arts have seriously leveled up over the years, Mid-thought, Elena explodes off the ground, lunging straight at him. Right now, Lee realizes modern martial arts might have advanced a bit too much. Yet he doesn't even flinch. He just stands there with his hands casually in his pockets even, as Elena closes the gap in a split second and unleashes a furious barrage of attacks. As she swings, he effortlessly weaves through her strikes, casually noting that her move is the chaotic storm sword technique from the Ame sect. She follows up with a blazing, fiery spiral, but he just keeps dodging with ease. He immediately recognizes this combo as the twin wheels of the sun and moon from the Kunlun sect. The giant battle demon gets visibly pissed off, cranking her energy level all the way to 125%. She unleashes a relentless barrage of attacks, but our guy effortlessly weaves right through them. He instantly recognizes her moves, the piercing sun spear technique, and the falling sun blade from the Dian Kong sect. Elena decides to turn up the heat, pushing her power to 140%. She whips up a massive blazing fire tornado, but Lee just casually leans back, dodging it without breaking a sweat. He spots the dog-beating staff technique combined with the drunken eight immortals' footwork from the beggar sect. Still holding his low crouch, Lee furrows his brows, trying to figure out how she managed to blend in the 4,000 red needles from the esoteric sect. Elena is absolutely in the zone today. She cranks her power all the way up to 170%, refusing to even entertain the idea of losing. She charges straight at him, wielding dual iron claws completely surging with explosive energy. Our boy instantly leaps into the... He jumps back to dodge her strikes, forced completely on the defensive. Yelling that he's had enough, he waves his hand. The sheer force of his move unleashes a massive blast of fire straight at Elena, who is leaping right at him. The impact is so intense that a huge explosion rips through the ship's deck, making it look like no one's getting out alive. The smoke is super thick this time, and Lee just stands there waiting to see what happened to her. Suddenly, a movement in the dust catches his eye. Even Kim is totally stunned. He looks like he's never seen anything this crazy in his entire career. Hworin and Seo Jong are staring in pure shock too. When the smoke clears, it's Elena. But now she's rocking about 8 arms and every single one is holding a weapon. Things just got seriously weird. She looks like one of those Indian deities floating in the air, with 8 glowing swords. Without warning, she dives at him, ready to slice him into pieces. She's pushing it to 190 now, and there's zero sign she's going to back down. She launches an attack from above, crashing down in a fiery blaze. But he just holds his ground, staring her down. She charges at him with an insane, fierce look in her eyes, and metallic armor starts spreading over her entire body, making her look more like a monster than a human. Lee just looks up, frowning as he sees how far she's taking this. He really hopes she backs off. But Elena does the exact opposite, rushing him at top speed. He has to admit her skills are impressive, but she's completely crossed the line, blindly throwing herself right at him. Lee realizes her awakening is just exposing her deepest scars and desires, meaning she's totally consumed by her own ego. He watches her keep coming, knowing she's dragging around some serious inner demons. Suddenly, explosive energy sparks in Lee's hand. He makes up his mind if she takes one more step, he'll have no choice but to take her down for good. Meanwhile, Warren stands behind him watching Elena close in, and right out of our guy's hands, a bizarre, glowing heavenly sword materializes. He remembers his promise. He swore he'd protect Warren no matter what. Seo Jong and Kim are absolutely mind-blown when they realize Lee is wielding a heart sword. The 8-foot battle demon doesn't even flinch completely, ignoring the glowing blade in his hands, dead set on putting him in the grave. It honestly looks like only one of them is walking away from this, just as she's practically right on top of him. He swings the sword in pure anger, ordering her to stop right there. The energy from the clash is so blinding it almost fries the eyes of everyone watching, and even Robert is struggling to see anything through the insane glare. A huge explosion erupts right above Elena's ship. From Robert's point of view, the impact of the heart sword is so devastating that it tears the entire ship apart, shattering it into pieces. The vessel suddenly blows up in the cold vacuum of space, right in front of the Greenwood fleet. The blast is so massive that from the main Greenwood ship it looks exactly like a bright burning star. The captain stares in pure horror at the explosion right where his boss was just standing. The blast was so massive there was absolutely no way Kim could have made it out alive. Suddenly, a rough cough breaks the silence. It turns out Kim actually managed to teleport at the very last second, right before the entire ship went up in flames. Covered in blood, Kim shouts out for Lord Cheju. He grunts to the captain that he is still breathing while Cheju rushes over to help him up. Leaning heavily against the wall, Kim stares out the window at the flaming wreckage of the destroyed ship. He mutters to Cheju that if he had teleported even a tenth of a second later, he would have been blown to pieces. Bright flames from the explosion are still burning out in the cold vacuum of space, with chunks of metal drifting everywhere. Standing on a massive piece of debris from Elena's ship, Se-young screams at Lee, asking if he has lost his mind. She yells that they both could have been killed. She asks him who in their right mind blows up their own ship just because they get mad, scolding him that he should have held back. Blood drips from Lee's mouth as he struggles to speak, coughing out that holding back simply was not an option. Seeing the blood, Se-young immediately panics, rushing to his side to check if he is badly hurt. Meanwhile, Kim just keeps staring upward, telling her that he faced a power way beyond what they expected. Se-young follows his gaze and her eyes widen as she realizes what he is looking at. Floating out in space among the broken ship parts is Elena's naked body drifting next to her shattered weapon. The captain stammers, asking if she is really dead, since she is just floating there without making a single move. Never taking his eyes off her body, he mutters that she is not gone yet. Suddenly, a mysterious woman appears out of nowhere and gently catches Elena's unconscious body. Lee explains that his sword strike failed to take out the 8-foot phantom, because some intense unseen force protected her. The strange woman looks down at Elena with pure warmth and covers up her exposed body. She has this breathtaking angelic beauty staring at Elena with a look of deep sadness. Out of nowhere, a blinding light beams down from a massive ship above them and the woman lifts the phantom fighter up. Se-young instantly recognizes her as the matron of the Western Sky Sword while Kim freezes, realizing it is his own mother. This is the very same mother who gave Elena that ring, the one she decided to completely ignore. The matron carries the broken body up into her glowing ship, without saying a single word to anyone watching. Lee just stares in total shock, still gripping his heart sword tight. Cut to the inside of the matron's massive ship, where we see a glowing pool filled with green chemicals. Elena's unconscious body is floating, suspended in the liquid which seems to be healing her deep wounds. Her mother stands quietly, right in front of the glass tube. Watching her closely, she looks absolutely heartbroken, just praying for her to wake up soon. She keeps her sad eyes glued to Elena inside. Shortly after, Kim, Se-young, Hworin, and Lee step up right behind her. It looks like she gathered the group for a serious talk. Kim immediately bows deeply to his mother out of pure respect. Meanwhile, Se-young tightly squeezes Hworin's hand to comfort her, because the poor girl looks absolutely terrified. Kim stammers to his mom that he had no idea she was coming, begging her to punish him for his disloyalty. She cuts him off before he can even finish, snapping that this is none of his business. She coldly tells him that a room like this is no place for little kids like him. She orders him to stand there and act like he does not even exist. The harsh words clearly sting Kim, but he just lowers his head, totally submissive to his mother. She steps right up to Lee and gives him a respectful bow. She formally introduces herself as the matron of the Western Heaven Sword. Kim's jaw drops seeing her own mother act so humble, and Se-young is just as stunned by her sudden politeness. The matron apologizes to Lee for breaking the dueling rules by stepping in so fiercely. Driven by a mother's love, she even offers to take a minor injury as an apology, if that's what he wants. But Lee casually waves it off, telling her there's no need for all that. He asks if Elena is her kid, glancing over at the girl resting inside a strange machine. Se-young leans in close, frantically whispering that he is talking to the legendary Western Heaven Sword matron, and begs him to show some respect. Meanwhile, the matron confirms that Elena is indeed her daughter. Lee just shrugs it off, saying family always comes before some strict dueling code. All around the room, empty pods look just like Elena's. Se-young nervously whispers to Lee again, pleading with him to watch his tone since this woman is one of the legendary 5 immortals. Se-young warns him that her temper is so terrifying she could slice a man in half with just a glare. But right as he speaks, something catches her off guard and she suddenly goes dead silent. The matron drops to her knees in front of Lee, leaving Se-young absolutely speechless. Outside the ship, several vessels from the 72 Greenwood strongholds are waiting for Kim. A bit later, the matron pulls our guy aside for a private chat on the top deck of her ship. She reveals that her daughter hasn't woken up yet, so she has no clue why Elena attacked their ship or went after Hworin. The only thing she knows for sure is that Elena passed through Mount Hoa before ending up here. Chances are some mysterious client hired her at Mount Hoa to track down Hworin. Lee just stares out into the distance, lost in thought, and doesn't say a single word. She tells him she recognized the move he just used. It was the demonic heart sword technique. And calling him revered master, she asks if he has any ties to the heavenly demon sect. Lee completely dodges the question, and simply replies that he doesn't know. He mentions there used to be a strong bond a long time ago, but time slipped away and he can't be sure anymore. He adds that time has a way of rusting, even the strongest chains, as if they were made of iron. Meanwhile, Hworin and Se-young are waiting nearby in another part of the ship. Our guy goes on to say that time can even fade away bonds that mean more than life itself. All the while, Kim is quietly eavesdropping on their entire conversation from inside the ship. The matron just stares at him, totally unsure of what to make of this guy. She admits to herself that he truly is an extraordinary figure. His chi, his internal energy, and his martial arts are completely flawless without a single trace of being forced. She wonders how someone could even reach this level, since that kind of perfection is only found at the absolute peak of martial arts. Kim pays her absolutely no mind, and just keeps staring off into the void. The matron keeps studying him. He looks like he is only in his 20s, leaving her to wonder if he has somehow reversed his own aging. She finally breaks the silence and asks Lee if she can make a request, still calling him her revered master. Lee bluntly asks if she is challenging him to a serious fight, leaving her completely shocked that he saw right through her. He points out that while she is acting incredibly polite, every single word coming out of her mouth is dripping with killer intent, feeling like a blade grinding against a whetstone, getting sharper by the second. The matron of the Western Heaven soared. He smirks, impressed that his sharp ears actually caught her quiet little whispers. He looks her dead in the eye, saying he's never backed down from a fight, but he drops a heavy warning. If they throw down right now, one of them isn't making it out alive, and the winner, they'd be left completely battered and half dead anyway. After all, a blade that's too rigid won't bend, it just shatters. Not backing down the Western Sky Sword, Matron flares up her internal aura, fully accepting whatever dark fate comes her way. She's practically begging for an excuse to clash blades. From the sidelines, Sister Yang feels the matron's killing intent spiking. Panic sets in. She knows absolute chaos is about to break loose, but right as the matron powers up to her peak, Lee casually gazes out at the view from the ship and asks, "Do we even have a real reason to kill each other right now?" The matron freezes, totally caught off guard by his sudden chill vibe. He shoots her a side glance. "Save the deathmatch for when we actually have a reason to hate each other. Right now, he just wants to kick back and enjoy the sights this new world has to offer." The tension instantly drops. His carefree attitude actually catches her interest. She dials back her aura, powering down completely, and agrees to a truce. Meanwhile, floating through the vastness of space, the matron's massive ship cruises right alongside the heavily armed Greenwood fleet. The two massive forces hold their positions in the silent void. Soon after, the demon forces start pulling back and clearing the area. It looks like Lee and the Western Sky Sword matron have finally wrapped up their intense little chat. Later on, Kim is having a very serious sit-down with his mother. He drops a bombshell. The hit order actually came straight from the Heavenly Demon Sect. They're desperately trying to bury a secret. Kim, still kneeling respectfully on the floor, swears up and down that his intel on the demonic cult is rock solid. She frowns, totally baffled. Why would the Heavenly Demon Sect want to wipe out the very people on the demon ship? And what massive secret are they hiding? She points out that Lee is out here using the supreme martial arts, exclusive to the Heavenly Demon Sect. It makes zero sense to put a hit on their own guy. On top of that, why would a proud demonic cult outsource their dirty work to Greenwood? Kim leans in, revealing some fresh, highly classified intel. Word on the street is that the elite Red Wolf Squad just got completely wiped out by an unknown monster. He connects the dots, suggesting Lee might be the monster who slaughtered them. His mother sighs, telling him to stop overthinking things above his pay grade. She bluntly shuts him down, making it clear that whatever this conspiracy is, his little brain isn't going to figure it out anytime soon. Ouch, right in Kim's pride. She gives him a strict order: just stick to the shadows, track their every move, and report back. That's his only job right now, nothing more. Desperate to look cool, Kim brags that Greenwood operates the absolute best tracking unit in the entire world, proudly reminding her that he's part of the elite Greenwood command. His mom just stares at him. Dead silence. Sweating a bit, Kim stays perfectly still on his knees, waiting for her approval. Finally, she nods. She'll trust him to tail them, but gives one final lethal warning: do not interfere with them. She adds that she could never bear to see her child get hurt. Hearing this unexpected maternal warmth, Black Tiger's eyes go wide in pure shock. He turns around, barely whispering the word, "Mother." Honestly, it is pretty obvious that all the kids belonging to the Western Heavenly Sword matron suffer from some serious mommy issues and abandonment trauma, considering she has way too many kids. Just before stepping out of the room, she pauses to ask him one final question. He whips around, eager to hear her out, and she simply asks for his name. Kim just stares at her, completely stunned. Meanwhile, back on the spaceship, Hua Ren is cowering behind Lee, while Seo Young screams her head off. Seo Young looks so furiously angry you can practically see steam blowing out of her ears. She demands to know exactly what Hua Ren did to get tangled up with Greenwood and the terrifying Heavenly Sword matron. She asks if the girl flipped the whole universe upside down before coming here. Outside, space is totally quiet, with zero ships or martial artists trying to slaughter each other. Hua Ren looks down, her face dark, and genuinely apologizes for dragging them into this giant mess. She swears she has no idea why everyone is suddenly hunting her down. She explains that after her tour she went back home to Mantua, but everything had completely changed. They all grab a seat at the table to talk it out while Sunja whips up a massive mountain of hot dogs for Lee to inhale. Hua Ren tells them that the second she got back her own village, people suddenly tried to murder her. She explains that she ran for her life, fleeing her hometown until she ended up right here. All the while, Lee is shamelessly stuffing his face with about 7 hot dogs at once, grabbing 4 more with his other arm, totally zoning out the heavy conversation. Seo Young sighs, saying she hasn't got a clue what Hua Ren is rambling about, and turns to ask Sunja if she knows anything. But Sunja looks just as lost, admitting it makes zero sense to her too. Hua Ren stays quiet, struggling to find the right words to explain her crazy situation, while Lee is dropping chunks of meat everywhere in his wild feeding frenzy. Suddenly, a stray piece of flying meat lands right in Ho Ren's mouth and she scrambles to spit it out. She jumps in shock as Robert slams his fists on the table, demanding to know if she just said Mantua. He roughly shoves Seo Young aside and urgently asks if she means the planet Mantua, which just happens to be his very own hometown. The poor girl accidentally swallows the meat stuck in her throat and starts choking and coughing wildly. But Lee does not even notice. He is just chowing down like a wild beast, watching this whole circus unfold. Sunja frowns deeply, muttering that humans are completely out of their minds. Back over on the other side, aboard the Heavenly Sword Matron's massive ship, one of her giant stasis tubes has been completely shattered. From the broken glass, Elena's conscious body flops hard, and she immediately starts hacking and coughing right in front of the matron. Her mother watches with a worried look, letting her cough it out to regain her senses. Without missing a beat, she asks what on earth happened to her back on Mantua, but Elena just keeps coughing her lungs out. Still struggling to catch her breath, Elena finally forces herself to sit up and shoots a weak glance up at her mother, cutting back to the Wild Crane Inn, the exact spot where Lee ran into the Red Wolf squad. Inside, innkeeper Wang, the 18th, is glued to the footage of Lee's showdown with Elena. He watches closely as Lee effortlessly dodges every single strike. Then, tired of playing defense, Lee unleashes the Heart Sword, triggering a massive explosion that literally rips through space itself. Wang and his guards share looks of pure shock. His mind flashes back to a chat with Seo Jung, when she asked about the price of a 2,000-year-old martial arts manual collection. She swore they were all S-rank originals. Now his jaw drops as it hits him. She wasn't lying. He just let a total gold mine slip right through his fingers. Meanwhile, over at the Heavenly Demon Sect's District 32, the screens show Elena charging at a completely still Lee. Seconds later, she unleashes a flurry of attacks, but he just weaves right through them. Pure terror washes over Jung Ritak, the commander of District 32. Sweating, he demands to know what's going on as Lai raises the Heart Sword for the finishing blow. Right behind him, the Western Sky Sword matron asks for his thoughts. She casually notes the style looks awfully familiar. He turns around. Her piercing gaze waits for him to connect the dots to a certain mysterious group. Jung admits the guy's skill level is completely off the charts, something never seen before. But he's totally clueless about what she means by familiar. The sword matron just stares him down, wondering if he's actually this blind about the new threat on their radar. Jung locks eyes with her, confused why she keeps pushing this familiar angle. She realizes he truly has no idea. Lee's moves trace back to their own Heavenly Demon Sect. Switching gears, she asks why he targeted their guy in the first place, and why he dragged Greenwood into this mess. The commander snaps back. This is internal sect business. He warns her to back off, telling her it's none of her concern, even if she is the matron ruling the Western Sky Cosmic Zone. He scowls, holding his ground. But instantly a gash appears on the left side of his neck. Jung stumbles back as warm blood starts trickling down. The sword matron calmly holds her blade. She sliced him faster than the eye could see. Suddenly, a dark, suffocating aura explodes from her as she grips her weapon tight. The message is clear, she's getting answers, whether he likes it or not. Jung, meanwhile, realizes it's just a shallow flesh wound. She held back. She could have easily taken his head but chose to spare him. The commander presses a hand to his throat to stop the bleeding. He glares at her. Are you really planning to go to war with our group? She just laughs it off, asking if of all people, she looks like someone afraid of spilling a little blood. He stares at her, still clutching his bleeding neck in silence. His mind races. This woman is a total martial arts fanatic, someone insane enough to sacrifice her own kids for power. Jung knows she doesn't care about logic or consequences when she's chasing her twisted obsession. Guess we know exactly where Elena gets her crazy drive from. The tension peaks as the matron's blade suddenly glows a brilliant, deadly red. Fully alert, she braces herself for action. A heavy purple aura floods the entire room. She stares him down, demanding to know his next move. Will he step up, or tuck his tail and run? For him, the choice is a no-brainer. He knows that even if all 76 martial artists from District 32 rushed her at once, they wouldn't stand a chance against the matron's insane power. Still, he looks death right in the eye and stands his ground. He sparks up his own martial aura, summoning blazing flames right into the palms of his hands. He tells her to bring it on, fully aware that this fight is basically a death sentence. Let's get this over with, he taunts, daring her to strike if she really plans to wipe out the 76 members of the West Heaven Sword. Morin just smirks, actually amused by his guts. She remembers the rumors how the Heavenly Demon Sect is growing more dangerous by the day. Deciding it's not worth the hassle, she backs down. She casually drops a bomb. The mysterious guy they're dealing with uses the demonic heart sword technique. Yang, who was just seconds away from a bloody fight to the death, instantly freezes in pure shock at the mention of the demonic sect. He demands to know what the hell she means. The matron calmly repeats that, the very blade that struck down her daughter. was indeed the demonic heart sword, the second most powerful martial art in the entire heavenly demon sect. The commander is completely caught off guard. He shakes his head, claiming that's totally impossible. That specific technique was wiped out thousands of years ago. It's nothing but an ancient myth now, and absolutely no one in their sect knows how to use it. The matron just shrugs. That sounds like a him problem. If he's out of the loop, so be it. She's only telling him the cold, hard facts. Changing the subject, she looks right at Egon. Why are you even hunting this guy down? She points straight at Lee's picture glowing on the monitor, questioning his real motives for tracking him. Jung stays dead silent. He glares at her, debating if he should really spill his secrets. Finally, he admits he was never after Lee at all. Shifting his finger over to Hwoaran, he reveals she was his true target all along. Meanwhile, deep in the Televiatra star system, a swarm of demons suddenly invades Robert and Hwoaran's home world, the legendary planet Mount Hua. Tearing through the atmosphere, they touch down directly in Hwoaran's hometown Hua County. The whole place gives off this beautiful ancient Japanese vibe, looking totally peaceful on the surface. But something is very wrong. The town is completely dead. Every single shop is wide open and abandoned. There is not a living soul anywhere, no matter where you look. The streetlights are still glowing and the houses are perfectly clean, but everyone has completely vanished. As they touch down on the planet, Sir Young turns to Hwoaran, asking what's wrong and why the entire place is completely dead. She wonders where everyone went, even guessing there might be some kind of town festival. But Robert looks around in pure horror. He doubts it, pointing out that every single store door is left wide open. The ship finally lands and they check the camera feeds, seeing the empty shops with market tools just dumped on the ground. Sunja chimes in. She says this city has over 10,000 people, but she isn't picking up a single sign of life. Robert panics, insisting something terrible happened. He yells that they need to get out there right now. Sir Young tries to calm him down, asking why he's suddenly losing his mind. He grabs her so hard that Sir Young struggles to pull away, coughing. She gasps, telling him to let go because she can. While she tries to pry his hands off, heavy tears roll down. She just stares blankly at her deserted hometown. Robert snaps at her, demanding to know what is going on, begging her to speak up if she knows why the place is a ghost town. Sunja interrupts, saying she finally picked up a life signal. The android pinpoints the signal. It's coming right from deep inside the Monroy headquarters. Sunja double-checks the scanner, warning them that the signal is massive, yet it seems to be coming from just one person. Fast forward to nightfall, they finally reach the Gia Pavilion. The building is huge, but it gives off a super creepy vibe, completely covered in thick smoke. They huddle at the entrance, dreading whatever might be hiding inside that spooky place. Suddenly, Robert steps up wearing some kind of Iron Man combat suit. Sir Young looks at him crazy, asking what on earth he is doing and if that old thing even works. Robert just smirks, bragging that once you're special forces, you're always special forces. As they slowly walk up to a dark tunnel opening in front of the pavilion, the captain radios Sunja. Sunja warns that the signal is spiking like crazy. She tells them to watch their backs, because whatever is in there does not seem human at all. Sir Young nods, suggesting they send in a scout drone first, just to test the waters. But Robert completely loses it the second he hears the target isn't human. Before the captain can even finish her sentence, Robert charges straight into the pitch black. He screams that he's going to kill whatever is in there. Sir Young just stands there totally speechless at his stupidity. The captain mutters about how crazy it is that he's making so much noise all just because they are in his hometown. She sighs, realizing there is zero point in sending a stealth drone now. Thanks to Mr. Patriot screaming his lungs out, the target definitely knows they are here. They have no choice but to push forward. She orders the rest of the crew to stay on high alert. But right as they step up to the entrance, a massive burst of flames erupts from deep inside. It rushes straight at them. Seryong sees the blinding light and freezes, wondering what the hell is coming. A giant pillar of fire blasts out of the dark opening, burning absolutely everything in its path to a crisp. Seriously, let's hope they aren't about to fight a literal dragon. The blast is so ridiculously powerful that it shoots past the tunnel entrance and scorches the houses all the way across the street. A few seconds later, the flames suck back down into the tunnel and dead silence falls over the area. Seryong is completely shaken by what just happened. Hwoaran is just as terrified, staring in pure horror at the massive fire blast. The flames barely missed them. Honestly, the fact they're even breathing and how they pulled it off is the crazy part. The two girls are practically squished together, trying to dodge the blast. And let's just say the pose is pretty awkward. Turns out, Lee had swooped in, scooped them onto his lap, and threw up a shield to block the inferno. But Lee doesn't even notice how close they are. His eyes are completely locked on the dark tunnel ahead. Seoyoung finally snaps out of it, looking back and wondering where the heck that massive fireball came from. Our boy decides it's time to move, putting Seoyoung and Hwoaran down. Seoyoung hits the ground on her back with a loud groan. Pushing forward, they stumble right into Robert. His gear looks totally scorched. Seoyoung rushes over, begging him to say something if he's still breathing. but the guy is frozen stiff, looking like he just got roasted alive. The captain jumps on the comms, ordering Sunja to run a scan. She quickly checks him out and gives them the green light, saying that thankfully his heavy-duty suit actually did its job. Seo Young is super confused though. If he's alive, why isn't he talking? The captain suddenly shouts out, figuring out exactly what went wrong, and they decide to just give Robert a minute to wake up from the shock. Meanwhile, Lee is busy scanning the cavern, still trying to trace back that mystery blast. He looks up and catches a bright pink flash of light pulling him closer. Down at the very end of the path, he spots something drifting through the air. They're tiny pink flower petals, and they're the things giving off those bright sparks. One single petal floats down onto our boy's head and completely shatters, leaving him totally baffled. Out of nowhere, the entire tunnel is swarmed by thousands of these glowing petals. Pushing through the storm of flowers, the petals are all pouring out of a guy sitting dead center on a massive throne. This guy right here, he's the Grand Master of the Manhwa sect, just chilling on his seat of power. His eyes are completely shut, but he's wrapped up in this insanely heavy aura. He doesn't even seem to realize they're standing right there. Lee narrows his eyes, trying to piece this whole thing together. Seo Young spots the guy too and quickly asks Sunja if this mysterious man is the one giving off that life signal. Sunja confirms it. It's him, the absolute boss of Mount Hua. She pulls up his file. He's known as the Plum Blossom Sword Sovereign, Yeongjok-san. Hearing that name leaves Seo Young completely speechless. She stares at him, her jaw practically dropping now that she knows she's looking at the legendary Sword Sovereign of the Mount Hua sect. Lee reaches out and snatches a plum blossom from the air. Staring at it, he mutters that the way these petals are blooming from intense heat means this dude has completely mastered the plum blossom heavenly fragrance heart technique. But as the delicate flower crumbles in his palm, it bursts into a deep purple glow. That makes him pause. Why on earth are plum blossoms blooming purple? Then it hits him. The only way this happens is if the heavenly fragrance art somehow got fused with the legendary purple mist divine heart technique. Through all of this, Yang just sits there like a statue. He doesn't even flinch, just radiating massive waves of pink and purple energy. But over on the sidelines, Horan can't look away. Tears are just pouring down her face. Her voice cracks as she calls out a single word. Dad. So it really looks like the ultimate sword sovereign, totally zoned out to the world around him. Horan's dad just sits there. Lee stands frozen, his eyes locked on Young. A bad feeling washes over him. Young is glued to his throne, completely ignoring them like they don't even exist. Young steps up to Lee. What's wrong? She whispers. He breaks it down for her. The heavenly plum scent technique is pure blazing yang energy. But the purple mist divine art, that's ultimate yin. That's why even the Mount Hua elders can only ever master one. Yang is fire, yin is water, he mutters. What do you think happens when they clash? Before she can answer, he drops the heavy truth. When a fighter's greed pushes them past the breaking point, a demon plants itself right in their soul. They aren't human anymore. Lee summons his heart sword just like he did against Elena. He's ready to put down the demon-possessed Yang. He barks at Yang to grab the others and run. This isn't going to be a walk in the park. His energy flares up, glowing brightly, and a thick, intense aura floods the whole cave. I can't promise I can keep you safe if things get ugly, he warns. But before Lee can swing, Horan dashes toward Young. Dad, Sir Young shrieks, begging her to stay back. But the little girl completely tunes her out. Lee grips his blade, ready to strike. Realizing it's too late to pull her away, he freezes. Up above, Sunja watches in shock, terrified for the kid's life. The digital clock ticks down. 2 seconds until 6 p.m. Sunja knows a bloodbath is about to happen. Down below, Horan blocks out the screaming, throwing her little arms wide open to hug her dad. Wild sparks of energy are still bouncing off him. Sunja stares at the monitor. 1 second left until 6 p.m. Inside the dark tunnel, the little girl buries her face into her dad's chest. And somehow, that deadly energy wrapping around him doesn't hurt her at all. Young's jaw drops. Lee just holds his ground, watching the crazy scene unfold. Then out of nowhere, the glowing flowers and the bright light swirling around the throne flash a blinding warm yellow. They slowly fade away into nothing. Young finally stands up, wrapping his arms around Horan. The fog in his eyes clears. He stares at her with deep, loving dad eyes, pulling her close and kissing the top of her head. The captain is losing his mind. What the heck is going on? He yells. How did this guy just switch from a literal monster to super dad in 2 seconds? Sunja's voice cracks over the comms. It's fine, she gasps. The world. It went back to normal. Back up in the ship. Sunja is staring at the screens like she's seen a ghost. Young snaps. What are you talking about? The android shakes her head. Everything is fine now. The clock ticks just past 6 p.m. Meanwhile, down in the city, the streets are alive again. People are walking around like nothing even happened. Sunja clicks through. The street camera is totally stunned. There are people everywhere, she whispers. She checks every single feed. Areas that were complete ghost towns just a minute ago are now packed. Couples holding hands, folks grabbing groceries, just living normal lives. Sunja swallows hard. The missing people. The missing crowd seems to have magically reappeared. Meanwhile, Yang just keeps holding Horan close while Seojin stares blankly straight ahead. She can't wrap her head around it. How did all these vanished people just suddenly pop back into existence out of thin air? Lee, on the other hand, isn't impressed at all. He just narrows his eyes, watching with a heavy scowl, as the early morning crowd casually wanders through the city streets. It's like he totally forgot that this entire town was a creepy ghost town just a few minutes ago. Cutting over to Robert, Seryong, and Sunja, the trio grabs a seat inside a local diner. They look totally creeped out by this whole situation. Seryong turns to Sunja, asking how on earth she missed all these life signs. Was the bioscanner glitching out, she asks. Sunja takes a slow sip of her drink, and reminds her that they double-checked the device together. The scanner was working perfectly fine. The android runs another diagnostic on the spot. System's normal, she confirms, even as she talks and scans the passing crowd. But then she spots something chilling. She turns to the bounty hunter, pointing out that everyone here feels completely hollow, totally drained of their inner energy, from the grown-ups down to the little kids. Nobody is giving off a single ounce of life force. It's reading absolute zero. Robert just brushes it off. No big deal, he says. They look perfectly fine to me, right? But Seryong isn't buying it. A deep sense of dread washes over her. Robert keeps trying to lighten the mood. Hey, it's all good. Just a minute ago, we thought these folks were wiped off the map. And boom, here they are alive and well. He turns back around, rubbing his stomach, saying he's starving. So he decides it's time to grub. He waves his hand wildly at the diner's waitress to grab her attention. Seryong rolls her eyes. You were just freaking out a second ago, and now you don't even care. Seeing the waitress walking their way, Robert grins. Quiet down, food is on the way. As she gets close, he confidently fires off his order. I'll take a double bowl of noodles and the large pork special. But then his voice trails off. Something is super weird. The waitress just glides right past their table, totally ignoring his request. Robert sits there, frozen, his hand still awkwardly hovering in the air. Is the customer service just trash here, or did she not hear me, he thinks. He peeks over his shoulder and watches her busily serving the other tables. Why did she just blow him off? Seeing her loop back in their direction, he breathes a sigh of relief. Hey, I'm ready to order over here, he shouts. But the lady walks right past him again, dead silent, like he is completely invisible. Robert freezes once more, throwing his hands up. This time his jaw literally drops. He is totally bewildered. What the heck is going on, he blurts out. Why is she acting like I'm a ghost? Sunja quickly steps in with the harsh truth. It's not that she didn't hear you, she explains smoothly. It's that these people literally cannot see us. Sunja points out the eerie reality. Nobody in this diner has even glanced their way once. They could be standing right in their faces and they'd just walk on by, treating them like they are just part of the furniture. They have zero awareness that we're even breathing in here, she adds. It's like we don't exist. Hearing this, a heavy knot forms in Seryong's stomach, but she quickly shakes her head. I am not getting tangled up in this mess, she mutters, pulling her clothes tighter as a sudden chill hits her. Cutting back to Yang, he's peacefully brewing his morning tea right after leaving that spot where he kissed Horan. He smoothly pours the hot brew from his teapot into tiny, delicate cups, then settles down to soak in the quiet morning vibes. He sips his tea, looking totally relaxed and in his own world, completely ignoring the guests standing right across from him. Off to the side, Horan whispers to Lee. This isn't like him. He'd never just rudely drink tea by himself when there's company. Her voice shakes as she nervously calls out his name. But Yang doesn't even flinch. He's completely blind to them being there. She explains that Yang is completely blind to them, which is why he's acting so weird. He's been stuck like this ever since he got back from his trip. Meanwhile, Yang just sits there calmly sipping his tea. Warren tells Lee the creepiest part is that he still does his daily chores. He does his rounds, eats, and gardens like nothing happened. He does it all on a strict schedule every single day, exactly like a wind-up toy. Confused, Lee steps closer. He waves a hand right in front of Yang's face but gets zero reaction. Horan warns him it's no use, because Yang's mind is completely somewhere else. But Lee tunes her out and just snatches the teacup right out of Yang's hands. Horan freaks out, screaming that he just made a huge mistake. Caught off guard by her panic, Lee completely misses the sword's sovereign, swinging a deadly blade straight for his neck. Right before the blade connects, he bends backward and dodges the fatal strike. Watching the steel slice the air inches away, Lee realizes playtime is over. Yang instantly slashes down where I pin him. The sword sovereign moves like a blur, but our guy is just as insanely fast. It looks like a storm of blades forcing Lee to keep dodging. Then Yang gathers glowing energy in his hands and blasts it straight at Lee, who is trapped right at point-blank range. Getting annoyed, Lee shouts that enough is enough. He slams his palms against Yang's, blocking the strike to stop a massive blast. The clash of power is so intense that a shockwave violently rips through the entire room. Watching in terror, Horan begs Lee to stop. The massive force sends Yang flying back into the smoke, but Li stands his ground totally unfazed. Emitting raw killer intent, Yang slowly gets back up as wild lightning sparks around his body. Realizing this deathmatch is all over a cup of tea, Huaren screams that the only way to stop his rampage is to just hand the cup back. Staring Yang down, Li notes that pushing past mortal limits usually destroys a fighter's body. Typically, giving in to your inner demons causes your body to literally pop like a balloon, blowing you into a million pieces. Seeing Yang's aura grow wildly as he steps closer, Li wonders how on earth the guy reached such an impossible state without dropping dead. Suddenly, a massive plum blossom blooms out of thin air. The pink petals glow with a dark purple tint floating right in front of Yang. As he marches forward, wrapped in a fierce tornado, Li stares, realizing Yang looks totally human, but somehow isn't human at all anymore. He tries to figure out why Yang's condition is so bizarre, and what really happened to him. Panicking, Huaren begs Li to hurry up, because wasting time might get them killed. The toxic, creepy flower closes in on Li, who is still crouching on the floor. Huaren watches in absolute terror, praying that he gives the stupid teacup back before it's too late. Finally, Li snaps back to reality and holds out the cup. He winds up pulling his arm back to hurl the cup straight at Yang. With a fierce swing, he launches it, sending the little cup shooting through the air. It speeds right toward that massive, terrifying plum blossom, aiming dead center. For a split second, it looks like the giant flower will block it completely, but amazingly, the cup pierces right through the heart of the attack. The whole illusion shatters, dissolving into a thick cloud of dark purple smoke. Huaren watches, her heart pounding, praying that this crazy stunt reaches her dad and finally ends this bloodbath. Out of nowhere, Yang snatches the cup right out of thin air. It is like this little cup was what he was fighting for the whole time. The moment the sword sovereign gets his hands on it, the intense pink flames and lightning cracking around his body just fade away. All that overwhelming pressure vanishes instantly, and the deadly atmosphere drops completely. Yang chills out, settling right back into his tiny chair to enjoy his drink. He casually pours himself another serving, completely ignoring the two standing right there in the room, acting like they do not even exist. Li just stares at him, absolutely speechless, realizing they nearly got wiped out over a simple teacup. Huaren lets out a heavy breath, just glad they are all still breathing. Fast forward a bit, the sun sets and the city falls into total darkness. Huaren starts filling Li and explaining what happened when she finally got back from her space tour 15 days ago. Meanwhile, we cut to Sunja, Seryong, and Robert wandering through a crowded street, completely creeped out by their surroundings. Huaren tells Li that the moment she touched down, the whole vibe of the streets was just off. As our trio pushes through the crowd, they start wondering if they are practically invisible. Huaren explains that the locals were acting like broken NPCs, just looping the exact same movements, moving in perfect creepy sync. Just to test it out, Robert reaches over and grabs a random guy walking by. Huaren warns Li about the real glitch in the system. What happens when you actually interrupt their little routines? Sure enough, the guy Robert grabs completely freezes, without even looking back. Robert taps him, asking what the heck is wrong with this planet, but the dude is just glued to his phone screen. Robert trails off, realizing he is talking to a brick wall as the guy keeps scrolling. Then it hits him. The man is literally locked in place like a statue, right in the middle of the sidewalk. Huaren confirms it to Li, touch them, and their whole system crashes. Over with the group. Robert waves his hand right in the guy's face, getting absolutely zero reaction. But it gets worse. The entire crowd around them Huaren drops the wildest part on Li. Once the crowd freezes up, they start blipping out of existence, like they were never even there. Poof, the guy Robert was holding vanishes into thin air. Robert is completely mind-blown, his jaw hitting the floor. He snaps his head to Sunja, demanding to know what kind of magic trick that was, and if they all just teleported away. Sunja is just staring at the empty street, and admits she is just as clueless. Seryong shoots Sunja a panicked look, wondering how they are supposed to figure this out, if even the genius of the group is stumped. The android finally chimes in, guessing it might be some kind of mass teleportation, but this was on a massive scale. Seryong is totally lost, asking her what she means. She hasn't even noticed that everyone else is gone. She and Robert spin around, only to realize they are completely alone. She turns to Sunja, where everyone suddenly went. Sunja keeps scanning the area, and drops a bombshell. Every single sign of life on the planet has vanished. The captain is stunned, asking her to repeat that. Meanwhile, Huaren tells Li that when people vanish, something else takes their place. She stares out at the street, explaining that weird creatures start showing up right as people go missing. Back with Seryong, Robert, and Sunja, things are getting creepy. An entire army of robots is marching right toward. They move in perfect sync, while a thick fog suddenly rolls in over the ground. The three of them watch in pure horror, as Robert asks what those things are. Every single robot is holding a sword, stepping closer to them in a steady rhythm. The fog grows thicker, as hundreds of robots close in from all sides. The captain says she has no clue either, but they are definitely in deep trouble. She freezes in place staring at the approaching machines, trapped with nowhere left to run. She asks Sunja if these are androids. She also wonders why they look half-finished, since their midsection is just a single metal rod. Sunja runs a quick scan and tells her they are not androids at all. They are construction droids. She explains they were built for basic manual labor like planetary development. Since they are older models, their AI is pretty basic, meaning they aren't very smart. Seryung lets out a huge sigh of relief. She says she was worried over nothing. They are just construction bots. Seryung reminds them about the 3 laws of robotics, which state that a droid can never harm a human being. But Robert isn't buying it. He points out the swords, asking why construction workers would ever need weapons like that. Seryung brushes it off, saying they are probably just tools. She steps toward the droids, waving her hands and shouting that there are people over here. She orders them to step aside so they don't scare anyone. But suddenly, one of the droids charges right at her, aiming straight for her head. Before she can even react, the machine swings its sword, trying to slice her right in half. But she quickly fires a blast of energy at it. I always knew I would try to take over the world. Luckily, the blast pushes her back just enough to dodge the fatal strike. Furious, she glares at the droid, yelling at it and wondering if its system is broken. But what happens next leaves her totally stunned. A whole group of them suddenly leaps into the air, blades ready. They drop down like ninjas ready to chop her into pieces. With no other choice, Seryung unleashes a massive energy explosion to blast them all away, using her incredible martial arts skills. Up in the pavilion, Horan and Lee watch as a massive explosion rips right through the city skyline. Those are the things I was talking about, she tells Lee, explaining how these monsters always show up right when people vanish from the streets. Down below, Seryung unloads her weapon into the swarm of robots. Sunja clings to her waist for dear life while Robert totally chickens out and makes a run for it. Horan warns Lee that these machines mercilessly hunt down anything with a pulse. Meanwhile, the trio vaults onto a rooftop, but the relentless machines are right behind them, dead set on tearing them limb from limb. A massive swarm of metal floods both the roof and the streets below. They are completely boxed in. There's nowhere left to run. Back at the pavilion, Horan tells Lee she was ambushed on her way home from her patrol. She throws a glance to her left, looking over at her father's usual spot, just as she hears the sound of him stepping away. Staring at the empty space, she admits to Lee that she would be dead right now if it wasn't for him. Yang steps back to his throne, slipping right back into his deep meditation. Horan points out something crazy to Lee. For some reason, the robots never step foot anywhere near her dad. As Yang settles back onto his throne and rests his arm, the entire space suddenly ignites with a blazing pink fire. It is just like when they first arrived. He slowly closes his eyes, and everything around him is swallowed by those glowing pink flames once again, as he sinks even deeper into his intense trance. The pink light erupts and beautiful plum blossoms bloom out of thin air. Horan mentions that even when everyone else vanishes, her father is always the only one left behind. The catch is he's permanently stuck in this trance, completely unreachable. Lee studies the older man for a second and tells her that Yang is actually fighting with everything he has just to hold on. Confused, she turns to him and asks what he means. Lee explains that her dad is hanging by a thread, literally burning through his soul and all his inner energy, ready to battle his own inner demons, if it comes down to it. That intense aura is exactly what is keeping him from being wiped out. Lee gently rests a hand on Horan's head, and softly tells her that her dad is clearly burning his life away to protect something, meaning her. She stares at her dad, her eyes welling up with heartbreak, wondering just how much pain he is secretly enduring. Our boy Lee has to admit the Sword Sovereign's sheer willpower is incredible. Suddenly he turns and marches right out of the room. "Come on," he calls out, telling her to follow him so they can finally put an end to this mess. Caught off guard by his sudden exit, she asks where the hell they are going. Without even looking back, he growls that he wants to see the face of the scumbag pulling the strings. Cut back to the streets where Seryung, Sunja, and Robert are completely backed into a dead end. They are trapped. Their only option now is to fight their way out. With killer droids closing in from every possible angle, they desperately try to think of a way out before they're slaughtered. The droids lock onto them with glowing red eyes. Yeah, these things definitely aren't messing around. Panic sets in. Seryung starts stammering, demanding to know why the hell these machines are suddenly turning on humans. She frantically asks Sunja if a droid attacking a human is even technologically possible. Cowering behind her back, Sunja stutters out that it should be flat out impossible, because android AI systems are hardwired with strict core rules. They literally cannot bypass the 3 laws of robotics. She insists that harming people isn't even in their programming code yet. Here they are ready to kill. The captain demands to know what is making them glitch out like this. Are their systems completely fried? Or worse, do these things not even see them as human anymore? Robert taps into his special forces training quickly, sizing up the situation. He figures since normal androids are programmed not to hurt humans, these must be those combat models he'd heard rumors about. Suddenly, the machines dive and blades flashing from every direction. Done messing around, the guys brace themselves for the hit. Sejong draws his sword. He yells at Sunja to hold on tight and hide so she doesn't get hit. But wait. Out of nowhere, intense laser beams blast the flying bots right out of the sky. The blasts are so heavy they rip the machines to shreds, sending their weapons flying. Boom! A massive fireball lights up the sky as the whole squad goes up in smoke. Sejong and Sunja just stare in shock. Who the heck just saved their lives? Right behind them, Robert steps out of the smoke, fully suited up in his combat armor, and he comes in with guns blazing. Those aren't androids, he yells over the noise. He warns them they're dealing with something called Iron Gangxi. Basically, they're reanimated corpses or zombies. But these Iron Gangxi don't back down easily. Now that their cover is blown, they immediately regroup for another strike. Meanwhile, miles away, a guy known as the Rear Admiral is watching this exact fight on a monitor. His assistant pulls up their files. She tells him the guy on the screen is Blazing Devil Sejong, and that panicking AI android next to him is Sunja model PL0316KBT. She points to the third guy. He's a former first sergeant from the North Galaxy Combat Unit, Special Tactical Division. Name's Robert Carlyle. The assistant giving the briefing actually looks like another Iron Gangxi herself, and she tells her boss that the Devils are just a small-time bounty hunter crew hanging around the edge of the galaxy. According to her, they aren't a real threat, and she guarantees they can wipe them out in 10 seconds flat. But the boss narrows his eyes. Did you say he was from the North Galaxy Combat Unit? Watching Robert blasting away on screen, he confirms the guy really is from the Special Tactical Division. The Gangxi assistant then asks if she should give the order to wipe them out. With his half-metal face glowing in the dark, the boss stares at the screen weighing his options. Meanwhile, back at the battlefield, someone walks up to where the guys were clashing with the Gangxi. He looks around, noticing smashed robot parts scattered all over the dirt, and asks what the heck is going on. The fight is completely over. He's totally confused. How did they finish the battle so fast when it just started a second ago? Heavy metal chunks are littered everywhere, even up on the roof. Robert grins and proudly claims he went all out against the bots this time. He brags that he's been waiting for a moment like this every single day. That's exactly why he never threw away his old gear. He flexes in his armor a bit, showing off how slick and perfectly functional it still is. Kept it oiled and ready for action, he gloats. The other guy just stares at him in disbelief. Robert gets sarcastic. Man, imagine what would have happened today if I actually listened to a certain someone and sold all my gear to a pawn shop. He's obviously taking a direct shot at Sejong with that comment. Sunja just scowls at him and crosses her arms. She is so done with his bragging. Robert keeps ranting about how they were forced to sell their stuff back then, because they were dead broke and couldn't even afford food. But while he's busy hyping up how awesome he handled the ambush today, he picks up a broken robot hand to admire it. But Sunja completely bursts his bubble. She flat out tells him they didn't even fight the Gangxi. Yeah, but they backed off on their own. Lee holds up the strange metal hand, totally clueless. He wonders what the heck it is, thinking it is just some piece of armor. But Sunja steps in and tells him it is definitely not armor. It is a droid. Or well, a robot. He tries to sound out the weird word, completely butchering it and calling it a drobo. Frustrated, he begs her to use plain words he can actually understand, because none of this makes any sense to him. His world never had anything close to a robot, so the whole concept just blows his mind. Exhausted, Horan sits down to rest, brushing him off. She tells him he wouldn't get it, even if she spent all day explaining. She just asks Sunja to dumb it down for him. Sunja chimes in, telling him to picture a robot, like a mechanical tool, but one that can actually think and move exactly like a real person. He looks completely dumbfounded, arguing that no matter how much the world has changed, there is zero chance a random chunk of metal could ever mimic a human being. But then, out of nowhere, something crazy happens that sends Lee into a total panic. Sunja literally pops her own head off and holds it right in front of him just to prove her point. Our guy absolutely loses his mind and starts screaming his lungs out. He scrambles behind Horan, almost knocking her straight to the ground, freaking out and demanding to know what kind of monster Sunja actually is. Annoyed, Warren stands up and asks Sunja if she ever bothered to tell him she was an android, but Sunja just shrugs it off, saying they have been a little too busy for introductions. Meanwhile, over in the wreckage, one of the smashed Gangxis, the one that still has its core AI unit intact, suddenly powers back on. Its eyes snap open quietly, watching the group who has no idea they are being watched. It silently records Lee grabbing Huaren and cowering behind her. At the exact same time, the Gangxi that was reporting to Count Richel taps into the live feed. It tells the Count that our guy does not exist anywhere in their database. Deep inside his secret lair, the Count watches the footage on the big screen, while the Gangxi adds that Lee does not even have an internal energy core, meaning he is just a pure natural human. Smirking, Count Richel gets up to leave and brushes him off. Judging by our guy's pathetic freakout, he is completely harmless. He warns his crew that the real threat they need to watch out for is Robert. The Count figures Robert has to be an elite soldier, especially since he comes straight from the Special Tactical Division of the Galactic Combat Unit. The Count knows that making it to Master Sergeant means Robert is absolute top-tier material. He mutters to himself that a guy like Robert would not just wander out here by accident. He definitely has a hidden agenda. So he orders his men to stay on high alert and dig up everything they can on him. Meanwhile, drifting somewhere out in the massive void of the galaxy, a bright flash of light suddenly appears, but that is no star. It is a massive transport ship cruising through deep space. The scene shifts to the 32nd district of the Heavenly Demon Sect, deep inside the base. Commander Zhang and Elder Zhou are patiently waiting for their VIP guest. Moments later, the ship touches down and the huge metal doors slide open, and out steps their guy. Casually, he looks completely chill. He strolls up to the commander and the elder, who both immediately bow down in deep respect for their superior. The commander speaks up humbly, thanking him for making such a massive journey. He greets the guy as officer. The officer lets out a yawn, admitting it was one heck of a long trip. He gives off Major Young Boss energy, declaring that this long journey better be worth his time. He's Joe Dan, a first-class officer from the Central Disaster Security Committee. Skipping the small talk, Joe zooms in on the angry red mark left on Zhang's head from Li's brutal strike. Zhang is stuck in a wheelchair, still looking pretty banged up and recovering. Commander Yang steps in, asking Officer Joe if he spots anything unusual. Looking dead serious, the officer leans in close to examine the nasty bruise. He has to stand on a little stool, since he's on the shorter side, silently glaring at the mark without saying a single word. Finally, Joe presses against the wound, asking Zhang if it hurts. Zhang admits the pain has faded a bit, but points out that his head still feels this weird, lingering heat. Joe immediately asks him to repeat that. Looking down and totally defeated, Zhang confirms it. But suddenly, a blinding surge of pain hits him. When something crazy happens, the officer shoves his hand against Zhang's head, copying Li's exact strike and making the poor guy groan in agony. The team leader's loud screams echo through the entire medical lab, right over the massive bruise Li left behind. Joe's tiny hands leave a brand new, smaller mark. But Zhang can't even complain, since this kid is technically his boss. As the officer pulls his hands away, literal smoke rises from the spot exactly like it did when Li hit him. Joe rubs his chin deep in thought. The commander instantly catches on to what he's thinking. He points out that this new mark looks completely different. The original scar is all swollen and puffed up, but this second one is actually sunken in, so there's no way they use the same martial arts move. Joe doesn't even glance his way, but flatly states that they are exactly the same. He drops the bomb that the previous scar comes directly from the 9-yin palm technique. The commander just stares at him, absolutely shook. This perfectly backs up what the sword matron said. Later on, the commander tries to argue that the 9-yin palm is just some basic martial art taught to total beginners, and that this new hit feels way more advanced. He even brags that he mastered the 9-yin palm himself by the time he was just 7 years old. Meanwhile, the elder is just casually setting up the table. Zhang chimes in, insisting that a 9-yin palm scar should look completely different from his original injury. The officer just nods, explaining that the true core of the 9-yin palm is actually based on freezing cold energy. So naturally, the scars are going to look completely different. The officer points out that whoever pulled this off has reached an insane level of mastery, a level where they can completely suppress the freezing core of the yin palm technique. Officer Joe explains that the attacker was actually holding back, showing mercy to avoid killing their opponent. The commander is totally stunned by this. He asks how someone could possibly flip the very laws of martial arts upside down. While waiting for his meal to cool down, Joe casually replies that it works in theory. Since he is starving, he suggests grabbing a bite first and offers the commander some black. Commander Zhang scowls in frustration. He cannot believe this guy is thinking, but eventually he gives in with a sigh. After all, you cannot brainstorm on an empty stomach. Meanwhile, back on planet Miram, the crew heads back to the demonic ship, where Robert drops a bombshell on the group. He reveals that those freaky monsters they just fought are known as Iron Jiangshi. Sunja plops another massive pile of hot dogs in front of Li, while Seryung watches in awe. The speed at which this dude inhales his food is honestly terrifying. She decides to grab a bite as well, and she asks Robert to explain what these Iron Jiangshi actually are. Robert says it was a dark rumor floating around back when he was in the military. Word was the higher-ups were building a brand new type of combat android, one programmed specifically to hunt and kill human beings. Seryung calls nonsense on that, pointing out that android intelligence circuits are hardwired with the core 3 laws of robotics to prevent exactly that. While they argue, Li is still struggling to accept that Sunja is a machine. He aggressively pinches and pulls at her cheeks, trying to figure out what she is made of. But she just glares at him with a deadpan expression. Robert replies to Seryung, explaining that the creators swapped out the machine circuits for the brains of dead humans. It was a twisted loophole to bypass those robotic laws. That horrifying truth sends chills down Seryung's spine. He tells them that is exactly why the military dubbed it the Iron Jiangshi Project. Li, who is still completely distracted, inspecting Sunja's face, asks her one more time if she is really not a living girl. Annoyed, she asks if he wants her to pop her head off again as proof, even offering to detach her arms and legs, just to clear up any lingering doubts. Waving his hands, he quickly turns her down, muttering about how completely messed up this world has gotten. Shaking off the shock, he gives up on the robot mystery and turns his attention back to his meal. Sirion keeps chatting with Robert, admitting his theory makes perfect sense since those things attacked her on sight. Still, she admits it sounds way too insane to believe without seeing it firsthand. Suddenly, Lee freezes in absolute. While he was busy messing with Sunja, Robert and Sirion had devoured every single hot dog. Oblivious, Sirion notices Lee staring and casually remarks how messed up it is to weaponize dead brains. But she is met with the most intense, murderous glare from Lee. With his heart broken over the stolen food, the captain is completely clueless as to why he is giving her such a death stare. Confused, she asks him what is wrong and why he looks like he wants to kill her. Then she finally glances down and realizes the food tray is completely wiped clean. It suddenly clicks for her. She quickly orders Sunja to fire up the grill and make some more hot dogs to keep this guy fed and avoid any unnecessary drama. Sunja just gives her a blank stare and bluntly says they are completely out of hot dogs. Seo Yong brushes it off, saying it is what it is. She shifts her focus back to figuring out exactly what is going down on this crazy planet. Turning away from the table, she admits she has a bad feeling, like they just stepped into a massive mess. Right behind her, Lee suddenly snaps, yelling about how insanely disrespectful these mortals are. He starts throwing a massive fit, making Seo Young spin right back around. Fuming, he rants that even if the golden age of martial arts manners is dead and gone, it is absolutely outrageous that she had the nerve to steal his food. Startled, Seo Young glances at Robert, asking what on earth this guy is rambling about. But Robert just shrugs. He has absolutely no clue. Our guy gets even more heated. He barks that ignorance is no excuse, especially since he literally introduced himself as the supreme heavenly demon. He demands to know where she gets her audacity. Putting a hand on her hip, she pauses, vaguely remembering him dropping that ridiculous title. Robert also recalls his whole speech about demanding respect. She thinks about it for a second, but honestly, she still has no idea what that even means. The captain totally ignores him and turns her back again. She mutters that this whole thing is bizarre, but they will deal with it later. Right now, they have way bigger fish to fry. Meanwhile, Lee is still boiling with rage in the background. Feeling super awkward sitting at the same table as this ticking, Robert quickly grabs Seo Yang so they can bolt out of there together. Sunja practically sprints out of the ship too, desperate to escape Lee's bad mood. Finally, Lee is left all alone with no choice but to swallow his pride and calm down. His raging tantrum quickly fizzles out, simply because there is nobody left to yell at. He shifts his gaze back to the tray, staring at the greasy leftover oil from the grill, and a few pathetic little chunks of hot dog left behind. He squints closely at the tiny scraps left on the plate and a thought crosses his mind. Defeated, he reaches out and pinches a piece. It is better than nothing. Even the supreme heavenly demon cannot afford to starve to death. He pops the scrap into his mouth, still wearing a heavy scowl. But it seems like he is finally accepting his new life with these lowly mortals. Meanwhile, outside, the wrecked pieces of the Hellhound gang are scattered everywhere. Sunja picks up a busted robot head to inspect it, hoping they can find a solid clue. Seo Yong just stands there staring out at the absolute mess, wondering where to even begin. Their ship is hovering right above them just in case they need to make a quick getaway. As they scan the mysterious, the place is completely trashed with robot parts looking like a busted chop shop. Robert grabs his severed robot arm, noticing the joints are incredibly flimsy. He can't figure out why they're built so terribly and why the metal is so cheap. Sunja inspects the severed metal head in her hands, telling him the trashy build quality makes sense. It's not just a bunch of prototypes. She stares deep into the lifeless, running a deep scan with her own optical sensors. She processes the data in silence for a few seconds, cutting her own sentence completely short. Sirion catches onto her intense focus, asking if she spotted something hiding inside the robot's skull. Sunja nods. She points out that the neural network in this thing is actually super basic. With a quick twist, she cracks the metallic skull wide open. The casing pops off, ejecting its core processing chip right into her palm. Sunja calls it a primitive M207 chip. She explains that the tech level here is just embarrassing. Way too low to even be called true artificial intelligence. This specific chip is only built to take direct orders. It has absolutely zero free will, meaning this isn't technically an AI at all. Sirion quickly pieces it together, asking if these things were being piloted remotely. To her shock, Sunja confirms it. Every single bot they fought was being manually controlled. The android quickly scans the battlefield, stating that the total number of enemies that swarmed them was exactly 9,817 meaning there had to be at least 9,817 humans pulling the string somewhere. Cut to a dark laboratory, completely packed with massive glass tubes, each one bubbling with a strange glowing liquid. Thick cables snake down into every single tank, hiding shadowy figures suspended inside the fluid. Count Ritual strides into the lab with his mechanical guards to check on his twisted He stares up at the massive tanks with a chilling dead-set grin, giving off classic supervillain vibes. But as the camera zooms in, the horrific truth is revealed. Inside each tank is a stripped-down, unconscious human, with thick wires plugged directly into their brains. This is the horrifying command center. One of the floating victims, clearly a local from the town, drifts in the liquid completely drained of life. Meanwhile, back on the ruined streets, Seryung turns to Sunja, asking about the total population of the Manhwa district as a dark realization hits her. Sunja coldly replies that the exact number of residents living here is only 98 people. Meanwhile, flashing back to the Jihad Pavilion, the swirling Yang Sovereign is still pushing past his absolute limits, burning away every last drop of his internal energy, trading his own soul for power. The group suddenly realizes someone is missing. The Sword's Sovereign is nowhere to be found. He lies there completely unconscious, wrapped in a glowing pink flame, with cherry blossom petals swirling right next to the throne. Hworin sits down, her eyes full of heartbreak as she stares at her dad. Meanwhile, miles away, Commander Zhang is completely stunned by Cho's words. He wipes his mouth, asking him to repeat that one more time. Officer Cho doesn't hesitate. He orders a total lockdown for District 32. No one gets in and absolutely no one steps out. He also demands that all deployed agents be pulled back right away. The commander is still in total shock, asking why he's making this sudden call. The officer just looks at him, saying, "These are dangerous times, and extreme times call for extreme measures." He adds that 2,000 years of peace is way too long. The martial alliance has lost its edge. He looks at the commander and asks, "Do you know what happens when the ruling tiger of the mountain loses its fangs?" He's clearly using a metaphor for their mess. John replies that the wolves will take over. Cho shakes his head. Wrong. The wolves won't just take over. They will try to become the new tigers. Cho reminds him that the wolves only pack together because of the tiger. He adds that once the tiger is gone, they start looking around. Their eyes have seen the tiger, and suddenly the rest of the wolf pack starts looking weak to them. That is exactly when they turn on each other and attack. Officer Cho quickly heads back to his flying pod, walking right alongside the commander. Sect members bow deeply as they pass by. Cho keeps his point going, saying the wolves will use their old pack hunting tricks to gang up and take out the strongest wolf of them all. He makes it crystal clear right now, their sect is that strongest wolf in the martial world, and because of that, they have to be incredibly careful. The commander asks, "Wait, are you saying that the mystery guy using our fighting style is somehow connected to all this?" Cho shakes his head. He honestly doesn't know, and that is the biggest problem here. Stepping into his pod, he drops a bombshell. He got an emergency alert right before arriving at their district. When he hears Mount Hua being mentioned, Commander Zhang freezes in shock. He literally has to ask if he's hearing things right. The officer nods. He tells him that a wild card just landed on a powder keg and it is ready to blow. This is just the first spark of a massive explosion in the martial world. Cho explains that because of this crazy situation, they desperately need to figure out the whole picture before making a single move. He fully boards his pod and takes off from the sect, hoping to get some real answers soon. The commander watches him fly away, completely lost on what to make of all this. He frowns at the whole mess. For now, it looks like they just have to sit tight. Meanwhile, back at Mount Hua, Seryung and the crew heads straight to the Jia Pavilion to find Hworin. Seryung asks her to confirm what she said earlier about the missing people, who always seem to show up at night. Hworin nods. Yes, everyone except her dad. He's always left behind. She explains that he is literally stuck on that throne, trapped in his fiery form. Seryung stares at the sight in total confusion, not sure how to even process any of this. And there sits Yang on that throne right in the dead center of the blazing fire, still totally oblivious to them being there. Seryung turns to Sunja, asking how long they have until sundown. Sunja runs the numbers. She explains that day and night on planet Mount Hua flip every 6 hours, and right now, they have exactly 1 second before the sun dips below the horizon. Suddenly, the captain freezes. A shocking scene unfolds right in front of her eyes. Like a wind-up toy, the Sword Sovereign rises to his feet. He pulls Hworin into a warm embrace. Hworin quietly explains that his body is just moving on autopilot. He gently strokes her hair, completely unconscious of what he's actually doing. She reveals he even drinks tea while keeping an eye on the surroundings. It is an exact replay of his routine from her birthday performance a year ago. He has been trapped in this endless time loop for God knows how long. For some mysterious reason, he repeats this exact same pattern every single sunrise. With a heartbreaking look, Hworin admits that static crackles over the radio. Robert chimes in, warning the captain that something feels way off. The expected crowd is nowhere to be seen. Perched on a rooftop, he scans the area. The streets below are completely dead. A wave of anxiety hits Seryung. Why is everyone running late today? She quickly asks Sunja for a radar check. But Sunja's scanner is picking up a totally different problem. Sunja locks eyes with the captain in pure horror. It is not the crowd that is missing, it is Seryung herself. She is slowly fading away. The captain's eyes go wide at the news as her physical form begins to vanish into thin air. She stares down at her own hands. Panic sets in as she realizes she is becoming completely see-through. Her fingers dissolve into nothing and she lets out a terrified scream. Sunja desperately announces that the captain's vitals are dropping to zero. In a flash, Seryung is completely gone. Only a faint lingering glow is left behind. Unbothered by the chaos, Hwarin stays peacefully wrapped in her father's arms. Cut to the edge of Mount Hua's atmosphere. A massive wooden spaceship drifts silently through the stars. Inside the command center, Galactic Division, Chief Kim stares coldly down at Mount Hua and its twin moons. Captain Cheju rushes into the room, urgently trying to grab his boss's attention. He reports a massive energy spike. A teleportation signature just triggered right from the center of Mount Hua. The data is clear. The captain confirms the target teleporting is none other than the flaming devil Seryung. Kim narrows his eyes. Where exactly did she go? The captain nervously replies that she was beamed straight to Mount Hua's second moon, the desolate rock known as Genta. The camera shifts to the barren wasteland of Genta. Somewhere in that rocky landscape sits a massive pitch-black crater, and echoing from the terrifying depths of that hole is a blood-curdling scream. Down in the darkness, that same faint glowing light from Seryung's disappearance suddenly sparks to life. Her frantic voice echoes off the walls, screaming that her physical form is melting away, yet there is not a single trace of her anywhere. Then slowly her body starts rendering back into existence inside the pit. She is absolutely losing it, crying out and begging to know why she is fading. The worst part, she materializes from the waist up. Her legs are completely missing, sending her into a full-blown panic attack. Her mind races with pure terror. Is this it? She starts pleading with an unseen presence she believes is God begging for a second chance at life. She still has so much left to do, but as she raises her hands in prayer, she freezes. Her hands are completely solid. Her cries fade into silence. What on earth is happening? Shocked that she actually has a physical body again, she frantically looks around, demanding answers. Then her eyes lock onto the figures standing right in front of her. Wait, this isn't the afterlife. Sitting casually on a sofa is Count Richelieu with his android assistant standing right by his side. The Count doesn't say a single word. He just stares at her calmly, waiting for her panic to settle. Sergio glares back, completely clueless about who this guy even is. He keeps his mouth shut but glares down at her with a dark, sinister frown. A heavy, dead silence fills the strange room. Nobody moves and nobody speaks. Meanwhile, aboard the Greenwood spaceship, the captain turns. He points out that the teleportation they just tracked feels completely off. He explains that the target never actually consented to being moved. If that's true, it means this was a forced, unsanctioned extraction, a one-way teleport, which is a massive violation of galactic law. The captain suggests reporting this up the chain of command, but Kim doesn't even look back coldly, asking if there's anyone higher than him. A purely rhetorical question, of course. The captain gets the hint instantly. Kim is warning him not to step out of line, so he wisely shuts his mouth. Stuttering, he quickly bows and declares that the Black Tiger is his one and only commander. Kim smirks at the quick fix and attitude, ordering him to keep a close eye on the situation. He also warns him to keep this strictly under wraps for now, because using heavily banned tech right on the moon strongly suggests that whoever did this has some massive backing from the higher-ups. He orders the captain not to jump the gun. They need to dig deep into this before making a single move, because rushing in blind could end up doing way more harm than good. The captain barks out a loud, firm, "Yes, sir," to his boss. Kim turns his gaze back to the twin moons, silently wondering what this all really means. Not long after urgent news reaches the Western Sky Sword Matron. Shocked, she demands to know if she heard the report right. Elena just told her about the mysterious man she ran into at Mount Hua, and the matron needs to hear it again. Kneeling respectfully, Elena explains that the stranger actually claimed to be her father. She carefully repeats his exact words. The man flat out said he was the one who gave her life. She swallows her pride and admits he completely crushed her in a duel. The sword matron is stunned, because beating a martial artist as strong as Elena is nearly impossible. Her mind races. The guy who easily defeated her daughter and claims to be her dad is currently sitting right at Mount Hua. Meanwhile, back at Mount Hua, bam, Robert slams his fist on the table to make his point. He screams that they have to rescue the captain right now, totally overreacting like he always does. He fiercely curses out whatever scumbag had the guts to kidnap their captain, while Lee just sits there quietly. But as Robert starts spitting out endless swear words, Lee is completely lost in translation. Confused, he asks Sunja what Robert is saying. Sunja just shakes her head, refusing to translate that filthy language. Instead, she just ignores him and goes right back to her meticulous busywork. He figures the spot where Seryung got snatched might actually be tied to the whole mess on this planet. She guesses other people might have been dragged off the exact same way. She tells the guys it makes sense, but they just don't have the proof. Sunja cuts in and drops a bomb they actually times have proof. She explains that when folks vanished from planet Mantua, it looked exactly like this. We are talking about forced teleportation, ripping someone away completely against their will. She adds that this kind of one-sided warping is totally banned by galactic law. Robert starts screaming again, realizing this means everyone is trapped out there somewhere. He yells that they can't just sit around on their hands. They have to go save them, and with that, he grabs Lee right by the collar. This time, Lee just turns to Sunja and asks what the heck is wrong with this guy, but she just brushes him off and walks away. She tells Lee that it looks like Robert is dealing with some heavy PTSD from his days in the military. Basically, when he gets stressed, his anger issues go off the charts. Meanwhile, Robert is still cursing a blue streak, insulting Lee left and right, while keeping a death grip on his shirt. Lee just stares him down and tells him to let go. Sunja sighs, saying it's no use, he won't listen to anyone. But our boy steps up and barks an order at him like a drill sergeant. That instantly catches Sunja's attention. Hey, this might actually work. Like magic, Robert apologizes and lets Lee go. Sunja just stares at them totally confused, joking that Robert could win a medal in anger management. Anyway, they get back on track, and Sunja points out there is a hard limit on how far the captain could have been moved. She says it is technically impossible to teleport someone across massive distances, so they can totally cross off the idea that she was taken to a different planet. That leaves them with just 3 choices. The captain is either still down on planet Mantua or she is trapped on one of its 2 moons. Lee steps up next to her by the window, staring out at the moons. He asks if there is any way she can figure out exactly which moon the captain is on. The android tells him she already scanned planet Mantua, and the place is totally dead. No signs of life. Well, except for the Sword Sovereign. So, by process of elimination, they are down to the 2 moons, Genta and Sycharis. She goes on to say she is picking up life signs on both of them. But it is super hard to pinpoint exactly where they are coming from since the 2 moons are orbiting so close to each other. Lee looks at her and asks, so, what, we just flip a coin? Sunja nods, taking a second to think it through. Then it hits her, the captain is completely obsessed with gold. Using that rock-solid logic, she confidently picks the golden moon Sycharis. Spoiler alert, she is dead wrong. Cut to the 2nd moon of planet Mantua, Genta. Down on Genta, Count Rachel is just glaring at Seryung, who just got zapped right into the facility. Seryung demands to know who he is, but he just ignores her, keeping his mouth shut. Rachel's personal android starts scanning Seryung and detects an external 1.4 gig power core. It also picks up a heavy-duty, high-capacity 3.3 gig power core built right into her body. The android informs the Count that her only outside weapon is the energy sword hanging on her hip. Count Rachel finally speaks up about her 3.3 gig core, casually sipping on some sparkling water like it's no big deal. He smirks, pointing out that a cheap second-rate bounty hunter is carrying hardware she doesn't even know how to use. Seryung snaps at him again, asking who the heck he is and wondering if he is totally deaf. Far across the universe, a single ray of light hits a tiny green sprout. The little plant struggles to grow in what looks like dry sand, clinging to life under the beating sun. An old man crouches down next to it, just taking in the beauty of life. Officer Cho steps up behind him and respectfully calls him master. Cho looks dead serious, saying they have an urgent issue to talk about. The old man cuts him right off. He already knows about the mess at Mount Hua, and knows Cho is the one sent to clean it up. He warns him not to rush in blindly, but to hold off until the bud finally blooms. He explains that only then can they figure out what kind of tree it really is, whether it is a poplar or a willow. They need to sit tight until the shady forces backing Count Rachel are fully dragged into the light. Only then can they strike them down for good. The master gives him a sharp look, reminding Cho he trained him better than this. He asks if Cho is still acting like a kid, or if something else is bothering him. Cho freezes up, staying completely quiet. The master immediately senses something is eating away at him, and demands to know what could possibly make him act so shaken. Cho takes a breath and reveals that some absolute wildcards showed up during his digging. This guy did not just learn their moves, he actually managed to reverse his energy flow. And even worse, he somehow knows their ultimate secret, the demonic heart technique. The master's face instantly drops in pure horror. Cho actually chokes up before dropping the final bomb. He forces the words out, saying this stranger has reached the absolute peak of mastery. The real nightmare, Officer Cho, explains that this guy has absolutely zero ties to their clan. The master's eyes go completely dark. His voice turns to ice as he orders Cho to kill the guy. Right on cue, the little plant behind them just withers and dies, choked out by the master's dark aura. Cho blinks, asking him to repeat that, thinking he heard wrong. The master suddenly explodes with rage, screaming that this guy is a total freak of nature and a monster. He orders Cho to hunt him down and end him. No excuses. It really looks like the top dogs of the Heavenly Demon sect are desperately trying to bury a massive secret. None of this makes any sense to Cho. He is too stunned to speak and just keeps his mouth shut. Later on, Cho gets back into his travel pod to finish the job. The ship blasts off into deep space as he sits back. A voice welcomes him aboard and his hunt officially kicks off. Meanwhile, over on the Genta moon, Seojong snaps at Count Richel asking who he is again and if he is deaf. Richel completely ignores her. He just takes a sip of his drink and tells his android to scan her. Out of nowhere, the bot blinks right behind the clueless Seojong, but she senses the danger and spins around, charging up a massive blast of energy. But the exact second she fires it off, the android vanishes into thin air again. Bam! It pops up right behind her and locks a cold grip on her neck. This thing is dangerously fast. Seojong freezes as a metallic hand clamps right over her face. Her mind races in panic, wondering how on earth a machine can move that fast. She has never seen anything like it. Richel smirks, telling her to just give up because fighting back is pointless. He leans in, saying he just wants to ask a couple of simple questions, and if she wants to avoid a lifetime of absolute agony, she had better give him the right answers. Annoyed, Seryong tells it to shut up and shoves the android away. The Count watches her moves closely, wondering if she's using some kind of adaptive martial arts. Seryong draws her energy sword and swings hard to slice the machine in half. She spins the blade, creating a deadly whirlwind of slashes, but the android quickly dashes back. It dodges every single strike with crazy speed. Finding an opening, it rushes in to strike the captain. It closes the gap inches away from hitting her, but Seryong catches on and points her blade right at it. The android simply steps aside and tries to grab her arm. Count Richard tells Seryong to give up, bragging that the machine has data on every martial art. Still, Seryong keeps swinging, but the android easily slips past every attack. She realizes this thing really does know every fighting style. It's reading her movements like an open book, but Seryong is stubborn. She keeps pushing, telling the Count not to make her laugh. She charges straight ahead, but the android effortlessly sidesteps. Suddenly, bam, the android finds a blind spot and strikes her in the back. It lifts her up and tosses her across the room. Seryong slams face first into the ground, taking the full impact. The android stands its ground, waiting for her next move. She quickly gets back on her feet, gripping her sword. She falls into a fighting stance, twirling the blade to show she's far from done. Count Richard takes a sip of his sparkling water, shocked that she recovered so fast. The android locks eyes with her, ready for round two. Seryong holds her ground, waiting for it to make a move. Sweat drips down her face. This fight is way harder than she thought. She realizes her usual combat style just isn't going to cut it, and she needs a new plan. While she thinks the robot vanishes in a flash, it pops up right behind her, but she instantly senses its presence. As the android reaches out to grab her, the captain freezes, playing dumb like she doesn't notice. The moment it swings its arm, Seryong vanishes too, giving the robot a taste of its own medicine. She leaps high into the air. The confused robot looks around, completely losing track of her. Spinning high above, she readies her sword for a massive downward strike. The android spots her just in time and leaps up to meet her in the air. Seryong unleashes a special move called the bullet, thrusting her blade straight down, hoping to pierce right through the android. The flexible blade snaps straight, coming down with terrifying force. The blade shoots straight for the robot's face, and it looks like Seryong's plan is actually working. But the machine reacts fast, blocking the weapon bare-handed and slamming it down into the dirt. It all happens in a flash. The cyborg lunges up to grab Seryong out of mid-air, barely missing the captain as she plummets back down to earth. But her weapon is completely adaptive. It coils tightly around the android's arm like a metal snake. This was her real plan all along. The machine blasts a massive heat wave from its arms, dealing a brutal blow right to Seryong's stomach. The captain is left totally exposed in the air. After letting go of her weapon, her blade, still wrapped tightly around the robot's arm, suddenly snaps upward in an amazing display of skill. The flexible steel whips right at the deadly android, piercing straight through its skull and wrecking it. It never even saw the attack coming. The glowing lights on its head flicker and die, proving her blade completely smashed its main intelligence unit. All of this intense action goes down in just a split second. As the two bodies free fall from the sky, the Count crushes his teacup in pure rage, watching Seryong completely trash his precious android. His jaw drops in shock as he recognizes Seryong's killer move. It is the Blood Dragon Dagger technique from the Sichuan Tang clan. The ruined machine crashes face first into the dirt while Count Richel just stands there frozen. Seryong hits the ground hard right next to it, but quickly pushes herself back up, clutching her stomach from that brutal heat blast. This time, the Count is the one asking the questions. He demands to know exactly who she really is. Seryong just shoots him a deadly glare, keeping her mouth totally shut. You can clearly see a trail of blood dripping from her lips. Still totally stunned, the Count claims the Sichuan Tang clan was completely wiped out 10 years ago, without leaving a single trace behind. He demands to know how she could possibly use their martial arts. Still ignoring his questions, Seryong just mutters that she has to step things up to survive this mess. Without warning, she fires up the three. internal giga-energy engines built right into her body, the very same ones Rachel claimed were way too advanced for her to handle. She knows that desperate times call for extreme measures. These engines are known as the Divine Art, Xuanwu, powered by an internal Qi core operating system. She cranks them up to absolute max power. Rachel's eyes go wide with pure shock, because he knows the Xuanwu Divine Art is a highly restricted secret technique, meant only for the true leader of the Tang clan. Things are getting seriously interesting now. Pushing her internal limits to the absolute edge, Seryong blasts off the ground with incredible force, telling the Count to just shut his mouth. Rachel stands completely still, watching her soar. He realizes she wants to take the high ground, getting ready to rain down attacks from every single angle. Wrapped in a blinding explosive green light, Seryong rockets up into the sky. Boom! A sudden explosion goes off, unleashing thousands of green and white arrows that scatter like fireworks. Li Mokshin stares in absolute shock, immediately recognizing this move as the endless rain technique. Every single arrow locks onto him, raining down all at once, leaving him absolutely nowhere to run. From the outside, a massive blast rips through the facility, caused by the sheer raw energy Seryong just unleashed. The scene shifts back to the ship of the Western Sky Sword Matron. Inside the cabin, Elena is still explaining things to her mother, pointing out that the way she met this mysterious guy was incredibly weird right from the start. She mentions that she had just arrived at Mount Hua to pick up a new bounty mission, but the second she got there, everything went black and she suddenly woke up standing right in front of him. In her memory, Li Mokjin was just lounging on his couch, staring at her in dead silence with a bitter look on his face. Elena admits she still has no clue why he had to drag her there like that. She remembers locking eyes with him for a tense moment, neither of them saying a single word. Hearing this catches the sword matron's attention, and she instantly realizes Elena was pulled into a one-sided teleportation. Back in the flashback, Li Mokjin tells Elena to calm down. He claims he brought her there to grant her deepest wish. Elena just gives him a confused look, completely clueless about what he means. He then asks if she wants to get stronger and have the entire world at her feet. He knows that driving ambition is why she earned the dark title of the 8-foot fighting ghost, even turning her own ship into a battle arena, just to hunt down endless fights. But he points out that the harder she chased that goal, the further away it slipped, leaving her completely helpless and crying in despair every single night. He promises that he brought her there to give her true power, the kind of power that lets you look down on everyone else. Elena admits the guy knew way too much about her life. In the memory, she snaps at him, demanding to know who he is and what kind of nonsense he is spouting. She hated how right he was. It was seriously getting on her nerves. Instead of answering, Li Mokjin just stands up and mutters that she probably wouldn't understand unless he beat it into her. Back in the present, Elena tells her mom they decided to fight, but there was one massive problem. Meanwhile, cut back to the facility, Li Mokjin has completely overpowered the massive Seryong, and he is holding her right up by the throat. As Elena recalls, no matter what attack she threw at him, it was totally useless. Just like in the flashback, Li Mokjin is crushing Seryong's neck right now. His clothes are totally scorched off from Seryong's green flames, but his entire body looks like it is made out of solid metal. Just like an android, Seryong chokes and gasps for air under his iron grip, and starts bleeding from the mouth the exact same way. It is the exact same way he held Elena by the throat after crushing her in that flashback. He promises to make her just as powerful as he is simply because she's his own daughter. But Elena isn't buying it at all. Cut to the present, Count Richel orders a badly beaten Sarah Yang to finally answer his question. He offers her a dark deal, promising to turn her frail body into an absolute weapon if she just gives him what he wants. He casually adds that the only catch is that she has to surrender her free will, since having a mind is completely useless anyway. Hearing Elena's story leaves the sword matron completely speechless. Elena reveals that he actually gifted her something. Without warning, a blinding blue aura erupts from her body, leaving the matron totally stunned. Elena explains that this insane new power came directly from him. The sword matron stares at her daughter in absolute disbelief, realizing this gift is the legendary steel fortification. Meanwhile, Sunja is frantically scanning the radar to track down the captain. Getting ready for takeoff, Robert starts yelling again, demanding to know why they are just sitting there, and telling her to step on it. Sunja checks the radar one more time, and her blood runs cold when a mysterious signal pops up on the scanner. A blinking red dot shows someone closing in fast. Sunja instantly halts their jump to the moon. 6. Ceres. The moment she lays eyes on the incoming ship, hovering dead ahead is a pod that clearly belongs to a member of the Heavenly Demon Cult. Both ships freeze in the dead of space. Nobody steps out, and there is zero radio contact coming from the cult's vessel. Robert barks at Sunja, asking what's blocking their path and ordering her to tell them to move. Sunja replies that she just can't do that, making him instantly ask why. She explains that despite its tiny size, that thing is a heavenly-class battleship. Their ship stands absolutely zero chance against it. And to make matters worse, she adds, it flies the banner of the heavenly demon cult. Robert's jaw drops at the news, completely terrified of what the cult could possibly want with them. A split second later, Officer Cho teleports right into their ship, scaring Robert and Sunja half to death. Cho locks eyes on Lee's seat, totally ignoring the bounty hunters. Hilariously, Lee doesn't even notice the intruder, too busy struggling to eat a hot dog with a knife and fork. Poor guy. He really should have just used his hands. Cho just stares him down, though calling it a stare is a stretch. Considering his tiny beady eyes, he instantly recognizes Lee from the wanted screens back in the district. Trying to play it cool, Robert steps up and nervously asks what brings a heavenly demon cult member aboard their ship. Cho does not even bother turning around. Walking straight up to Lee's table instead, he casually introduces himself as the first-class officer of the cult's Central Disaster Relief Committee and plops down in his seat. He tells Lee to relax and just talk to him like a friend. But Lee just keeps on chewing his food, not saying a single word. Robert is totally baffled, wondering how a literal child could hold the title of first-class officer, one of the most terrifyingly high ranks in the entire cult. With a cheerful smile, Officer Cho tells Lee that he has an urgent request and he flew all the way out here to discuss it. The officer warns Robert to back off, keeping his focus locked straight on Lee. Cho drops a name, revealing the mastermind behind this whole mess is Richel Archimond. He explains the guy used to be a top-tier scientist calling the shots on heavy military weapons, working for a massive defense contractor, right under the human government's nose. They called his pet project the City of Steel. Well, that totally explains the Iron Gang ambush up on the mountain. The officer reveals that Richel's methods got way too twisted. He was kicked out and vanished without a trace. Now he is hiding out down here, running sick experiments on a massive scale. Through all this heavy lore, Lee does not even glance his way. He just casually keeps munching on his hot dog. Cho keeps talking, spelling it out for them. Richel was not just fired like the public was told. He actually scored black budget funding to keep his shady projects alive in the dark. Officer Cho admits he thinks Richel's loyalists form an extreme faction, hiding deep inside the human government military. Finishing his last bite, Lee just casually asks Sunja for some water, totally brushing off the massive intel drop. Cho stares at him, stunned by the absolute zero reaction. He starts wondering who the heck Lee really is. Robert suddenly cuts in, asking if he just blamed a military faction, demanding to know if the human government military is really behind all this. Cho gives a stiff nod, telling him again to step away, warning that this is way above a civilian pay grade. Meanwhile, Sunja hands our boy his water and he is still totally silent. Robert furiously asks about their captain, yelling that she was just kidnapped. Cho coldly states their hands are tied and the only thing they can do is pray for her. Robert absolutely loses it, slamming his fists hard onto the table. He screams at Cho, asking what kind of garbage that is. He tells the officer to shut his mouth and leave because they are getting their captain back, roaring that he does not care who Cho is and if he tries to stop them, things will get ugly. Finally, Lee speaks up, telling Cho to listen closely. He calmly states he has zero interest in playing hero, but he is sure as hell not taking orders from him either. Lee squints, saying he was trying to figure out why a cop would spill such top-secret details to them. Our boy calls him out. The only reason is that Cho wants to use them as meat shields to do his dirty work. Lee scoffs, calling it a joke that some greenhorn kid is trying to manipulate him. Cho drops the act. He asks who Lee really is, addressing him with unexpected respect as a noble. Lee stays dead silent. Instead, he shoots back a question, asking if that is the real reason the officer showed up today. The officer matches his energy, keeping his mouth shut. Lee abruptly stands up, warning that if they are done here, then they have zero business together now or ever. Cho finally goes for the throat. He asks point blank if Lee is tied to the Heavenly Demon sect. Lee gives him a deadpan look, stating he has zero connection to them. The officer slowly nods, deciding to believe him for now. But he presses the issue one last time, making absolutely sure Lee has no ties to the Heavenly Demon sect. Just for the record, Cho warns him that if they are really not connected, then whatever Lee does next, it better have nothing to do with that cult, and that their sect will make that official declaration. Lee doesn't even bother looking back. He just brushes it off and tells him to get lost, saying he's got work to do. A moment later, Cho hops back into his ship and blasts off. Lee watches him fade into the distance, intrigued. Despite his tough guy act, he keeps his eyes on the ship. He thinks to himself, it's a huge relief. The demonic sect still has some actual talent left. Meanwhile, Cho continues drifting through the endless void of space. Lee has to admit the kid's got skills, but he's still way too green. Shifting his focus back to the mission to rescue the captain, Robert speaks up. He says it's time to get down to business. Sunja nods in agreement, but drops a bombshell. The coordinates just changed. They're no longer heading to the Icarus moon. The new target, the Genta moon. It looks like Cho might actually have something to do with sending these updated coordinates. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to Mount Hua's second moon, Genta. Down on the rocky surface, there's a massive crater. This is where Count Ritual dug deep underground to hide his secret facility. Deep inside, Seryung is completely drained, sprawled out on the cold floor after her brutal defeat. Count Ritual ruthlessly drags her lifeless body toward his private lab. Waiting inside is something that looks exactly like a giant operating table. Ritual hauls her right up to the setup, which is rigged with heavy steel restraints. He roughly shoves Seryung into the room and immediately starts strapping her down. Panic setting in, Seryung demands to know what the hell he's doing. He just turns his head, a creepy smile on his face. He asks if she's finally wide awake. She just glares at him, brows furrowed in pure hatred. He chuckles, saying he honestly can't believe she snapped out of it so fast. He mutters that there really must be something special running through the veins of noble bloodlines, calling her out as the Grand Lady of the Sichuan Tang clan. Ritual leans in and tells her not to sweat it. He's about to cure all her pain. He promises to wipe her memories completely clean, even the darkest, most traumatic parts of her past. It's obvious. Proud of that, he plans on turning her into just another test subject floating in his creepy collection of glass tubes. He tells her straight up that he's going to turn her into an iron gangchi, giving her a brand new simple life where all she has to do is obey. Hearing this, Seryung lets out a furious growl. She violently clenches her fist, trying to spark a massive blast of energy. But absolutely nothing happens. Ritual smirks, telling her to save her breath. It's totally useless. He's already sealed off every single one of her meridians. He finishes prepping the table, clicking the heavy restraints into place. He coldly explains that her body isn't hers to control anymore, because he completely paralyzed her brain and spinal cord. Desperate, Seryung struggles to break free, but her muscles just won't budge. He sighs, reminding her that fighting back is pointless, so she might as well stop stressing out and just give in. But then, Seryung suddenly shoots straight up. Even with her entire nervous system totally shut down, she manages to trigger some kind of bizarre forbidden martial art. Her eyes flash a violent glowing red, tears of blood rolling down her face. A scorching glowing yellow substance bursts from her palm and shoots right into his body, burning him from the inside out. Count Ritual freezes in absolute shock, totally paralyzed, as she brutally plunges her bare hands straight into his chest. Gasping for air, she whispers that it's a deadly poison, known as pigeon's blood. The deadly venom quickly takes its toll on the Count. She warns him that struggling is completely pointless, just as she says that the poison tears a massive gaping hole right through Ritual's chest. His eyes widen in pure horror, trying to process her warning. In a flash, a razor-sharp blade shoots out, slicing clean through Seryung's hand. Ritual violently yanks his arm back, desperately trying to chop it off to stop the spread. A thick stream of crimson sprays from Seryung's freshly amputated wrist, splattering all over the place. Ritual glances up, completely annoyed, wondering what the heck just tripped the alarm. Back on the surface, Lee powers up, looking totally ticked off. Out of nowhere, a massive horde of iron zombies swarms out of the crater ready for blood. Robert locks and loads his heavy artillery, yelling at Lee to go handle the bots. He orders him to hurry up and save the captain. Lee does not waste a single second. He blasts off, leaving Robert totally alone to deal with the metal freaks. He rockets high into the sky, soaring way over the endless sea of enemies, and dives straight down toward the underground bunker. Robert stands there stunned. He cannot believe the guy ditched him that fast. Down below, Lee smashes into the tunnel, instantly meeting a wave of robot reinforcements, rushing up to the surface. But then, Lee unleashes his true form in a blinding flash of light. Our hero sets off a massive shockwave as he tears through the tunnel, totally vaporizing every bot in his path and caving in the entire entrance. Up top, Robert watches in pure shock, as giant chunks of debris are launched into the air by the blast, crushing a whole squad of bots right in front of him. But even with that, there is still an insane amount of enemies left to fight. Robert mutters that Lee could have at least given him a hand before ditching him. He did not have to take his orders, so literally, suddenly the iron zombie horde charges right at him, blades drawn. Realizing he is completely on his own, Robert curses under his breath and unloads every single weapon he has at the swarm. Meanwhile, Count Ritual is glued to the security monitors, watching the chaos up top. He looks incredibly beat up. On the glowing screen, he watches Robert fighting for his life, blasting away at the zombie horde. Robert is laying down heavy, cover fire, determined to wipe them all out. Ritual's android actively scans Robert's arsenal, analyzing the tech. It flags an MZC T-106 recoilless laser, followed by a TT-R8 auto missile system. Outside, Robert lets the missiles fly, blowing the zombie bots to pieces in a fiery spectacle. When a few get too close, he blasts into the air using what the AI calls anti-gravity thrusters. The android reports to Ritual that these weapons are definitely top-tier special forces gear, but it notes that the tech is super outdated and completely retired. Ritual smirks, realizing this guy is not an active threat, just some washed-up veteran. Thinking he was worried over nothing, he orders the AI to just wipe Robert and his crew out. But then, blaring sirens echo through the room. Another alarm. Ritual glares at the android, confused as to why the system is going off again. The AI coldly reports that an intruder just breached District 8. Barely a few seconds go by, and she announces the target already cleared District 8 and is blowing right into District 7. Ritual starts sweating, panicking over how anyone could tear through their top-tier security that insanely fast. Moments later, the android delivers the fatal update. The intruder went from District 8, smashed through District 7, and is already in District 6. Down in District 5, the tracking system keeps counting down the intruder's look, but then it just stops. The system glitches out, completely losing the target's signal. Richelieu freezes. There is just no way anyone could smash through their top-tier security that fast. The android frantically crunches the numbers, desperately trying to lock onto the intruder's location again. Out of nowhere, a blinding flash of light erupts right behind the machine. It tries to spit out the coordinates, but it completely locks up. Boom! The android detonates right there, making it crystal clear the intruder has arrived. Richelieu watches in horror as the bot gets blown into flying chunks of metal. He frantically scans the smoke, trying to figure out where the hit came from. Meanwhile, the blaring sirens start messing with the poor souls trapped inside the facility. Their glass tanks start flooding with a mysterious gas filling almost to the top. It is like a twisted, automated lockdown response to the breach. But just as fast, the sirens cut out. Dead silence. The holding tanks immediately reset. The gas clears out and fresh oxygen flows back into every single pod. Back in the main room, thick smoke hangs in the air while Richelieu stands there completely stunned. While he tries to wrap his head around what just happened, he spots a massive blown-out hole in the wall. It looks like something where someone just smashed right through solid concrete. Through the dust, Richelieu sees Lee casually strolling and hands just chilling in his pocket. It hits him. This laid-back guy is the monster who casually ripped through his ultimate defense system. Lee just tilts his head, giving him a curious look, totally giving off a harmless vibe. Without missing a beat, our boy steps through the rubble and walks right up to the Count. Lee doesn't utter a single word. He just stares straight through him. Richelieu is frozen in fear, his mind racing. Who in the world is this guy? And how did he scrap an entire army of high-tech robots without even breaking a sweat? While the Count is still sweating bullets, Lee vanishes, moving faster than the eye can track. He blinks right behind him, stepping up to Seo-jung, who is strapped down on the lab table. Count Richelieu whips around, trembling as he watches him. Poor Seo-jung is chained to the cold metal by one arm with her other limb, and she is covered head to toe in red. Sweating profusely, Count Richelieu finally snaps out of it and demands to know who he is. Lee completely ignores him, his eyes glued to Seo-jung's battered face and lifeless. His voice drops perfectly cold as he speaks. You really ruined a kid who barely even got to live. He slowly turns, adding that he clearly has zero respect for human life. Pointing out the thousands of innocent victims floating in those tanks, Lee locks eyes with him, calling him exactly what he is, an absolute monster. The Count just stands there totally dumbfounded and lost for words. Lee glares back at him, his face twisting into pure disgust. The sheer pressure of his gaze paralyzes the Count, who is still reeling from the ambush. He barks at Lee, desperately demanding his identity and what his deal is. But Lee just raises his hand toward him, casually triggering one of his martial arts skills. Seo-jung's blade lying on the floor suddenly hums with energy and rattles against the ground. Like it has a mind of its own, the weapon floats right into the air and points forward. Lee coldly tells Richelieu that he refuses to waste his breath on trash that is not even human. With a flick of his wrist, he commands the blade, and it rockets straight for the Count's. But right at the last second, instead of putting that sword straight through Richelieu's head, Lee sends the blade whistling right past the Count's ear, just to flex his skills a little bit. The sword whips right back, and Lee casually snatches it out of the air. The Count's jaw drops. He recognizes this insane move as the legendary void manipulation. He quickly runs a scan on Lee, but what he finds freaks him out even more. Zero internal engine. He starts panicking, wondering how an unmodded guy can fight like this. How is he pulling off a god-tier move, like void manipulation, which is meant only for transcendent masters? Ritual's cybernetic eyes keep running diagnostic. He's totally stunned, wondering if Lee is using ancient lost martial arts. Ritual tries to keep his cool, but he knows he's completely backed into a corner. Why did this monster have to show up right now? The Count glances down at his glitching body, heavily damaged by Seo-jung, and kicks himself for letting that crazy girl land a hit. Lee steps right up to him, his gaze dead cold. He points his sword straight at Ritual's throat, making the Count flinch. Lee coldly states that he isn't just less than human, he's not even a real warrior. Our boy scoffs, asking how he can zone out in the middle of a death match. That insult strikes a massive nerve. Ritual screams at him to shut up and lunges forward. The Count charges in trying to land one devastating strike. But suddenly Ritual feels warm blood dripping down. In a flash, Lee had already dashed right past him and sliced clean through his left arm. Ritual looks back, horrified to see his severed limb just laying on the floor. Lee glares over his shoulder, saying that was pure payback for hurting Seal Young. Meanwhile, she is still lying completely out cold on the operating table. Lee turns back to Ritual, declaring that the only thing left now is to pay the toll for pissing him off. He starts flaring up his raw aura, warning the Count to brace himself because making him mad comes with a massive price tag. Our boy floods the entire lab with a suffocating wave of power. And yeah, the Count is absolutely screwed right now. Count Ritual curses his incredibly rotten luck. First, he had to deal with the fierce lady from the Sichuan Tang clan, and now he has to survive this total freak of nature on the exact same day. A quick system check shows his core is running at less than 40%, all thanks to that nasty chest wound Seal Young gave him earlier. Let's be real, his chances of winning this fight are basically zero. Desperate times call for incredibly desperate measures. He overrides his safeties and cranks his internal system to the absolute max. Warning lights instantly flash red as his damaged body just can't handle this much raw output anymore. The system AI blares that he is blowing past safe limits, completely unable to vent out the insane heat buildup. Red alerts keep flashing, screaming at Ritual that he is in critical danger. But he ignores it all, forcing his core into maximum overdrive anyway. Lee watches him, redline his energy, tilting his head at this totally bizarre technique. He sighs, wondering what happened to the world where scrubs just artificially boost their stats, way past their actual limits, and it really makes him miss the good old days of true martial arts. Suddenly, a weak voice nearby begs him to kill Ritual right now. He glances over to see who is talking. It turns out to be Seal Young. She finally woke up, though she looks incredibly pale and weak. Panting, she warns him that Ritual is actually triggering a self-destruct sequence. So she screams at him to finish the guy off before he makes his move. Lee snaps his head toward the Count, but time is already up. Blinding light suddenly blasts out of every pore on the Count's body, and he is literally seconds away from detonating. Realizing he can't stop it, Lee just watches as the Count blows himself up right in front of him. A massive flash of light erupts from where the Count was just standing. The shockwave builds up, and the blinding glow quickly swallows the entire facility. Cut back to Robert. His weapons are totally clicking on empty. His TTR-8 missiles are fully tapped out with system warnings flashing to reload. His photon cannon is drained dry too, throwing up even more error screens. Even his V-10 Aster Claymore starts glitching out, demanding immediate repairs. To make matters worse, his fireproof suit is completely wrecked and needs a full swap. And the real kicker, he is still trapped inside a massive circle of hundreds of killer bots. Yeah, he is in deep trouble. Robert mutters under his breath, remembering how he told Lee this would be a total walk in the park if he had just backed him up earlier, but these metal goons don't care and they start closing in. The second they realize his guns have gone quiet, Robert yells at them to hold up, shouting that everybody needs a timeout. He straight up calls them a bunch of junk metal freaks. Suddenly, he asks if they even know who they're messing with and starts ripping off his combat gear. He unclips his heavy chest armor, letting it crash to the floor, ready to throw down without all the extra weight. Stripping down to the basics, he proudly announces himself as Robert Carlyle, Sergeant Major of the Northern Galaxy's Special Tactical Combat Unit. He whips out twin daggers, smirking as he tells the robot mob not to get too scared. With a wild shout, Robert lunges right at them, yelling at them to bring it on. Things are looking incredibly sketchy for him. The bots are totally caught off guard by his reckless charge, but Robert is ready to slice them up. But suddenly, out of nowhere, a massive explosion rips through the area right in front of him. He stares in shock as a giant blast wave erupts from the underground base. The fireball rapidly expands, wiping out a huge chunk of the moon's surface. The blinding flash of the detonation is so intense that it completely whites out the entire battlefield for a second. Robert braces himself against the shockwave from afar, totally clueless about what just went down. His jaw practically hits the floor. As he looks around in utter disbelief, he just stands there frozen with his daggers in hand, completely stunned by the crazy plot twist. The blast forms a towering mushroom cloud, making it look like a literal nuke just dropped on the base. It is so insanely huge that it can easily be seen from miles away, launching giant chunks of debris straight up into outer space. Back on the Greenwood ship, the blast wave does not go unnoticed. Kim, who has been quietly spying on everything these bounty hunters have been up to, is just as mind blown by the sudden massive eruption. Captain Cheju rushes in with breaking news. They just picked up a massive electromagnetic blast, a gigaton-level explosion, coming straight from the moon of planet Mantua. Kim's face darkens. Things are getting way too serious. He points out that a blast of this crazy scale could only be the work of the military. This strongly hints that the human government itself might be pulling the strings. Without hesitation, he orders the captain to wipe every single record of this blast. Videos, data, everything. He looks the captain dead in the eye and says they saw absolutely nothing today. Shiju is completely stunned by this cover-up order, especially since he just suggested reporting the whole thing to high command. Meanwhile, Officer Cho's starship is hovering nearby. From the bridge, his radar also catches the massive shockwave hitting Mantua's moon. He stares at the flashing warning screens, wondering what on earth just went down on Genta. Back on the ground, Robert is totally lost. He has zero clue what's going on. He looks around in pure confusion, because not only did a massive bomb just drop, but every single combat bot just completely shut down. Their connection to the main base is totally dead. Then it hits them. They came here to save the captain. Panic sets in as they wonder if she survived. Knowing she was trapped inside the facility, they ditch their spot and sprint madly toward the building, praying they are not too late. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light forces them to stop in their tracks. Please don't tell me the place is blowing up again. Robert squints at the glowing sky and carefully steps forward to check it out. The glow gets brighter and brighter, moving right toward him. Suddenly, Lee steps out of the blinding beam, holding Captain Seo Jang tightly in his arms. Robert's heart drops when he looks closer. The captain is horribly bruised and completely missing an arm. Lee stares down at her shattered body, his face full of absolute sorrow. Robert is frozen in pure shock. He stares at the two of them, completely speechless, just praying the captain makes it out alive. Meanwhile, Officer Cho reports back to his master, confirming that planet Mantua is somehow totally back to normal. Right now, the master is just chilling closely, staring at a glowing plant, growing in a beautiful flower field. Cho adds that all the human test subjects have quietly gone back to their normal everyday lives. He says that luckily their memories were wiped clean. It's literally like nothing ever happened. The master chuckles, saying this whole crazy thing sounds just like a spooky ghost story. He then asks how Richel actually pulled off such a wild trick. Cho replies that there's only one logical answer. They must have finally perfected entropy inversion. The master raises an eyebrow. He tells Cho to drop the nerdy science terms and speak plain English, since not everyone is a total brainiac like him. Cho breaks it down, explaining that entropy inversion is a crazy tech that literally rewrites time itself. Basically, it's a giant reset button for reality, because it could accidentally spawn endless alternate universes. Messing with this stuff was strictly banned. But he adds with a serious tone, things have clearly changed. Not only did Richard perfect the technology, he actually managed to cure all the test subjects at the exact same time. On top of that, he even managed to create dark forbidden tech, like one-way teleportation, just to name a few. He admits that Richard is an even bigger genius than the rumors claim. The master points out that with skills like that, the human military factions are definitely backing him up from the shadows. He scoffs at those greedy humans, saying they have no idea that playing with fire will end up burning them and the entire world. The master then asks him, flat out, is Richard dead? Officer Cao hesitates, admitting he isn't entirely sure. The master narrows his eyes. If CO isn't sure, that means Richard is still breathing. CO nods, confirming the bad news. He's given strict orders to tie up all the loose ends. The master also reminds him to eliminate the guy who's been using their secret martial arts. Knowing he means Li Cao doesn't argue. He just quietly agrees. You can tell he hates the idea, since it just doesn't sit right with him, but he keeps his mouth shut. Later on, Cao heads back to his ship, sinking heavily into his usual chair. He just sits there in silence, completely lost in thought. Meanwhile, back on planet Mantua, things have finally calmed down. Lord Yang pours a warm cup of tea for Li, saying his daughter filled him in on everything. He admits he has no idea how to repay Li for saving her life, along with everyone else who got mixed up in the rebellion. Lai calmly replies that those people weren't really rebelling. They were just being mind-controlled like puppets. Li points out that someone, much more dangerous, pulled the strings, hinting at what a certain kid, meaning Officer Cao, told him. Lord Yang nods, slowly, knowing that's the absolute truth. He explains that even though their clan has lost a lot of power recently, no regular person would dare break the planet's strict martial laws, unless they had some serious backing from the higher-ups. Taking another slow sip of his tea, Li casually mentions that Yang is just going to sweep all this under the rug, acting like it never even happened. Lord Yang freezes, his eyes shooting wide open, completely caught off guard by the boy's sharp instincts. He can't figure out how our hero read his mind so easily. Unbothered, Li doesn't even look up, just quietly enjoying his drink. Yang realizes just how terrifyingly calm this kid is about such a massive conspiracy. He seriously starts to wonder who Li actually is. Breaking the silence, Yang admits that his only priority right now is survival. He has to protect the 10,000 members of his clan, and he frankly doesn't care if he has to swallow his pride to make sure they live. It seems that launching a sudden counterattack just wouldn't be a smart move for the safety of his people. Sovereign Yang then points out something interesting. Li isn't sweating this conversation at all. He mentions that ever since he climbed to the very top, people have only ever spoken to him with total respect. Yet right now, Li's casually disrespectful vibe feels completely natural, and it is totally throwing him off. Li brushes it off, telling him not to overthink things, saying it was his own personal choice to live life looking down on the rest of the world. That is just how he decided to exist. Those words hit Yang hard. He starts wondering if Li genuinely views himself as some kind of god, since he actively chooses to look down on everyone else. The sword sovereign stares at him and demands to know who he really is. Our guy fires back that ignorance is bliss, especially since Yang already chose to live with his eyes shut to the truth. He warns him to keep them closed because waking up will only make things worse. Yang is just left staring at him in total confusion. This is easily the weirdest guy he has ever crossed paths with. Li pushes away from the table and heads for the door. But right before walking out, he turns back and says he needs to ask the sovereign one last thing, admitting he is pretty out of touch with how the world works these days. He asks if this era has any kind of tech that can reattach missing limbs. He knows the question sounds crazy, but he has been dealing with a lot of crazy nonsense lately. Cut to the outside, where Horan is quietly taking in the view. Meanwhile, that demonic spaceship has officially blasted off from planet Manhwa and is cruising through deep space. Inside the ship, we see Se Ryong stripped down and completely knocked out. She is hooked up to a massive life support machine that is actively forcing her lungs to breathe and keeping her from slipping away. Sunja stands right beside her, eyes glued to the flashing vitals on the screen. She keeps tracking the numbers, and the reality is grim. Sunja finally steps out of the med bay and heads down the corridor to the main deck. Suddenly, Robert gets right in her face, wasting no time as he demands to know if the captain is going to pull through. She doesn't sugarcoat it flat out, telling him the captain is fading fast. Robert is stunned, arguing that all she lost was a single arm, something that should be a quick, surgical fix. The android breaks the harsh truth, revealing that the captain's bloodstream is flooded with a toxic poison, generated by her very own body, and the real nightmare. This toxin is completely unheard of, meaning there is zero cure for it. She explains that she did everything in her power to suppress the venom, but it is already eating away at her vital organs. Panic sets in, and Robert actually grabs Sunja, lifting her off the ground. He desperately yells that if she needs a real hospital, they should already be flying there. Sunja calmly repeats that a cure simply does not exist. On top of that, even if they tried to reach a proper medical center, they would have to travel all the way to Kina and Nebula, and there is no way the captain would survive the jump. Robert drops her back down, his voice going quiet as he asks if there is truly nothing left to try. Sunja just turns her back on him and says they need to get ready for their final goodbyes. She brings up the captain's old running joke, how he always wanted someone to strap a shield to her and launch her into the void right after he passed, just so she could drift through the stars forever. She mentions she's scraping together some cash to buy top-tier armor for his final send-off. Robert just stands there completely shattered, the heavy reality of Sunja's words finally sinking in. The normally lively ship now feels dead, cold, and incredibly empty. Sunja shuffles over to the dispenser and grabs a cup of water. She just stares blankly into the cup, knowing full well she can't even drink it. Instead, she dumps the water right over her own head. As the liquid streams down her face and pools in her eyes, you realize something heartbreaking. This is her only way of crying. Suddenly, her eyes snap wide open. Something is out there. Looming outside is a massive cruiser belonging to the sword matron of the Western Heaven. Panic hits her instantly. What on earth could the matron possibly want from their crew now? Outside, the matron locks her gaze onto the demon ship. Her face is tense with worry, clearly burdened by the heavy fallout of everything that just went down. She keeps her eyes glued to the hull, desperately needing a word with the bounty hunter. Meanwhile, down on the Manhwa planet, Sovereign Yang spots something weird up in the sky. The sword matron's cruiser has just breached their atmosphere, and her motives are a total mystery. The sword sovereign scowls. This kind of surprise visit is definitely not welcome. Sang Jin, the head of security for the Manhwa sect, rushes in to confirm that the ship belongs to the matron. The sovereign immediately recognizes the intruder as Kim Yen-hwa. Sang Jin reports they've tried hailing her multiple times, but they are getting absolute radio silence. Sovereign Yang sighs, figuring she isn't actually here to see him anyway. So he waves it off and orders his men to just leave her alone. This seriously ticks Sang Jin off. He fires back, reminding the sovereign that this is still their sex home turf. Just because she holds the title of matron doesn't give her a free pass to disrespect them like this. But Yang just offers a calm smile and tells him to take a breath. He reminds the hothead that the Manhwa sect is currently in a vulnerable rebuilding phase. Picking fights with other powerhouses is the absolute last thing they need right now. Clearly, Sang Jin is totally out of the loop regarding the massive disaster that just crippled their ranks. Sang Jin tries to push back, but the sovereign cuts him off. Patience is their greatest weapon right now. Walking away, Yang makes it clear they just have to swallow their pride until they're strong enough to actually bite back. Sang Jin is left standing there totally lost, but he has zero choice in the matter. He has to stand down. The sovereign's warning really threw him off. He has absolutely no clue what he meant by rebuilding. Meanwhile, the sword matron's ship just hovers silently over the planet, completely ignoring all security hails. Inside the cabin, the matron turns to Li. Calling him revered master, she tells him straight up that she's here for business. She casually mentions she might have exactly what he needs. Inside the ship, the sword matron has already secured its Co Young from the demon ship. The matron turns to Li, offering to treat his injured companion. Lee raises an eyebrow. Are you saying you can actually reattach her severed arm? He marvels at just how crazy modern technology has gotten. The matron smirks. Fixing a limb is child's play. Just basic first aid in this day and age. But the real challenge, purging the deadly blood poison eating away at her heart. Lee freezes. He had no clue she was even poisoned. It clicks. Seo Young hails from the infamous Sichuan Tang clan. No wonder she's such a crazy hothead. The matron looks impressed. She explains that this blood poison is a highly guarded secret technique exclusive to the Tang family. Lee squints at her. And how exactly do you know that? Pushing his doubts aside, he finally gives in and begs her to save Seo Young. The matron just stares at him in dead silence, waiting for the real answer. Sighing, Lee cuts to the chase. She is helping him, so what is the He looks her dead in the eye. What do you want from me? Her tone shifts. There is someone she desperately needs to hunt down, and she knows Lee is her ticket in. A chilling, killing intent drips from her voice. She is absolutely furious. Lee instantly connects the dots. She is talking about that sick freak ritual. Funny, Lee scoffs. I recently met a guy I really wanted to punch in the but if that is the guy you're looking for, you are way too late. He's already dead. The matron's eyes darken. Ritual is still breathing. The bastard just crawled back into an even deeper, darker hole. He is hiding out in a sector known as the Galactic Nebula, right inside the Vista Union system, specifically on Moon 108ZR4H. She leans in. And that is exactly why I need your help. Meanwhile, cut to Moon 108ZR4H. It is a massive graveyard for military droids, run by the human government's Southern Galactic Corp. Amidst the scrap, a mysterious woman approaches a lone pod. She holds a thick blanket ready for whoever is inside. She just stands there in the eerie silence waiting. With a heavy hiss, the pod slowly unlocks. A blinding, unearthly glow bleeds out from the crack. The heavy doors slide wide open, revealing the figure trapped inside. As it opens, thick, mysterious fluid sloshes forward. It looks exactly like the twisted experiments from Ritual's lab. The cold liquid spills out, pooling around the woman's bare feet. The tank drains out completely, but the intense glare makes it impossible to see who is inside. Stepping closer, the silhouette, he is shivering, curled up at the bottom of the pod. He wraps his arms around himself. It is obvious he has been tortured in some brutal experiment. With a gentle touch, the woman steps in and wraps the blanket around his shoulders. She welcomes him back to the land of the living softly, calling him Count. Count Ritual just stares at her, completely lost. He has absolutely no idea what is going on. Drawing a total blank, he asks who she is, so she introduces herself as Rachel Archimond. She claims to be one of his vessels. Creepily enough, they share the exact same last name. But what is even crazier, she is a dead ringer for the matron of the West Sky Sword. She gently tells him to just give it a minute for his memories to kick in. Rachel keeps staring still, totally bewildered. Rachel gazes right back at him in utter silence. Deep down, she is clinging to the hope that he will fall for her all over again. Once those locked-away memories finally surface, cut to the matron pointing up at the moon. That is exactly where Rachel is hiding out. She explains it is a massive military dumping ground for old droids, making it the perfect hideout. But there is a huge catch. That junkyard is strictly run by the human government, which means the planetary defense forces have their eyes all over it. Lee tilts his head, asking if this human government is some kind of official organization. He mentions a kid telling him the exact same thing about Cho. The matron chuckles, joking that nobody has used the phrase official organization in literally thousands of years. She notes that he definitely has a knack for making people seriously curious about him. She confirms the human government is indeed the real deal, keeping a cautious distance, yet maintaining a peaceful vibe with the martial arts world. Lee smirks, noting how they never get too close but never stray too far either. He casually adds that the elite's obsession with hoarding power never really changes. The matron gives him a weird look, wondering why he talks like some ancient relic from thousands of years ago. She cannot help but wonder who this guy really is. Catching her stare, he tells her to just cut to the chase and tell him the plan. Shift to the Planetary Defense Commander, Major Bernardo, gazing out of his high-rise office window. The matron tells Lee she needs him to run interference and distract the defense forces, buying her enough time to slip past and hunt down Rachel. Back with Major Bernardo, he watches the facility operations below. Without turning around, he addresses the room, mentioning a very interesting report that just crossed his desk. A report stating that the secret lab was completely wiped off the map. Sitting right behind him is Rachel, with Rachel standing loyally at his side. Rachel calmly explains they hit a slight bump in the road. He claims he had to scorch the earth to cover their tracks, since keeping the project a secret is priority number one. The commander scoffs, mocking Rachel for having such a smooth tongue after making such a massive mess. He asks if that silver tongue of his will work on the project's angry investors. He sharply adds that even burning through his multiple lives will not be enough to save him once they find out he blew up the lab. Unfazed, Rachel insists it was not a total loss. He reveals that the Steel City project, was only phase 1. They managed to pull enough raw data from those twisted experiments to actually call it a win. Getting up to leave, Ritual announces it is time to roll out the main event, the Iron Jiangxi project. But right before he walks out the door, Major Bernardo stops him for one little favor. He smirks and asks if Ritual could cook up another copy of the vessel he brought along, staring hungrily at Rachel. Ritual's aura turns ice cold at the dirty remark, but he walks away without even looking back. Groaning with frustration, the commander complains that he has been stuck here. He has been rotting in the middle of nowhere for way too long, and he is bored out of his mind. He sneers that if making a new one is too hard, Ritual can just loan him his for a few days. Ritual casually says he will think about it before walking out with Rachel. He looks completely annoyed by the request, but decides to just keep the peace for now. Deep down, he thinks the commander is total garbage. Meanwhile, the commander scoffs, wondering why Ritual treats something completely non-human like a real person. He finds the whole thing completely insulting. Meanwhile, in another place, rain pours down heavily. Siriong looks fully recovered, gripping her sword tightly. Soaked by the downpour, she stares around with a blank, lost look in her eyes. As the cold rain beats down, she wonders why her memories feel so hazy and dark. Suddenly, the sword matron steps right in front of her. She points out that Siriong might look carefree on the outside, but she is really hiding behind a heavy mask playing the part of a Sichuan Tang clan noble. Siriong just looks completely lost. She has no idea what the matron means. The sword matron orders Siriong to follow her, saying she came here to take her back. But Siriong refuses, insisting she has to guard the transfer portal right behind her. The sword matron bluntly tells her this is not reality, it is just an illusion. She drops the harsh truth that there is nothing left for her to protect anymore. She tells Siriong straight to her face that she has already lost it all, and that is exactly why she is stuck inside this fake world. So she demands that Siriong come back with her. But Siriong angrily snaps back, shouting that she will protect the portal, even if it costs her own life. Suddenly, Siriong's eyes shoot wide open in pure shock. The sword matron drives her blade straight through Siriong's chest. Siriong stares down at the steel, piercing her heart, totally stunned. The sword matron coldly says that if she is going to be stubborn, she will just have to drag her out by force. With a gasp, Siriong wakes up floating inside a healing tank on the sword matron's ship. Blinking her eyes open, she thrashes in the liquid, frantically wondering where on earth she is. Later on, the sword matron steps up to her charging terminal to power up her energy core. After burning so much power to save Siriong, 3.6 cycles have been restored. Her battery level is now sitting at 84%. Just then, Siriong quietly walks into the room. The sword matron turns and asks how her body is feeling. Siriong freezes up in silence for a second, knowing it is incredibly rare to get a private audience with someone like the sword matron. Seeing her hesitate, the matron tells her to just focus on healing up, at least until her neural network completely stabilizes. Breaking the silence, Siriong deeply thanks her for coming to her rescue. But the sword matron coldly replies that she is giving herself way too much credit. She points out that favors are only owed between people on the exact same level. She adds that, no matter her ties to the Sichuan Tang family, she is completely invisible even to her own peers. Basically, she means absolutely nothing. Hurt but curious, Siriong asks why she even... The sword matron mutters about how completely ruthless the Sichuan Tang family is. She stares down into a glass jar, where she is keeping a deadly poison parasite locked away. Siriong shifts uncomfortably, hating any talk about her dark past and her clan. Right after that, the ship's system chimes in announcing that the internal core is 100% charged. Turning back, the matron looks at Siriong and plainly says the parasite isn't hers anymore. With a sharp look, the matron claims the poison now belongs to her, but she's totally willing to hand it over. Siriong frowns, trying to figure out who she means. Before it hits her, she's talking about Li. Meanwhile, Li touches down on planet Mirim to have a chat with Sovereign Yang. Li waves off the old man's gratitude, telling him to just drop it, since he only stepped in because he felt like it. The sword Sovereign nods, saying he gets it, but insists they aren't on the same page. Yang declares he'll pay back his debt with a piece of genuine advice. He warns Li about a venomous spider lurking in the abyss. On her way out, she spots a shady figure creeping up beside her. The sword Sovereign's warning echoes the matron taints everything she gets close to. Elena glares, telling her not to get too comfortable just because she's... It just goes to show that the matron really does poison everyone she touches. Inside the ship, Siriong casually asks Elena why she's throwing around threats. She tilts her head, asking if they have some kind of beef to settle. Elena snaps back. The only reason she hasn't destroyed her yet is because her mother saved her life. A heavy, tense silence falls between the two women. Siriong finally turns away, brushing it off by saying she and her mother are exactly alike. Furious, Elena shouts at her not to turn her back on her. But Siriong keeps walking, tossing back that whatever she says is totally fine by her. Right before stepping out, the captain stops and glances. She spins around to face Elena, who locks eyes with her, waiting. Se-ryong narrows her eyes and demands to know why Elena is suddenly dropping her manners and talking down to her. Back on planet Miram, Lee gives the sword sovereign a polite nod for his advice, but makes it clear he's going to handle things his own way. He guesses she's probably hunting down someone super important to her. The old man shares a dark legend from Jianghu about the sword matron of the western sky. It's all about the god-tier power she's chasing. He even admits he crossed paths with her back when he was young. She came straight out and told him she wanted to have his baby, claiming a kid with both of their genes would be the most perfect being alive. He sighs, admitting she was absolutely stunning. He says even though he was already engaged back then, saying no to her was incredibly tough. He chuckles, confessing he still kind of regrets turning her down. Sovereign Yang adds that rumors say over 100 men actually fell for her trap. At the same time, Rachel walks into her hidden moon base, deep inside the nebula. The sword sovereign looks at Lee, explaining that all those guys willingly gave up their genes for her. Inside the lab, a man stares at Rachel, who looks exactly like a perfect clone of the matron. A bitter look flashes across his face as seeing her instantly brings back a flood of awful memories. He explains that the matron always tosses her men away like trash once she gets what she wants, which is exactly how she earned the title of Black Widow. Just like the deadly spider, she literally devours her partners right after they finish. Lai raises an eyebrow, asking if that means she has a ton of kids running around. The sword sovereign nods grimly, confirming she has over 100 children, probably one for every single guy she lured into her web. Lee's jaw drops, asking how one woman could possibly pop out that many kids, especially looking that young. Sovereign Yang shakes his head, explaining that is not how she gives birth. He reveals that she actually grows them in test tubes using genetic engineering. By doing it this way, she can easily create 100 babies at once. Our guy is totally blown away by all this, muttering about how completely insane the world has gotten. He asks Yang why on earth she would want that massive of a family, since raising even one kid is a total nightmare. Yang replies that she is chasing the absolute peak, trying to engineer the ultimate perfect being. She is doing all this to fulfill a lifelong dream she could never reach. But so far, every single clone has been a huge letdown, and that is exactly why humanity finally caught her eye. The Sovereign gives him a serious warning to watch his back, because getting close to that woman is pure suicide. Lee takes a sip of his tea, sighs that it is a real shame, and stands up. Yang looks totally confused and asks what he means by that. Walking away, Lee casually mentions that it would have been nice if she was his type, since he sometimes thinks about having a kid of his own. Yang just stares at him, completely lost for words. A little while later, Seo Jung finally steps back onto the deck of the US Diable, only to get completely mobbed by her emotional crew. Robert locks her in a massive bear hug, while Sunja clings tightly to her leg, both crying about how they always knew she would make it. Seo Jung, looking super awkward, struggles to peel Robert off of her, begging for some breathing room. He flat out refuses, whining about how she could act so cold when they missed her this much. Meanwhile, chilling in the corner, our ancient is just munching on a hot dog, completely ignoring the drama. Finally, breaking free, Seo Jung walks over to him. She nervously mumbles that she heard he saved her life, which is a pretty awkward way to say thanks. She hesitates for a second, saying she only has one question, before asking if he is older than her. Lai just gives her a blank stare, chewing in silence. Taking that awkward silence as a yes, she answers her own question. He is definitely older, she declares. Probably way older, like an uncle or maybe even a grandpa. With that settled, she suddenly snatches the plate of hot dogs right out from under him. She tells him his junk food days are over, and yells at Sunja to bring him some healthy organic greens instead, acting super worried about his old age. Holding up the very last piece of his hot dog, she orders him to drop it. In a split second, as a dark, terrifying aura explodes from his body, he shifts straight into his deadly martial arts stance, warning her to back off right now if she wants to live. Robert and Sunja can only stand there completely frozen, watching their captain and their ancient guest, about to throw down over a snack. For Seo Jung, it seems like love and total violence really do go hand in hand. Meanwhile, halfway across the galaxy, inside the 32nd district of the Heavenly Demon Sect, a guy named Jang Rutak was completely reeling from a massive bombshell. He stammered, practically begging the sword matron to repeat what she just dropped on him. The matron's voice was dead calm as she confirmed the intel about the guy he only knew as Lee. 2,000 years ago, a man willingly locked himself away inside a stone chamber, deep beneath Mount Tai on Earth. She said his name was Lee Maxian, and he was undeniably tied to their very own Heavenly Demon Sect. Jang Rudik frantically waved his hand, cutting her off. Yeah, he got that part. He demanded she repeat the exact thing she said right after. The sword matron looked him dead in the eye and dropped the final devastating piece of the report. She told him that this Lee Maxian guy, he used to go by the title of Jang Rudek's eyes went wide with pure shock. His breath caught in his throat like the name itself was a physical punch. Meanwhile, the Duke was down in his lab, uploading data from a microchip, while his assistant mentioned that everything looked good to go. The second it was ready, the Duke gave the order to send it back to its master. And bam, that chip landed right in the Duke's hand. When he wrapped up, he walked over to Bernardo, his aide handing over the requested product. Bernardo was like, "Are you kidding me? The Iron Gangshi project can actually turn living human bodies into combat droids. Not only that, but they were supposed to be able to use superhuman martial arts, and no matter how they looked at it, this thing didn't even look remotely human." The Duke told him it would soon enough, right as the thing leaped onto the other soldier's face and burrowed straight up his nose. His entire body started bulging with gnarly veins. It's a specialized android designed to enter a human body, paralyze the brain's nerves, hijack the entire nervous system, and turn the infected host into a living android. Plus, it was loaded with data on the deadliest, most efficient martial arts techniques in the world. Basically, it's the ultimate killing machine. But why did it look so weird? Well, that's because the genes didn't match the test samples, which caused the nasty mutation. The chip popped out, and the guy just collapsed to the floor. The Duke told them to gear up for tomorrow's live demo. Since the prototype was finally ready, he had to show it off to the investors so they'd stop whining. Bernardo fired back that they'd waited 10 whole years for this. How could they possibly justify his $500 million investment, turning out a monster like that? But the Duke told him to chill out, because this thing hadn't met its true owner yet. The second it found them, it would work flawlessly. He told him to step up right now and become its true master. The flawless project, the Iron Gangshi, back on our hero's ship. Sunja warns everyone that they had reached the absolute limit. One step closer, and they would cross right into the red zone. Serjang hesitates for a second. Robert points out that one wrong move makes them wanted criminals by the human government. Goodbye to peaceful meals forever. Checking the radar for the matriarch's fleet, they realize it is holding the exact same distance, just on the totally opposite side. With no time to waste, Serjang orders the crew to prep the drop pod. Her plan, if things go south, they just pretend they never even met. She heads over to Lee, telling him this is where he gets off. But from here on out, it is going to be just the two of them. Lee shuts that down instantly, telling her to back off and stay put. He is flying solo on this one. Serjang calls him Mr. Lee, making up an excuse that he needs her to manually pilot the drop pod. But Robert calls her bluff out loud, asking why she is not just using autopilot. On top of that, she is a terrible pilot anyway. Busted, Serjang admits she has her own unfinished business with that guy, but Lee still orders her to stay behind. He explains that his own debt is way bigger than hers, and if it makes her feel any better, she needs to leave all that baggage behind her. Clinging to yesterday only stops you from moving forward. The more you obsess over what happened back then, the more you lose yourself right now. Suddenly, blaring alarms interrupt Bernardo. An intruder just smashed through their security grid. The heavenly demon has finally hit the ground. Down below, a voice echoes out asking the boss who this guy even is. It is Warren. He looks at Lee like a squash bug, wondering where this pest crawled out from. But the Duke is completely freaking out that this man is actually here. Bernardo checks the scans. Lee is just a normal human, no cybernetics, no weapons. At first glance, he just looks like some random stray demon. Tough luck for a beggar, Bernardo orders an instant kill, and a killer droid bursts out of the sand to strike. But the Duke totally loses it, screaming that this guy is way out of their league. He demands a full red alert. Bernardo snaps back, saying the guy is just a basic human. He has no idea why everyone is panicking over nothing. But the droid literally crumbles to dust just from Lee walking past it. Seeing that insane force field, the Duke yells to analyze his technique. Bernardo jumps up furious. He is the boss here, what gives? The Duke fires back that if this project fails, because of his stubborn pride, absolutely no one is making it out alive. As Lee keeps walking forward, massive defense grids fire up to block his path. The Duke frantically calls to bring someone out immediately. They have to speed up the project timeline, no matter the cost. And it turns out the secret weapon they are calling for is Warren. Rachel chimes in on the comms, saying she has arrived and is handling this personally. Out of nowhere, Lee looks up at a massive, raging tornado. The heavenly demon just casually asks who this guy is, but a giant hand slams down to crush him instantly. Even from way out in space, you can see the sheer scale of that crazy storm. Bernardo actually thought things were under control, unlike what the Duke had warned. But bursting right through the bottom of the giant hand, Lee smashed a hole and blasted straight up into the sky. Panicking, Bernardo screamed to wipe them out completely. The massive tornado shifted blood red, while Lee calmly stated that true Buddhist energy is born from absolute emptiness. So how could this thing be fueled by such filthy violence? He wondered. It was just a cheap knockoff hiding behind Buddha's image. Wielding his blade, the heavenly demon ripped a massive crater in the statue's palm and dashed straight for its head. Right then, true fear washed over Bernardo. Meanwhile, down on the ground, Lai figured all this chaos was the perfect cover for her to slip inside, and now thousands of droids were hunting her down. On the flip side, the Duke finally recognized that martial art. It was the Heavenly Demon's advanced heart sword technique. Without wasting a second, he ordered an immediate comms link to Bernardo, but he only got dead silence. A voice suddenly told him to drop it, saying he wouldn't be reaching anyone for a while. The Duke froze, recognizing that voice. It was the matriarch. He whispered her name, Yanghua, but she replied deadpan, saying if he was dropping her actual name so casually, they must have had some kind of history together. The Duke, looking totally crushed, asked if she seriously didn't remember him. Her blank stare gave him the answer. He quickly blamed his own face, explaining he had lost half of it in a lab accident. Because 25 years ago, on that exact night, she visited his lab at the Galactic Citadel. Yeah, he remembered it like it was yesterday, seeing such a stunning woman for the very first time. The matriarch had actually called him handsome back then, saying he looked even better than the rumors. The greatest scientist in history had some serious charm. Looks like I hit the jackpot today, Yanghua had told him. She had grabbed his face and straight up offered to have a baby with him, claiming a kid with their mixed genes would be the ultimate being. She desperately wanted his DNA. So then, why was she looking at him like a total stranger right now? The Duke screamed, begging to know if she had actually forgotten him. Her cold response, I don't keep memories of failures. She drew her blade, adding that forcing her to remember just annoyed her. Meanwhile, Bernardo was trapped in a living nightmare. The poor guy was totally out of options. 73% of his forces were wiped out and his backup call was way too late. Lee just ignored him. When Bernardo screamed asking who he was, Lee just smirked. You can read it on your tombstone. But right now, I am the one asking questions. Where is that half-monster freak? Back on comms, the Duke just couldn't process being called a failure. Wasn't even worth remembering. Nope, you're dead wrong. I can actually make that dream of the ultimate being come true. You failed, but I'm going to build one myself. I'm not a mistake. You abandoned me, he screamed, claiming he already pulled it off. He had thrown his entire life into this obsession. But right after those words, the Duke was run straight through. She remembered who he was. But the more the memories flooded back, the sicker it made her feel. By the time Lee showed up, the Duke was already on the ground. She didn't even hesitate to rip his heart right out. Their past connection meant nothing to her, zero mercy. Still, the dying Duke looked up and whispered that she had no idea how special she was. He promised she would figure it out eventually. Lee stepped in, telling him to let it go. It was over for him. Forgetting is the best gift death can give you, he said. The sooner you accept it, the easier this will be. But the Duke wasn't having it. In his mind, he wasn't really dying because his life's masterpiece would carry on his legacy forever. Right on cue, Warren busted into the room carrying Rachel. Lee's eyes went wide. What was that girl doing here? He marched right over to demand some answers. But suddenly, a blinding golden light swallowed the whole room. Meanwhile, Bernardo's alarms were going crazy. He was totally confused, especially when the base system itself told him to evacuate to the escape pod. The crazy part, he never even pushed the panic button. A girl's voice echoed through the speakers, claiming she triggered it as a favor for old time's sake. She added that if he wanted to go down like a true soldier, he was welcome to stay and face the music. Outside, a massive new warship hovered in the sky, leaving Seo Jung and the rest of the crew completely speechless. They had never seen anything like it. Sunjo pointed out that it literally warped into existence just seconds ago. But Robert told them to focus on the real issue. If they looked closely at the logo painted on the side, they would realize this monster belonged to the Earth government. Back inside, Lee backed away, staring in shock, as a massive aura of energy exploded from Warren. The Duke just started laughing. He was right all along. The power they were sensing was his alternate self holding his true legacy. And honestly, this insane power level was just the warm-up, because the girl was essentially a blank slate built to absorb and hold onto absolutely anything, meaning her strength had zero limits. Rachel snapped at him to shut his mouth and save his breath. She needed to focus on saving the girl right now. But the Duke just smirked, saying he was already a goner, and deep down she knew it too, because she too was a part of him. With his last breath, he handed over total control, telling her to live life exactly how she wanted. Reaching into his own chest, he pulled out a glowing blue core. He told her to use it to control the girl, step out into the real world and just live. Because with that kind of crazy power in her hands, absolutely nobody would ever dare to cross her again. Rachel just stared at him in silence as she took the glowing core. Don't do it, Lee yelled out. One lunatic causing this much damage was already enough for one lifetime. He told her he didn't care what kind of tragic backstory she had. She just needed to drop the core and turn the girl back to normal. That was his final warning. He wasn't going to repeat him. Rachel shot back, saying her life wasn't some crazy mess. He just lived on the edge, desperate, and totally raw. Melly didn't need to stress anymore. Her own story was ending right here, right now. From this moment on, she was going to live exactly the way she always wanted to. She walked right up to Warren, pulled him into a tight hug, and whispered that she was giving him his freedom in return. She left him with one final command: if they ever crossed paths again, he had to hold her tight. Just like that, Rachel's body shattered into dust. Warren turned back to normal, collapsing hard onto the ground. Suddenly, a Leviathan-class fighter jet popped up on the radar, hovering right at the edge of the atmosphere. It belonged straight to the human government's inspection bureau. Bringing a massive ship like that could only mean one thing. An orbital strike was coming. Robert started screaming that they were all totally dead. Seryong asked why the ship wasn't moving. Did they Sunja shook her head. No, they were definitely spotted. Right on cue, the girl from earlier suddenly popped up right behind them. What in the world was happening? Where did they even come from? He panicked. She just stared at them with a tiny smirk on her face, totally recognizing Seryong. She called her the very last heir of the Sichuan Tang family. Seryong froze in shock, but the redhead gently told her to relax, telling her to just pretend she saw nothing. She even promised to wipe the report she got on her way there. Since she was just a paper pusher, she would gladly let someone else handle their mess. So it was best for everyone to pretend this little meetup never happened. Out of nowhere, she radioed in asking to change their current plan. She called it Plan 6, RT. Confused, Seryong asked Sunja what was going down over there. Sunja explained that all the droids were completely shut down and offline. They were prepping for the orbital strike. That made Robert sweat bullets. Then, flashing a sweet smile, the redhead gave the order to open fire. A tiny drill dropped straight down into the desert, slowly starting to spin. Meanwhile, the redhead sighed, complaining that desk workers like her absolutely hated writing long reports. She tilted her head, asking why they were just standing there, warning them to run for their lives. They had exactly 5 minutes to get at least half a light year away, if they wanted to survive this. As she started to vanish, she dropped one last warning: they better never show their faces in front of her again. Seryong still had no clue what an orbital strike actually meant, but Robert, being an ex-military guy, started screaming that the woman was out of her mind. He had heard crazy rumors about a weapon that could easily wipe out entire moons or even planets, and only those guys had that kind of insane power. Sunja chimed in, saying the rumors were totally real. Something was drilling straight into the moon's core. If it went off down there, the whole moon was history. They had exactly 3 minutes to escape, no matter what it took. But for some weird reason, Seryong wasn't giving any orders. She just stood there, completely glued to the side of the moon. Back on the redhead's ship, she couldn't hide the massive grin on her face. She was having a blast. Slowly, the ground below started to crack and rise. And now, there were only 2 short minutes left before the big boom. But she wasn't worried. Her ship could easily tank the shockwave, as long as the shields were cranked up to 100%. But she actually dropped the shields down to 80%. Why? Because it made things way more thrilling. Confirmed. Redheads are absolutely crazy. She also spotted Bernardo sneaking off in the escape pod, which honestly was super predictable. But the real question was, after getting the warning, why weren't the others running away? Our main cruise ship started moving, but they weren't retreating. Nope, they were flying straight toward that moon. Robert was screaming his head off, yelling that they were all gonna die. He figured there was 0 chance they'd make it out alive. But Seryong just brushed him off. She said she wasn't dying today because her palm's lifeline was super long, and she fully planned on living to be at least 80. Meanwhile, Sunja didn't even have palm lines, or a set destiny, but she did know her lifespan was 5,000 years. Even so, she knew Seryong's crazy stunt was a terrible idea no matter how you looked at it. As they got closer, the outside temp spiked up to 300 degrees. Robert screamed that he didn't want to be roasted alive. Just then, Sunja picked up a life signal up ahead, but the heat in that area was at least 700 degrees. Right then, they spotted Lee floating in space, holding onto Warren. You could literally see the fire scorching his skin. Lai thought it was super bizarre. The intense heat and absolute chaos felt exactly like hell itself. A massive demon was looming over him, watching his every move. He thought, so, is this really how I die? The heavenly demon scoffed. He found the whole thing pathetic. If this was yesterday, he would have jumped right into the beast's mouth without a second thought. But today was different, because he made a promise to protect that girl. He glared at the demon and told it to back off. In exchange, he swore he'd hunt the monster down the second she was safe. Thing is, Lee was the only one seeing this. Over the comms, Seryong screamed at him to stop hallucinating and get on the damn ship. Back on the ship, the redhead warned that the outside temp just hit 1,500 degrees and a massive explosion was coming in 10 seconds. Warning them felt pointless. Once the core fully overloaded, the heat would max out at 6,000 degrees. Not even a god could survive that. Awesome, she thought to herself, at least I won't have to write a report. But even with the airlock ready, Lee and Warren couldn't get inside. And wait, where was everyone else? If they opened the hatch now, the whole crew would turn to ash. But she said they were all gonna die anyway. so they might as well die together. Right after the massive blast, the scene shifts. Lee isn't burning anymore and standing right in front of him is some kind of monk. Lee smirked, saying he never expected to see him again. The monk calmly replied that they were destined to cross paths even if it took 2,000 years. Flashing back to the past, the two are standing in a super humid misty area. The monk urges Lee to just ask the question already. When Lee stays silent, the monk tells him not to hold back. After all, Lee was the very person he'd been searching for, at the edge of the living world. The heavenly demon sat there resting beside a katana. He looked completely exhausted. He had just walked over countless dead bodies, but even after all that bloodshed, his legs and knees were trembling from the biting cold. The heavenly demon looked up and asked if the monk actually knew him. The monk shook his head. No. But even without knowing him, some things are burned into your memory before you even learn how to walk. He was born a monster, completely stripped of his right to even choose life. From day one, he was forced to gorge himself on death just to survive. Yet, no amount of slaughter could ever satisfy his endless gnawing hunger. He knew this agonizing reality all too. His purpose for living had completely vanished, but to the heavenly demon, that simply didn't matter. He was still an absolute powerhouse, and the monk knew exactly how terrifying his strength was. He stood at the absolute peak of martial arts, and even now, he could easily slaughter hundreds of thousands of fools who dared to look him in the eye. The monk simply nodded in silent agreement. But no matter how much blood he spilled, the deep emptiness inside him only grew worse. Because shedding blood was never going to truly feed his starving soul. The monk finally decided to answer his question, addressing his desperate desire to end this hollow existence. In this era, no one was strong enough to kill him. Only his own choice could pull the plug on his life. But choosing his own death, that thought had never even crossed his mind. After all, he had always believed his life was his alone to control. If my life isn't even mine to begin with, how can my death be any different? He questioned bitterly. The monk just stood there in heavy silence. Without getting a satisfying answer, Lee turned around ready to walk away forever. But the monk quickly stopped him in his tracks. He told Lee that if he couldn't choose between living and dying, he would lock him away in a realm that was neither life nor death. He warned him it might be a deep sleep he would never wake up from. But if by some miracle he did open his eyes again, he just might find a brand new path waiting for him. Perfect. Here is the translated and polished version of the next part of the story, fully following all the strict rules you set up. Snapping right back to the present day. The monk pointed out that Lee looked completely different than he did 2,000 years ago. The suffocating aura of darkness clinging to his back had completely vanished, and for the first time there was an actual spark of life in his eyes. So he asked Lee straight up, had he finally found a new reason to live? Lee shook his head. No, it was the exact opposite. Now that the heavenly demon's sect had broken free from their chains of darkness, and were finally living out in the warm sunlight, his entire reason for existing had faded away. His life had completely lost its meaning all over again. Then why on earth are you still breathing? The monk pushed further, asking if this wasn't the perfect chance to end it all. If you just surrender to this intense heat that's melting away your very core, you'll crumble into ashes and fade right into absolute nothingness. Why was he clinging to survival so desperately? Why be so ridiculously stubborn when the end was right there? All because of a single promise. Because I swore I would protect that girl. The monk coldly shot him down, calling it completely pointless. Because death wipes the slate clean, erasing everything, even the... Hadn't he already witnessed the vastness of the cosmos? Didn't he realize just how completely insignificant he was in the face of the entire universe? He's literally smaller than a speck of dust. What does a promise even mean to someone that insignificant? Plus, that girl he cared so deeply about, he barely even knew her real name. Fighting back wouldn't save her. I know we're all gonna die anyway, but you know what? I should at least fight until the very end. Even if I burn to a crisp, leaving absolutely nothing behind. Shouldn't I at least give it a shot? What does life or death even matter? If dying just makes your entire existence meaningless, that just proves you lived your life all wrong. Now I finally get it. Death can never truly wipe out a life, as long as you leave behind memories that actually matter, even if you're smaller and more worthless than a speck of dust, because life goes way beyond death. Right then, the monk bows down, declaring that the line between life and death, the realm of eternity, has finally been crossed. Just when everything is about to blow, a massive blinding light shoots out from the door where Lee is standing, and the raging fire instantly vanishes into thin air. Sergio is totally shocked, staring from a distance at the shadow of a white-haired guy, which turns out to be Lee. But their ship is totally wrecked. They're stuck and can't even move an inch. Sanja tells Xiaojang the repair bill is going to be insane and they are completely broke. But Robert and Xiaojang can't take their eyes off Lee. Right on cue, the red-haired girl teleports onto their ship again, demanding to know what the heck they just did. The thing is, they have absolutely no clue either. So everyone just stares at Lee, who is casually stuffing his face with a giant pile of sausages. The redhead is confused. She can't find a single trace of this guy in any database. Her first instinct is to start yelling, demanding to know who he is and what kind of trick he just pulled. But suddenly she freezes up. because Lee is staring dead into her eyes. Then Lee flips the script and asks who she is. The redhead blurts out that she's Athena's daughter, 24 years old, head of the human government's inspection office. She even adds that she's single and has only dated 4 guys in her entire life. She dumped 3 of them, but one dumped her even though they never even shared a kiss. She claims she has zero interest in physical touch, but deep down she actually loves it. She suddenly wonders why she's oversharing all of this. Meanwhile, Lee just asks if she's the one who triggered the explosion. Athena defends herself, saying she was just following strict orders to cover up the Ganshi project at all costs. Because the higher-ups were terrified this whole mess would spark a massive civil war between factions. But Lee flat out tells her he couldn't care less. He doesn't want to hear her excuses, and makes it crystal clear that because of her little explosive stunt, his kids ended up getting hurt. So she had to completely restore everything back to its original state. "Can you actually pull that off?" he asked. Athena fired back with absolute confidence, saying it would be a breeze. Swarms of tiny bug-like robots buzzed around fixing up the mess. Meanwhile, Sunja was running a quick scan on Hua Rin, realizing she hadn't suffered any brain or physical damage whatsoever. She had just passed out and would be waking up any minute now. Hearing that, Lee let out a huge sigh of relief. While all this was going down, Athena pulled Seryong aside. "Who exactly was that guy from earlier?" Seryong just shrugged. "Why don't you ask him yourself?" She admitted she didn't have a clue either, then flipped the script. Seryong started grilling Athena about her own secrets, poking at what she was really up to at night when no one was watching. Panic hit Athena. "Shut your mouth," she snapped, warning her to never breathe a single word of this to anyone. Seryong just laughed it off, teasing her. "Or what? What are you going to do about it?" Suddenly, Athena froze in her tracks, completely paralyzed. Lai was standing right behind her, staring her down. The very next second, she found herself back on her ship, totally freaked out. What the heck just happened? Who on earth is that guy? Back on the ground, Robert and Sunja gave the all-clear, saying everything was back to normal and running smoothly. But Seryong shook her head. Nope, almost everything. She couldn't stop staring right at Lee's hair and brought it up. When Lee asked what she thought of it, Seryong was brutally honest. She told him straight up that she wasn't a fan. It gave off major try-hard vibes, like he was trying way too hard to look tough and cool. Honestly, Lee had to agree. He hated it too. So they grabbed the scissors and chopped his hair right back to his old style, and dyed it jet black. Oh my gosh. I am absolutely loving this manhwa. Meanwhile, over at the Heavenly Demon Sect, Rytek was pacing around, completely overwhelmed after his chat with the matriarch. He immediately requested clearance to share some crucial intel with headquarters. He was digging through the database, trying to find any record of someone willingly sealing themselves inside a rock, and this happened a whopping 2,000 years ago. The system came back with a blank on his age. It was completely unknown, but it did give him a name, Lee Mok-jin. Eager for more, he kept digging deeper into the files. Suddenly, alarms blared. The entire screen flashed red, triggered. Back on the Mount Ho planet, Hua Rin's father was drowning in guilt and shame. He had completely failed to realize his own daughter was going through such a nightmare. Lai checked in, asking if the kid was doing okay now. They had run a full head-to-toe scan just to be safe, but couldn't find a single thing wrong with her. The best part, she didn't remember a single second of the trauma. Talk about a lucky break. Right at that moment, she was just chilling in the kitchen, happily brewing up a fresh pot of plum blossom tea. It was her special way of welcoming guests she truly respected. However, Hua Rin noticed something different. All the petals started floating around her, and once again her father turned a blind eye to it. But the deep affection she holds for him is undoubtedly something he'll cherish and keep close to his heart forever, even while carrying all that heavy shame. Lai stepped in, telling him that bowing down for your child's safety is nothing to be ashamed of. It's simply your duty as a father. And for a guy with nearly 1,000 kids, feeling ashamed is honestly just a... Hua Rin's father just shot him a sideways glance. Even though he looked different now, that crushing aura he gave off was just as suffocating as before. Lai said his goodbyes, announcing he'd head out at the crack of dawn. He told them it was best if they just forgot about each other. As he walked away, Warren's father just hung his head. Meanwhile, Seo-jung was staring at her own reflection in her room, closely examining the scar on her reattached arm. Right at that moment, Lee showed up, asking if he could come in. But Seo-jung shot back that he probably should have asked that before opening her door. Later aboard the ship, the two of them, Seo-jung finally asked why he came to her room earlier. Instead of answering, Lee asked what exactly happened to the Sichuan Tang clan, completely catching her off guard. Keeping it short, she told him they were all wiped out. The entire clan was destroyed. She was the only survivor. The trauma was clearly still eating at her, so she cut the story short. "Are you planning on getting revenge?" he asked flatly. "It's completely pointless. But if that's what you want, I'll help you." Confused by his logic, she asked, "Why help with something you just said was pointless?" "Because your life matters. And I know that if you want to truly move on, you need to see this revenge through to the end." Seo-jung admitted that sounded nice, but it was just too hard to accept. Sure, she knew he was insanely strong, but they definitely weren't close enough to drag him into a blood feud. It's better if I just handle my own mess. Lee stared at her and said that at least to him they were close. Because waking up in this strange new world, she and the others were the only people he knew. And if that wasn't reason enough, he brought up an ancient debt he owed to the Tang clan. The only man I ever wanted to remember was Tang Chong. Even though I pushed him away back then, he was the only guy stubborn enough to call me his friend. He was the young master of the Tang clan, and because of that, Lee still owed them his life. Siu Jung sighed. That was 2,000 years ago. Over 100 generations, it was way too old of a debt to even matter now, asking him to just drop it. But Lee wasn't backing down. Vengeance doesn't get to pick its sword. It will use whatever it takes to reach its goal, even if it means stabbing through your own heart. And since I clearly can't stop you from doing something reckless, I'll just have to be that sword for you. Honestly, absolute cinema right there. Lee stood up, telling her to think it over. But Siu Jung stopped him, saying there was actually one thing she needed. When he asked what it was, she looked right at him. Help me make some serious cash in the Andromeda Nebula, down on planet Tartaruga. Cut to Siu Jung, dragging Lee straight into the underworld market. Since this place sold martial arts manuals and all kinds of shady stuff, Lai was confused why the streets were completely dead. She explained that criminals just operate differently. They never walk around during the day, because making eye contact with the wrong guy could be fatal. Lai asked what actually happens if they do. Down here, a single look starts a bloodbath, and if you show even a hint of weakness, you're a dead man. That's why they only come out at night. The darkness gives them an excuse to pretend they didn't see each other. Why are we out in broad daylight? Lee asked. Well, the answer was simple. They needed someone who could move in the sun. 3 guys dropped down behind them, and the girl leading the pack recognized Seryung instantly. I can't believe you showed up here all by yourself. Looks like you're finally tired of living. She glared at her while Seryung just playfully mocked her for not growing a single inch. Looks like you're begging to die, the girl snapped, drawing a glowing red sword. But Seryung just told her to chill out. It had been 7 years, so they should at least say hi. She introduced her to Lee as Baekse. Even though she's tiny, we're actually the same age. She used to be sweet, but she got real nasty after finding out she'd never grow any taller. Still, we used to be super close. Seeing how the short girl looked, ready to rip Seryung apart, Lee seriously doubted they were that close. Seryung casually explained that Sai was just mad over a little joke. I just borrowed her family's secret martial arts manual, the demonic phantom sword. But hey, it's totally normal for best friends to borrow things from each other, right? Then, without missing a beat, Seryung revealed she had actually sold it. That's exactly how she earned the nickname Demon and bought that massive ship. Sei was absolutely boiling with rage. How could she just sell it? She was losing her mind, but Seryung just waved her off and told her to calm down. She promised she was only here to give back something way better. Something worth dozens of times more than that old demonic sword manual. C yelled at her to cut the crap. That manual was an ancient martial arts treasure. What could possibly be more valuable? And if she really had it, she better show it right now. Seryung hid right behind Lee and pointed. Him. Lee blinked. Me. He was totally confused, but Seryung just smiled. Didn't you promise to help me make some cash? After that, Sei dragged Lee and Seryung straight to her dad. She made it clear she didn't bring them here because she trusted her, but because she needed his permission to kill her. Seryung whispered to Lee not to listen to her, claiming that deep down, Sei really loved her. But this place was no joke. It was the headquarters of the Triad, one of the 4 huge factions ruling Tartaruga, and this angry girl's dad was the absolute boss. Lai nervously asked what he was supposed to do to help. Easy, she replied. Just sell yourself for a really high price. The boss of the faction glared at Seryung, saying it was an outrage to see her face again. He had hoped to never cross paths with her again in this lifetime. And now, no matter what, he could not break the strict laws of the Triad. For betraying the organization and stealing their treasure, the only price to pay was death. Sai flashed a wicked smile, knowing her old rival was finally about to die. But Seryung smoothly explained she never stole it. She merely borrowed it, and now she was here to pay it back. The boss coldly replied that even if she brought the manual back, it wasn't enough. Debts build up interest. And once again, she ducked behind Lee, pushing him forward, telling him not to sweat it. Sai told him to stop fighting the inevitable and just accept his fate. She took him out quickly and painlessly, but her dad begged to hear him out just one last time. Sai fired back that if he let her slip away again, she would be seriously disappointed in him. But he simply stated that if she couldn't pay such a heavy price, her death was bound to happen. Breathing a sigh of relief, Sergeant asked Lee if he had ever crossed paths with an ancient swordsman known as the Ghost Sword Demon, since she knew they were from the exact same era. Lee just shrugged it off. No clue. If he was a martial artist from my time, he must have been a third-rate nobody. In that case, show me what you got, she demanded. He asked what she meant and she shot back. Martial arts, isn't that what you want? Oh, but it has to be one of your weakest moves, so it matches the price I'm paying. She told him to hurry it up. She wanted to see the most basic trash-tier martial art he had. Lee threw a simple, straightforward punch. Everyone watched holding their breath. Turns out, this technique was the supreme punch, just one single motion. It was the very first move he mastered when he was just 1 year old. Sergeng scoffed, saying he was kidding himself. It was way too weak and maybe he should show off something with a little more kick. Lee clapped back, saying it wasn't weak at all. It was just clean and direct. So she dared him to demonstrate it like he was actually striking a real person. Lee glanced around, pointing out that the room was way too tight for that. The sect leader told him to just go for it. In a flash, a colossal shockwave blasted a massive crater straight through the building. Lee rubbed his neck. I tried to hold back as much as I could, but I guess my hand slipped a little. It's been ages since I used that one. The sect leader was left speechless, wondering how on earth a human could live for over 2,000 years. Sergeng admitted she was totally clueless too, but swore it was real. She had literally found him locked away in a hidden underground bunker back on Earth. The leader immediately thought of secluded cultivation. Sergeng pointed out that, as they just saw with their own eyes, his martial arts were absolutely top tier and incredibly diverse. And the best part was that they were all ancient lost techniques. You could basically call Lai a walking, breathing martial arts library. Since they were super close, she could easily get him to dictate some techniques that their sect could actually use. If they turned those into a secret manual, it would sell for an absolute fortune, making it way more valuable than that whole ghost sword demon manual. Later that night, some local thugs were staring at the massive crater Lee had left behind, totally baffled by what caused it. Another guy rocking a green hood was suddenly interrupted by Lee, who casually asked him what time the shop was opening. "Are you talking to me?" the guy growled. Lee just nodded. "Yeah, seeing as there's literally nobody else here." The hooded guy glared at him, asking if he was picking a fight. Our sly guy Lee just told him to chill out, calling him kid and saying he didn't need to be so jumpy. "Oh, so you are looking for a fight?" The guy roared, launching a massive strike straight at Lee. But in the blink of an eye, his sword just vanished. Our boy Lee casually told him to chill out. He promised to hand the blade back, he just needed to know what time the place. "You're dead meat," the guy screamed, lunging forward to hit him with a deadly palm strike. But Lee effortlessly threw up a barrier, and the thug's hand completely shattered. Sai happened to be walking by and watched in pure shock. Meanwhile, the guy from earlier brought Lee a plate of food. He bowed deeply, swearing he did his absolute best even though it was his first time cooking. Yep, this guy actually cooked a meal for him. Lee was pretty satisfied with the hustle and effort put into the dish. So while healing the guy's injuries, he even unlocked a few of his meridian points as a bonus. Sai finally walked up to Lee, but suddenly she got totally drenched in flying noodles. Yeah, the food tasted absolutely disgusting to Lee, so he spat it right out. He quickly apologized and asked why she was here. She explained that her dad sent her to bring him back. Lee scoffed, saying it was pretty disrespectful to summon the Supreme so casually. If her old man wanted to see him, he should come over himself. Flustered, Sai quickly apologized, admitting she phrased it all wrong. What her dad actually meant was to politely invite him, and she was just there to escort him if he agreed. Hearing that, Lee cooled down and accepted the invite. On the way, Sai asked if the rumors were true. Did he really know every martial art, even the ancient ones? He shrugged and said, yeah, pretty much. And if a technique didn't exist, he'd just invent it. That's insane, she thought, sweating a little. Then she asked if there was a martial art that could reopen her growth plates. He shot her down instantly. No such thing existed. As they kept walking to see her father, Sai pleaded with him to just invent a new martial art for her. One that could force her growth plates back open so she could get taller. But Lee firmly told her it just wasn't happening. Our bodies carry our history and are carefully shaped by our parents. Martial arts is all about training to reach your absolute peak potential, and messing with the natural order is strictly forbidden. Seeing her looking so down, Lee casually mentioned a technique that could change physical appearance, though it was mostly just a transformation trick. But there was also a hardcore method called bone restructuring. Her eyes lit up. She jumped right in front of him, begging him to teach her that one immediately. "And why should I do that?" he asked. Poor little Sai had zero comeback. She hung her head, totally defeated once again. But right at that moment, Lee randomly asked if she knew how to cook a specific kind of food, something made of meat curved at both ends. She blinked. Wait, doesn't he mean a hot dog? She quickly said yes. Lee asked if she could make him one, and she happily cheered. Of course I can. Cut to the next scene where Sai's dad and Sir Young are just staring awkwardly as Lee happily downs a bunch of meat skewers. Sai proudly nudged her dad, telling him to greet her new instructor. But Lee quickly set the record straight, saying he definitely wasn't her teacher. He was just going to show her one simple basic technique. A crowd quickly gathered around the spot where Lee was eating his meal. Sai's dad was still scratching his head over how this guy spent 2,000 years cultivating behind closed doors. But seeing is believing, and he had witnessed the crazy power with his own eyes. He had to admit that Lee's martial arts completely blew the Phantom Sword demon technique out of the water. And according to Madame Young, Sergeng caught wind that Lee might actually pass this legendary skill down to them. Lai brushed it off like it was no big deal, telling Sai that she really didn't need to massage his shoulders if she wasn't into it, but flashing a sweet gentle smile. She told him she was doing it because she genuinely. Her dad then chimed in saying that if Lee just wrote down a manual explaining his methods, he would wipe the slate clean and forget about that time. Serjang stole and fenced their clan's manual. But Serjang stepped right in, arguing that it was a terrible deal, because even with all the interest piled on her side would still be taking a massive loss. So the old man needed to sweeten the pot. Sighing, the father asked what she was really after. Serjang had her eyes on an internal energy unit. She didn't care if it was a bit beat up as long as it worked. She had heard whispers about some heavy-duty military-grade energy cores floating around. She wanted a solid one for their group, and a core-level unit would get the job done perfectly. But Sai's dad looked at her like she had completely lost her mind. Boiling with rage, the sect leader yelled that such an outrageous demand would never happen. A core-level unit was an absolute top-tier treasure, and no matter how broken some ancient martial art was, it could never come close to matching that kind of value. Without missing a beat, Serjang showed her hand. She wasn't offering one, but 5 whole traditional techniques. Of course, she quickly whispered to Lee, asking if he could actually pull 5 moves of that same crazy level out of his hat. Lee just shrugged, saying that kind of basic stuff was a piece of cake. Even so, Sai's father dug his heels in and refused. But then, Sai jumped in, raising the stakes to 10 techniques. The old man finally caved, but on one strict condition: the execution methods, the physical stances, and every recorded form had to be crystal clear and highly detailed. Lee smirked, saying it was child's play as he asked for a brush and paper. Soon after, Serjang and the sect leader stared down at Lee's artwork, which honestly made the instructions look a bit too simple. The sect leader blinked and asked, "What on earth is this?" Serjang didn't even have the heart to answer internally, screaming that this was a... Despite the messy doodles, the sect leader called in a veteran elder to verify if these moves were actually legit. Later on, while Sai was busy playing personal chef for Lee, Serjang slumped down next to him, totally annoyed, grumbling that his sloppy art didn't even cover the cost of the blank paper. The experts had graded his drawings as glorified gymnastics, not actual martial arts. They demanded he step it up and hand over some top-tier sacred techniques. Lee casually pointed out that when you reach the absolute peak, all martial arts are basically the exact same, and you really can't tell them apart anyway. However, every single technique he handed over were a breeze to learn. Seojong got it, but they desperately needed something better. He shot her down, saying claimed techniques just couldn't be passed along. It totally broke the rules of the martial world, so he told her to drop it for now. He'd take the girl under his wing and teach her the reverse transformation technique himself. Seojong felt like they were completely doomed. Left with 0 options, she followed the sect leader, hoping to change his mind. But he was giving her the cold shoulder, and her hope started fading fast, until suddenly, he muttered that it was a martial art unlike anything he'd ever seen, a kind of power he'd never witness again in his lifetime. He turned and asked if she could really convince that guy to help the Three Poles Alliance. Seojong nodded instantly. Yes, they needed each other. Otherwise, they'd literally starve, obviously, throwing the price of the heart-level core into the deal as well. The sect leader agreed. That worked for him. Cut to the leader guiding Seojong down a different path, asking how on earth she knew they actually had a heart-level core. Honestly, Seojong was just as shocked. It was only a hunch. She never thought it was actually real. He explained that the core was one of the martial world's 3 legendary artifacts. But despite all the wild rumors, no one had ever seen the real deal. Why? Because creating one required a green light from the Central Alliance. Basically, it was heavily monitored, just like the nukes of the old days. Power on that scale. If you built one in secret, you'd instantly become public enemy #1 in the martial world. Then how did you build yours? She asked. He shook his head. He didn't. It literally just crashed into a room, leaving a massive crater behind. He pointed forward, telling Seojong that what she wanted was right there. Deep inside that giant pit stood a figure gripping a sword, looking like a dark knight. One winter a year ago, a drop pod crash-landed right here on Tartaruga, and that thing stepped out. That day, everyone who crossed its path died. It took hundreds of bodies dropping before they finally realized they were dealing with an absolute supreme master, way out of their league. And the secret to his insane strength, he was packing a heart-level core. But why is he here? Seojang whispered. The leader had no clue. A year ago, the guy just walked in and claimed the spot. The only sure thing. This guy was a ticking time bomb. And now that rumors of a high-level core were leaking out, every major faction would be hunting him down. The warning signs were already flashing. If you want that core so badly, he warned her, go take it, and convince him to fight for the old martial world. The scene fades as Seojong turns and walks away, walking past a noticeably tall girl. Serjang suddenly stopped in her tracks, instantly realizing that it was actually Sai. Sai was totally shocked. She saw right through her disguise, but it proved the transformation technique Lee taught her was seriously paying off. Sai explained that if her growth plates had never closed early, this was exactly the body she would have. Sergeng totally got it. A second later, Sai shrank back down to her tiny size since she was still a beginner at the skill. But once she reached max level, she would be able to hold that grown-up form for a full week. Waving it off, Sergeng got straight to the point. Anyway, where is your master? Sergeng ordered Lee to track down a certain guy, demand the heart, and bring it right back to her. If he refused, a quick beatdown would do the trick. But the heavenly demon chimed in, saying the aura felt dark and creepy, almost like the raw energy of a dragon was leaking out. He gave Sergeng a strict warning. If she secretly planned on absorbing it for herself, that power would completely devour her from the inside. It was much safer to just leave the heart alone. If she really needed to boost her inner energy, he promised to just share his own power with her.